Okay. Now that my throat is cleared. All right. So, gonna be playing some more Trickster Online. Well, reacting to this ex-CIA spy. Pop out chat. There we go. That's what I want. Pop out chat. We're gonna minimize that screen. Move this. Move this. Move. Excuse me. Move this over here. Can we make this smaller? Nice. Nice. Alright, we're gonna move that there. And we're gonna make that as small as possible, actually. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Perfect undergarments. Okay. Yeah, just enough to where I can see. Move that down there. Actually, no, we're gonna move it there. I can move it later. So we're gonna have that. I can actually make that a little bit bigger. A little bit bigger. A little bit fuck. Make that a little bit bigger. Okay. Okay, we're gonna stretch that. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Turn the volume up a bit. Okay. Turn the volume up. Everything's good to go. Got the episode quest for this. We're gonna do that. And alright, we're gonna press HD, we're gonna do that. Fuck, no, it's not what I wanted to do. That is not what I wanted to do. Not what I wanted to do at all. Okay. I'll move that down here. Nope, nope, not gonna make that mistake again. I'm gonna do that there. I'll have this. Nope. We're gonna have that there. No. We'll have that there. I'm gonna have the game here. Okay. Now we're gonna do the whole. We're gonna hit play on this, and then we're gonna do that. Okay, yeah.
That was based in a common set of objectives, more so than shared love, and they were just kind of pursuing those objectives.
We're watching this on 1.5 speed as well.
And I was fortunate because from that, I was cultivated to be a hardworking academic success, and that led to a full ride scholarship, and that led to success in other parts of life. But for sure, it left behind a trail of always wondering who loves me in my family. Is love even important in a family? Does it matter, or am I being too focused on this whole love thing? As an example, I tell the story because it's totally normal to me, but a lot of other people find it surprising. There was a day.
It is such a thing to be too focused on love. That is such a thing, especially if it blinds your ability to accurately evaluate other things in your life.
Where my mom pulled me aside. I was having an argument with my stepdad, and I went to my mom looking for support, and I asked her to support me. I was like, do you love me, right? Do you love me, or do you love dad more? And she looked at me and she was like, of course I love your dad more than I love you, because you're my son. I have to love you. You were born to me. I must love you, but it's a choice to love your dad. So I have to love him more because it's a choice. And for me,
starting off with something strong. Okay. Honestly, I've never thought of it from that perspective. It's easier to love someone that like you just naturally love versus someone that you had to grow and appreciate more over time. And I guess that would mean you would have to love that person more. Like if you're looking at love as like an active force, like you would have to actively love someone more. But I would also question myself, what the fuck is my child asking me? Are they asking me if there's a burning building and it's my husband and my child inside, did I just tell my child that I'm going to save my husband over my child? From what this guy is saying, I'm not 100% sure of the answer on that.
I will never forget that conversation. I'll never forget the look on my mom's face. It was so simple and so academic and so clear to her. And it's never been something I could ever actually accept. And even now, as a husband and a father myself, I don't understand how that was logically sound to her. I don't know how you could ever actually prioritize who you love.
All of that, as you said, is the resulted in your academic success and your focus and all those kinds of things, but at what cost?
I mean, it makes you kind of fucked up, man. It makes you feel like, first of all, it makes you feel like your secrets are justified. makes you feel like you must have secrets because there's nobody that you can talk to about certain things. I remember for many years, you can't take your love life to mom and dad. You can't tell them the girl that you think is cute. You can't talk to them about not getting picked to go to the prom dance.
Well,
you can't talk about that with them because they don't care.
It's not that they don't care. It's just that their only viewpoint on it would usually be, is this someone who's going to hurt my child? Which is fair, but it's like it doesn't give enough space to the child to be like, you're not being if this was your friend, like imagine if one of your parents have a friend, or you are a parent and you have a friend, and then they talk to you about like people they're interested in or relationship issues. You're just going to give them, all you're going to focus on is the best advice to give them. But as a parent, you can't just focus on that. You're going to focus on, this is my child, so whatever, I don't want my child having any negative experiences, or just like, which realistically, if you don't want your child to have any negative experiences, you're probably stunting their growth. So.
And you can't trust your sisters, you can't trust your mom, you can't trust your dad, you can't trust people in your own house. So because you can't trust them and because you can't take certain things to them, you must keep secrets. And since you must keep secrets, you must be allowed to keep secrets. There must be secrets that are totally acceptable that they are also keeping from you. So I grew up in a world where secrets were something that was very normal. And then from that, you start to learn that if secrets are normal, then lying must also be normal and totally acceptable. Mm-hmm. So there's a level of sociopathy that develops when you feel like you're on your own. And that's something that most people out there who are learners, who have grown up in that world, they learn to understand.
If you are forced to grow up alone, your social skills will build up. Like, it's kind of like a video game. You'll have a video game where like you can put points in different skills, like you have different skill trees and shit, right? And if you put them, you can't really put them in the camaraderie area because like your parents and family didn't create an environment for you where that was possible. So all of them are going to go towards how can I benefit myself and keep myself safe and worry about. It's like going to be very self-focused. Yeah, it makes sense.
And that there are certain elements of social behavior that are not culturally acceptable, but as long as you don't talk about them, you can practice them. So that's a big part of what I learned personally, was that secrets, how to keep secrets, that secrets are normal, how to lie without being caught, and more importantly, that there is a very real difference between the people who are raised in a world where they trust people.
Oh, it's nighttime. I should do this now. It's nighttime.
Because they trust others, they have a built-in vulnerability. Okay. A built-in deficiency compared to the people who are raised in a world where they don't trust others. Because when you're raised in a world where you don't trust, you can always learn to trust. But when you're raised in a world where you trust first, it's very difficult to train that person to know when to not trust someone else.
How do you feel about that wiring that you have because of that experience?
I mean, it's sad. I'm doing everything in my power to not wire my children the same way that I was wired. So I do believe that there is a faulty wiring that happened.
That is
but
faulty.
At the same time, it's been very valuable. Well, it's been very productive and valuable in terms of what I've been able to experience, what I've been able to see and do financially, economically, relationally. I benefit and value. And this is a big challenge that I have, is as much as I sit here telling friends, and like I'm telling you, secrets, because this is what happens.
That's the thing. Maladaptive traits, things that we think, skills that people grow and work on and harness during times of great stress or during times of their childhood where they can't really escape. Because as a child, to some extent, you can't escape. You're bound by the rules and restrictions of your parents. You're bound financially. You can't go out and just buy your own home to get away from whatever environment you're in. And you're kind of like forced to, not kind of, you are forced to stay within it. So yeah.
We tell people secrets when they trust you. When I share with you the challenges of growing up, it's important to me that I don't sound like I'm complaining or whining, because I had a fantastic foundation for success after that. But I defined success in all the ways that I was trained to define success: financially, economically, empirically, not based on how I feel internally.
Have you had to do a lot of work to counteract the potential consequences of that wiring as you become an adult and a father and all of those things? It's something I think about a lot. I think I've got my own pretty fucked up wiring, and I'm scared now because I'm on the footsteps of becoming a dad myself. I'm with a partner, I've been with her for 4 years. We're talking about kids right now, and I think, Jesus Christ, like you almost can foresee that there's a really high possibility I'm gonna fuck up as a dad, because my brain is wired towards like validation and career success, and I'm a bit of a workaholic. And so have you had to do a lot of work on that too?
Absolutely. So the first thing I'll say is you will fuck up as a dad. We will all fuck up as parents. The question is, how big will we fuck them up? Yeah. I'm working very hard to make sure that the way that I fuck up my kids is in small ways that they can fix in small ways. But I already know, like, the sins of the father pass on. So I'm just trying to minimize.
That is another thing that a lot of people, from the point of, there's a lot of people, especially me, because it's something that I need to reconcile for myself. There is no guidebook to parenting, so to some extent, parents are always going to, in a way, fuck up the children in some kind of way. Um, okay, and because of that, it's kind of like in the same way like war. Yeah, in the same way like when war happens, people don't like civilian deaths, but if civilian deaths is a part of war, unfortunately, you can't just be like, oh well, civilians died, so therefore something bad. It's just like, I mean, yeah, something bad happened, but like it's not. You're talking about it as if it's completely avoidable, as if like there's a way to completely avoid to have zero civilian deaths in the war, and it's like if that's not the case, you can't just look at because there was more than zero that it's necessarily like it's bad as far as like a cosmic, not even cosmic, because no, it's bad in a more like generally morally we don't want people, civilians, innocent people dying who have nothing to do with the fight, who aren't soldiers, but like to say that you're always going to have more than zero, you can't there's nothing, you're going to have more than zero, so yeah.
Minimize what I pass on that's negative and maximize what I pass on that's positive. The additional layer that is unique to myself and all professional intelligence officers is that when we are recruited into intelligence service, specifically when CIA recruits field operators, it's fairly transparent. They tell you that you were recruited because you are a little fucked up. They tell you that you were recruited because of a certain psychological profile that makes it so that you pragmatically view things like secrets and lies. There's a few different terms. We call it moral flexibility. Depending on the situation, there are some things that I would deem immoral, but to do them in a different situation is totally acceptable. And that's just something that I'm wired to be, that's been wired to me since I was a kid, but CIA understands how to take advantage of that, how to use that in a way that benefits American national security. There's also an element of high performance that comes from being wired a certain way. So there is a tie between childhood trauma and high performance. It's a documented connection, but CIA has learned, as has MI6 and Mossad and all the other intelligence services of the world, they've learned that when you train someone who has just the right amount of childhood trauma high performance, when you get your hands on them at the right time in the right period of their life, they can be trained to become extremely loyal, highly productive field operators that end up spending 30 plus years in service to their nation.
When did they get their hands on you?
They recruited me when I was 27 years old, coming out of the military in 2007. I was looking for whatever the next step was going to be, and that was when I was approached by a CIA recruiter.
I heard that you've got a pop-up on your computer screen.
Yeah, back in the day, I was actually applying. I was a nuclear missile officer for the CIA, I was a nuclear missile officer for the Air Force, and a nuclear missile officer in the Air Force controls nuclear ICBMs. So I wore the little ring.
Wait. What's a nuclear ICBM?
So a nuclear ICBM is a nuclear intercontinental ballistic missile. So the large missiles that carry nuclear warheads for mutually assured destruction, nuclear war type of stuff.
So you controlled the nuclear missiles?
I was half of who controlled them. I wore one ring, somebody else wore a different ring, and that was how a nuclear missile got launched.
What does the ring do?
So the ring is a key. On the end of it is a key. And when you get a nuclear code that comes in, the code, you put it into an old school computer system, and the two of you take your key ring and you insert it into the silo operating system, and then you turn in unison, and when you turn in unison, it launches a nuclear weapon.
How did you get yourself to the point in life at 27 years old where you're holding a nuclear key around your neck?
I would love to say it was a series of babysitting, but it wasn't. I did what I was told. That's how I got there. I did what I was told when I was in high school, and I got good grades. And then my mom told me that the best school of all the universities that chose me, the best school I should go to is the Air Force Academy. So then I accepted a full ride scholarship to the United States Air Force Academy, where I did what I was told, and I graduated as a lieutenant. And then I followed what the Air Force told me to do from there. And they told me to learn how to fly, and then they told me that they needed me to work in nuclear and space weapons instead. So then I went to that school, and I did well at that school, and I ended up just kind of climbing the ladder. I did what I was told, and then one day I found myself 100 feet underground, miserable. It's a horrible job. So in 2007, when I was a nuclear missile officer, you sit in a launch control capsule, an LCC, that sits 100 feet underground. And you sit there on a 72-hour shift with one other person, the other person who holds the other key. And then you are one nuclear crew of maybe 30 different nuclear crews who are all on deployment at the same time. So at any given time, in one Air Force base, there's 60-ish people underground for 72 hours at a time. And then in a different missile base, there'll be a different 60 people underground. And your whole job is just to sit there and wait for nuclear war to break out. And obviously nuclear war hasn't broken out, and hopefully it never will break out. So as you sit there underground, not seeing sunlight, and as you sit there in a capsule with one other person that you very rarely ever like, you have a lot of time to reflect on what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? I'm a redundancy of a scenario that we all are working very hard to make sure never happens. Is this a productive life? Like, am I making a difference? Am I leaving a mark in history, sitting here, not launching missiles, waiting for a message to come in that I already know isn't going to lead to nuclear war. It's a very difficult and thankless job that even right now, as you and I are having this conversation, there are some 200 Americans sitting underground doing that exact job. And that's just in the United States. Every country that has nuclear weapons is doing the same thing.
If an order had come in that instructed you to launch a nuclear weapon, would you have done it?
Absolutely. That's what you do. The other thing that's important to understand is we're redundancies of redundancies. So we don't know if...
I feel like, depending on how you look at it, there's some people, a lot of people only like to focus on, there's some people that are built for the military. If you can't handle grit, if you can't handle working hard, which is just true, if you can't handle structure and being told what to do, like that's true. But at the same time, there's an aspect of the military that requires you to just like, hey, do this and shut the fuck up. And there are a lot of scenarios where that is actually catastrophic. And if you're the type of person that's like, no, I always need to be in a position where I'm thinking, is this actually something I want to do? Those people are probably not built for the military either, because like the military almost requires that you, for lack of a better term, are a bot. You're a cog in a machine. If we tell this bolt to do a missile strike, you will do it. If we tell this gear to set up a little medical unit area here, you will do it. Like, if we're telling you that's the right thing to do, we can't have you questioning every single thing to make sure we're all right, or to make sure it's the moral correct thing to do, because we won't be able to function as an agency to do so. And a lot of people can't put their head around that, because that feels like I should always be analyzing the moral outcomes and the moral impacts of my decisions. But in the military, you just kind of gotta like turn that off, which is, yeah.
If an order says to launch nuclear weapons, we just know that an order comes in that says to insert the keys and turn them. And if it's a valid order that comes in, then the machine will let us insert our keys, we will turn our keys, and then the machine will do what the machine does. Sometimes that order that's coming in is saying launch nuclear missiles. Sometimes that order that's coming in is just a drill to make sure that the two people in the capsule turn their keys.
Oh, really? So you never know the difference?
We're just a redundancy of redundancy, man.
It seems hard to me to understand how someone would stay in that job for a long period of time. So they must have like really high attrition.
They have shockingly low attrition because they do such a good job of psychologically identifying the right people for that job.
Were they scouting you, do you think, from a very early age to eventually go into the CIA?
No, I don't believe so. I think CIA is far too practical to do anything that requires scouting people from a young age. I think what more realistically happened is that they had a very simple algorithm that they had applied to every government website, so that when people of a certain profile applied to a job on a government website, then they'd get a flash on their screen, just like I did, that said, hey, we appreciate your application. We'd like to have a different recruiter contact you for a different opportunity.
What were you applying for on that government website when that came up?
Yeah, I was applying for Peace Corps. I was trying to get into the US Peace Corps, because after spending 2 years underground waiting to launch nuclear missiles, I thought that it'd be great to get out of the Air Force and go do the exact opposite. Kind of like if you've ever had a really bad breakup, you go looking for the exact opposite of the person you just broke up with. That's how I felt.
And the Peace Corps does sort of humanitarian work around the world.
Exactly right. I mean, I was looking to teach children English in Africa, or save orphans, or do microfinance, or build huts. Like, I was looking to do something that built the world up instead of just waiting to tear the world down.
You get this pop-up as you're applying that says, another recruiter wants to speak to you or something, what's to that effect? What happens then?
So that's when being a 27-year-old single guy comes in, and you think to yourself, there might be something better. So once you think to yourself there might be something better, it's really easy to say, yes, like, I'll wait. And that's all the screen is asking me to do.
Yeah, grass is greener is definitely a crazy thing, because fuck. What the fuck? Okay, sorry. Grass is greener will make you... Grass is greener just basically, I'm going to evaluate this past experience or this past situation with all of the negatives about it and none of the positives, and only focus on that, and then compare that to any other situation. And then literally every situation, if you're only looking at the negatives, every situation is going to be better. Like, oh man, I hate this ex I was just with. But you know, this crackhead woman over here that be sitting on a corner at 2 a.m. Bro, she ain't got no teeth, but my nigga. Like, you like, no, you're not my nigga saying some shit like that.
Do is just pause my application for 72 hours. So It's easy to click yes, and then you fall out of that website and you're just on hold for 72 hours. Either a better opportunity is going to happen and someone's going to call me, or no one's going to call me and I can come right back and finish my application. But just to say no means to miss the opportunity, and that wasn't me.
And then within 72 hours, you get a call, presumably?
Within 24 hours, I got a call. Yeah, I got a call from an unlisted number. It just said 703, and there was a woman on the other end of the line. She gave me a first name, but I don't remember what her first name was. And she basically, confirmed who I was and confirmed that I was applying to the Peace Corps, asked me if I'd be open for other government opportunities, and then she said that there might be opportunities in the national security sector that I'd be interested in, and she'd like to send me an airline ticket and a hotel reservation and a rental car reservation to come up to DC to hear more about the job.
What did you think at that point?
I thought it was a prank call. I thought that the call wasn't real. I thought that the call was, maybe it was some kind of gimmick, or maybe it was something else, or it just didn't sound real. Especially not when she said she was going to send me a paper airline ticket and she was going to send me all this stuff in the mail overnight FedEx. But then it showed up. And then when it showed up, again, that 27-year-old single male kicked in, and I was like, well, now I have a ticket. Let's see where the ticket goes. And let's go to the reservation counter at the rental car desk. And is this a real rental car reservation? It's a real reservation. Is there a real hotel? And then you just kind of follow the breadcrumbs.
The rental car reservation's real. The airline ticket's real. You fly out there. You land. What happens next?
You get another phone call that says, hey, did you get in safe? And then they tell you the address for where you're supposed to show up the next day. And then you go. It's a nondescript building. And you walk in. And for me, I walked in. There were 10 or so other people in the waiting room. None of us really knew what we were there for. We all knew that we were there for something related to a government job. Everybody's dressed essentially the same way. And you find out that this person's in finance and that lady came from social work and whatever else it might be. And then eventually somebody comes out and calls you into a room. And then you go through what we call the first round of interviews. And it's just kind of like a fit to see what you're interested in, what you're not interested in, et cetera. And it was at the end of that first interview that the lady said to me that I might be a good fit for the National Clandestine Service at CIA, which I didn't know what that was at the time. And then she basically broke it down, and she was just like you and I did at the beginning of this conversation. She was like, essentially, we want you to be a field officer, or what you might know from the movies as a spy. And of course, for me, my 7-year-old self was like, I'm going to be a what? Like, you want me to be a spy? You want me to drive fancy cars and wear tuxedos and always have a beautiful woman on my side? Like, sign me up for that. Starving children in Africa can wait. I want to do that. But then, of course, comes the byline afterwards, where she's like, you can't tell anybody that this is what you're now applying for. We're going to move you on to the second phase of interviews. We need you to, go back to your hotel and go back to Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana and live your normal life. And if anybody asks you why you're out here, just tell them that you came out here applying for a government position and you don't know whether or not you're going to get it. And in the meantime, we'll be in touch.
And then they get in touch again.
And then you go through multiple more rounds of interviews. So they fly you usually back to the DC area, and then the interviews just get kind of more intense. You go from a fit interview to a kind of like a test, like a interview that's more of like a test with somebody else. They ask you scenario-based questions, they give you puzzles, they ask you some light psychological stuff.
When you got that letter in the post saying that you've been offered a role, how did you feel?
Great.
Yeah?
Yeah. I felt like I had done everything right? I felt like, there was a part of me that says, and I still kind of follow this mantra, like, who gets to do this? So that felt amazing. And then there was to use your word, a ton of validation. Of course, now I get it. Now I know why I went to a college I didn't like. Now I know why I put up with a stepdad and listened to my mom. And I don't need love. You don't need support. You don't need a family that cares about you as a person. All you need is to check the fucking boxes, because this is where you get to go when you check the boxes. And now that I've checked all the boxes,
That sounds so fucking robotic. If it works, it works, but it's just like, that just sounds robotic as fuck.
Free. So it doesn't really work that way. Because when you're hired because you check boxes, the boxes just change, but you still have to check the boxes.
And at that point, it goes from interview to, I guess, training.
Correct.
During that whole interview process, you're not allowed to tell anyone, I'm guessing.
Right.
Even your family?
Nope.
So what do you tell your family that you've been up to during that period?
So this is what's nice about their recruitment process. Remember, I told you earlier that I accepted as a child that there are times that you have to lie and there are secrets that you have to keep. This was just a secret I had to keep and a lie that I had to tell. So I told my family that I was looking at getting out of the Air Force. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Maybe I'd go work for the government. And I was going to DC to do some government interviews. I was never close to my family. From the time I left for the Air Force Academy at 18, I went home maybe once a year. Every time I tried to go home, it was always a kerfluffle because my parents didn't want to buy the airline ticket because it was expensive, and I didn't have money to buy an airline ticket, so I had to ask them. And it was the same song and dance every Christmas holiday, right? Like, I'd like to come home, I don't have any money, but we don't have any money either, maybe you shouldn't come home. So it was really easy to be 27 years old. Almost 10 years after that, I'm not really close to my family. So I tell them as little as possible. I had a girlfriend at the time. She was a great girlfriend, but she wasn't as great as being a CIA officer was going to be, right? I had friends at the time, but they weren't as cool as being a CIA officer would be, right? So it was really easy to just start cutting off the branches of my social tree because I was going to go do something awesome.
I will say that is an example of a learned behavior, it is an example of a maladaptive behavior that worked well. It was easy for him to cut people off because having established emotional connections was something he felt he never had. So it's kind of like, well, I'm not actually losing anything. So that's, sounds about right.
I didn't need anybody else.
Did the CIA tell you to disconnect from these people at all?
They told you that you would have to eventually, and they explain how you're going to go into covert service. If you're going to go into clandestine service, You can't take a whole Rolodex of people with you. So one of the things that they asked during our psychological evaluation was, how much do you need close relationships and close peers, and how do you feel about severing ties with what we sometimes call like secondary or tertiary relationships, friends, college friends. Like a primary relationship is your spouse, a secondary relationship is all your close friends, a tertiary relationship is somebody who you work with. So like, how do you feel about cutting off all those not so important relationships? And for me, it was easy, right? I was like, let's go. I'm gonna go do something amazing. I don't need college friends to go do something amazing.
Do you think your appearance and ethnicity factored into the CIA's decision to recruit you?
Absolutely. In 2007, so just to take everybody back, 2007 was 6 years after 9/11. It was 3 years after the CIA 9/11 Commission, or the US government 9/11 Commission came out, which basically said that everything CIA had been doing up to 2001 was wrong. They were focused in a Cold War era. They were not focused on terrorism. They were focused on, Ivy League Caucasian graduates as being the next generation of CIA officer, instead of diversifying for a diversified world. So without a doubt, they were looking for different people. They were looking for young people, colored people.
You hear that, conservatives? You hear that shit? DEI, even way back in 2007, they done destroyed our country with that shit. You hear that? Be up in arms. Tell this man that he's not qualified. Go ahead.
LGBTQ plus people who could connect with the modern day threat around the world. And then I think on top of being brown and ethnic, I also came with a huge government file because I had been part of the Air Force since I was 18 years old. So they knew everything about my health, everything about my mental health, everything about my academic, athletic performance in college. They knew everything about me. And I think that's part of why my onboarding process took about 9 months, where the typical onboarding process takes about 18 months.
How do they train you to become a CIA agent?
So a lot of the training part is classified still, so I can't talk about it. But there's a school that we go to. It's fairly publicly known, but I can't acknowledge what it is and isn't. And we go there for many months. And we basically were pulled out of everyday life and we're put into a controlled, simulated world. And inside that simulated world, they kind of control what's happening around us. So if you can imagine, almost like going from being taken out of your apartment where you live, and now you're put into a different apartment, but the apartment that you're put into is part of a giant game. And somebody else controls all the game. So they control the news that's on the TV, and they control the cars that are on the road, and they control everything except the weather, basically. So that they can create multiple different types of scenarios where you exercise the skills that they taught you, from driving to first aid response, to lying, living and working under alias identities, all that stuff. So you're put into a very...
I feel like a lot of people believe that's the world we live in now, to where they're just like the CIA. If the CIA is able to do this on a smaller scale, the technology is out there to be able to replicate this elsewhere, which means as long as you have a large enough group of people to work together with common interests, it is theoretically possible to be able to do the same thing on a massive scale. I'm just saying, it is possible to do this. That's what I took from that. It's possible to do that type of shit.
Very controlled environment for a long period of time, where they can test all of your tradecraft that you're taught.
It's very expensive. It must be very expensive for them to train a CIA agent.
Right. That's why they train us in batches. So there's generally 2 to 3 batches a year that go through different types of training. And there's different classifications of officers too, right? So your analysts are different than your technical officers, who are different than your field officers. So what they'll do is they'll batch you into, or at least what they did in 2007, is they would batch you along with your discipline, and then send a batch to training. And then everybody goes through the same lectures during the day, just like university. And everybody goes through a series of exercises at different times of the day and different times of the week. But essentially everybody goes through the same curriculum, and everybody has the same grades. And then those grades are all measured against each other, and the bottom performers are cut out, and the top performers get to stay.
That curriculum, what is involved in that curriculum? You mentioned a few things there. Is learning how to kill people involved in the curriculum?
No, that is not involved in the curriculum. Not at the basic training level.
Do they teach you that?
They teach some people that, but they don't teach everybody that. It depends on the discipline that you're part of. If you're a paramilitary officer, you need to learn how to kill. And you need to learn how to kill in different ways. Kill quickly, kill quietly, kill with blunt weapons, clear with bladed weapons, or kill with bladed weapons, kill with projectile weapons. So kill with explosives. De-arm explosives. So it all depends on the caliber, the level of officer that you're kind of put into. So paramilitary, they must learn that. But your standard human intelligence field collector, they need to learn how to live and work without being caught. So if you kill somebody, it's a big deal. You might get caught. So it's much easier to teach that person how to manipulate, how to collect secrets, how to live and operate without ever being detected. Whereas a paramilitary officer doesn't need to learn all that.
They taught you how to lie.
They teach you how to lie.
How do they teach someone how to lie?
It starts with the foundation of making sure that you recruit people who are already liars. And then when you're sitting across from a liar, you can start to understand if they're a good liar or not very quickly. You've probably talked to people who are bad liars.
Yeah, I've talked to everything. Yeah.
So you know when someone's a bad liar. So from that, you can identify people who are good liars. And then when you do find a good liar, you start to teach them what they already naturally do that makes them a good liar. And then you start to teach them how to refine that skill. And you start to teach them how bad liars operate and how you can detect a bad liar.
Okay. For those who don't know, this game is called Trickster Online. Basically, people come here for various different reasons to either find. Most of the characters, like if you actually research, and there's 8 different characters you can play as. There's four types, as you can see on here. There's the red power type, blue magic type, purple sense type, and like orangey whatever is charm type. There's four types and a man and woman for each character for each type. So that way, yeah, basically it's a game to where like in game it's just like they know it's a game. They know it's like the trickster game. And it's like they're on this island. I can't open the map here, but it's like they're on this island and everyone's here to just either have a good time. Most of the people here are to make money or whatever the fuck. But this character, I think I read that this character, the raccoon character, is here because like a bunch of his students, his first job as a teacher, a bunch of his students came here to play the game, and he's trying to get them back. The reasons why people come to the island don't actually matter as far as the game. It's just background stories. Everyone pretty much does the same thing when you get here. Anyway, this dude, Don Giovanni, apparently was supposed to be the next person to like run the game and run the the mega company, Megalo or mega company, whatever the fuck is in this game, is pretty much the main company of the game. And he's like, why shouldn't I have run it? But this dude, Don Cavalier, I don't know why they're called Don, but this dude, Don Cavalier, apparently is the one that took over. And Don Giovanni's father was the one who was in charge first. So Don Giovanni's like, why the hell is this Don Cavalier nigga coming in and taking over the shit? He's a fucking stranger. Don Cavalier, in his words, acknowledged that he was a stranger. But he's having a secret room to create a master plan to take over the game. I'm guessing. I don't fucking know. I don't fucking know.
And how you gain advantages, with lies and how to handle lies. As an example, because I promised you skills. Bad liars talk a lot. Good liars talk a little. Because the more you talk, the more you run the risk of undermining your own lie. Bad liars make a lot of statements. Good liars ask a lot of questions. Because if you ask questions, you're not really disclosing anything about yourself. So if you think back and if you remember ever going to a party or ever having a date or ever being in a social environment where there was somebody there that made you feel so interesting, but you didn't know anything about them, you were talking to a very good liar.
What about body language? Is that a factor in lying?
Absolutely. I mean, body language is a factor in everything, but body language is especially a factor in lying. Because, again, going back to the idea of a skilled liar versus an unskilled liar, a skilled liar knows how to appear like they are telling the truth with their words and with their body, whereas an unskilled liar often has a disconnect, and their body will say a different message than what their mouth is saying. Consider your stereotypical jock, your standard European footballer or your American jock. A lot of times they'll be portrayed as like somebody like, they sit bigger than life and all this other stuff, right? Their body shows confidence and openness, but then when they talk, they sound like idiots, right? I'm sure, totally, like, dude, that lady, like, whatever. There's a disconnect. Their voice does not demonstrate the same confidence that their body demonstrates. So you know that person's lying. What they're lying about is not necessarily just the content of what they're saying, but they recognize they can't cognitively accept the fact that they are in a position where they are telling an untruth. And that untruth at a minimum is that they are not super confident and super comfortable. They are actually uncomfortable and they are not feeling confident. And that's why they're stammering over themselves.
So when you were lying to someone, based on your training, would you think a lot about your body language?
Yes.
And what would you do? What were the principles of making sure your body language wasn't letting the cat out of the bag?
So one of the first things to do when you're trying to lie to somebody, and again, we're now talking about how to lie to somebody. You shouldn't want to learn how to lie to somebody. You should want to learn how to know if somebody's lying to you. Mm-hmm. But we always start this way, where we're afraid to ask the real question, which is how do I know if I'm being lied to? Because that shows vulnerability. But if you want to learn how to lie to somebody, the first thing you do is you mimic the person. Look at you and I right now. We are mirrored. Are your hands connected under the table?
Yeah.
So are mine. Are your feet crossed under your seat?
Yeah.
So are mine. We are mirrored right now, which means when you look at me subconsciously, you see yourself. I want you to see yourself in this exercise, because if you see yourself, your initial instinctive response is going to be trust. Because who do you trust in the whole world?
Interesting. Okay, it gives a lot of merit to that idea of like you ever hear like it's more so Eastern philosophy when it talks about what the universe is and who we are in the universe. Am I really me? Is there a me? I am you. You are me. At the end of the day, like that is sort of like, because of that truth, it's kind of like this type of psychology can work. This person sees himself subconsciously as me, so I'm kind of like already in their head because we're the same person. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's a little weird, but
you trust yourself. So the first step to being able to lie effectively is to be able to mirror the person you're lying to. If I was coming at you like, Right away, you're going to be like, I don't know who this guy is, right? And similarly, if I was to be like,
just for people that are on audio, he's just like doing different postures and body languages, so that are far away from my own. Putting his hands on the table, etc. So, okay, makes sense.
So we want to mirror first. And you mirror because mirroring creates a foundation of trust. Subconsciously, it creates a foundation of trust. And then once you have that foundation of trust, you just start kind of pushing.
It's also interesting to think about if someone is talking to you and they don't have that mirroring. It's kind of like you don't trust them. It's like, okay, why is this person not like me? That's interesting to think about too on the other end of that.
Pushing the envelope more and more with the untruth or with the fabrication that you're creating, the lie, right?
Is there anything else on the subject of telling a lie to someone that's believable that we need to be aware of in terms of skills?
Yes. So first, the whole idea about, there's two important ideas that get glorified in social media that are just inaccurate. And the first is called eye movements. You can't actually tell if somebody's lying to you based on where they place their eyes. Because while there are certain elements of eye movements that have biological relevancy, there's many, many more things about eye movements that don't have biological relevancy, right? So what I mean by that is, if I ask you, what's your oldest memory? You just look to your left. It's natural to look to your left when you're from a Western country because chronologically, timelines start on the left. So when you ask somebody a question about time and they look to the left, up, down, or in the middle, generally speaking, that has biological relevancy. So it's a low probability that they're lying, but they still could be lying. When you ask somebody a question, they look to the upper right or the lower right or wherever they might look. If there's not necessarily biological relevancy because they could be looking up and to the right because down and to the left it's too bright. And they could be looking in any number of directions because maybe they have a headache or maybe they have something else going on. The ability to create some sense of probability about why they're making the eye movements they're making is too difficult. So you can't assess someone's honesty or dishonesty based off of eye movements, even though you're going to hear that you can from Instagram influencers and Discord and everywhere on the internet. You're going to hear that there's some connection that you can make justifiably. It's not true. The same thing is also true. So it is also an untruth that you can rely on something known as micro expressions. Micro expressions being the number of times your eyes blink or the twitch in your face or if you're sucking on your lips. These ideas that get glorified through social media as indicators of deceit. The truth is you don't know if someone is lying to you until you have had enough time with the person to establish what's known as a baseline. A baseline means what's normal for you. So I'll just use you as an example. 10 minutes before the camera's turned on, you were a totally different person. Your energy is different. You're so much more conversational. Like you're an awesome, friendly guy when the cameras are not on. But you turn into an interviewer when the cameras turn on. Totally rational, totally logical, makes total sense. That doesn't mean that you're lying now and you were telling the truth then. It means that the environment has changed and nobody would know that if there wasn't a baseline. Most people that watch you don't ever know what you're like outside of this baseline.
So you have to get to know the person and then understand the variance that's unusual to understand if they're lying to you.
Exactly. We call it time on target. You need time on target so that you can understand the delta, the change between their baseline and whatever pressure you're putting them under.
Was there any sort of consistent telltale signs that someone was lying to you in an interaction? Like, you know what I mean? Certain, nervous things that they do change, what are those variances that you might see that you go, this person's now lying to me?
Yeah, so with unskilled liars, it becomes much easier. Because a lot of times with skilled liars, with people who have either learned how to lie through formal training or people who have learned how to lie through the school of hard knocks, when there's people who are skilled liars, it's difficult to find generic tells. With people who are unskilled liars, it's much easier to find generic tells. There are people who you've heard of being on the hot seat. It's a phrase we use in Western culture pretty often. Like when someone is under pressure, we call them being in a hot seat. When you've got an unskilled liar, they can't stop moving their body. Like they're always uncomfortable and they just keep moving and they keep twitching and they keep fidgeting. And it's like they're sitting in a hot seat. That is one of the biggest tells of an unskilled liar. And again, anybody who's ever had like a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old try to lie to them, they know what that looks like. They can't make eye contact. They do a lot of like verbal noises that aren't actual words. They can't get comfortable. They keep moving around. They keep shifting, shifty. Those are all those words came from real world examples of an unskilled liar trying to lie. But you don't need micro expressions of the face or to know which way their eyes are tracking in order to pick up on that.
Going back to your training then, what were some of the other most important transferable skills that you learned throughout that process?
The most interesting and useful things that we learned during training actually have to do with the psychological processes that people go through and being able to understand the process and then predict and identify when the process is happening. Those are the things that really make a huge difference. Yes, it's cool to learn how to do a dead drop. And yes, it's cool to learn how to detect surveillance or how to drive a car through a roadblock, right? Those are all very interesting things, but the most useful things are the things that you can use all day, every day, through multiple types of interactions. And there are a series of processes, a number of processes that we learned that have to do with human psychology. One of those processes is understanding the idea of core motivations. Core motivations are, remember how we talked about manipulation and motivation are two sides of the same coin? When you understand all the different options of the currency that you're working with, you can work with it more effectively. So people are generally, despite age, race, creed, or religion, people have 4 basic motivations. And we call those 4 basic motivations. RICE, R-I-C-E, stands for reward, ideology, coercion, and ego. Reward is anything that you want. Money, free vacations, pat on the back, women, alcohol. If it's something that you want and me giving it to you gives you what you want, then that's a reward. People do lots of crazy things for rewards.
And these rewards change over time.
And based on person, right? The second primary motivator is ideology. Ideology is the things that you believe in. People do crazy things for the things they believe in, whether it's their religion, whether it's their country, whether it's their family, whether it's what they believe is morally correct, right? So if you can speak to somebody through the lens of their ideology, you can get them to do incredible things. C is coercion. Coercion is all the negative things: guilt, shame, blackmail, anything that you do to force someone to take certain action by leaning into the negative element of motivation, which is also known as manipulation. That falls under the C, or coercion. And then E, ego, is everything that has to do with how the person views themselves. So oftentimes ego gets oversimplified into thinking that it's just people who have a big ego, right? Somebody like Donald Trump who has a big ego, or you name the famous actor who has a big ego. Ego is also people who don't have big egos. Mother Teresa had an ego. She wanted to sacrifice for other people. She wanted other people to see her sacrificing for other people. That is also ego. So with these 4 core motivations, you have a rubric, a process to understand why other people do what they do. If you understand why other people do what they do, all you have to do is connect what they care about with what you want them to do, and you just increase the probability of them doing what you want them to do.
Of these 4 core motivations, is there an order of the strength that they have over people? So if you were really trying to get someone to do something, you focus on this core motivation over that one?
Yes, absolutely. Ideology is the strongest. Ego is the second strongest. Reward is the third strongest, and coercion is the weakest. This is one of the things that movies get wrong. Movies try to make it look like you can blackmail somebody or hold a gun to their head and get them to do what you want them to do. In the real world, once you hold a gun to someone's head, they never trust you again. You can never get them to do something twice. Whereas if you appeal to their ideology, doing this is good for your country, doing this is good for your family, doing this is good for your health. If you can appeal to someone's ideology, they'll do what you tell them to do for a long time because they'll trust you.
Is this really the essence of manipulation then?
That is the essence of motivation and manipulation, the same coin. You'll hear me come back to this because one of the things that people really struggle with outside of intelligence is they feel like they have to label things as good or bad. When you have moral flexibility, you take away good and bad. Everything just becomes a question of utility or productivity. If you need someone to do something and you can motivate them, then you should. But if you need someone to do something and you can't motivate them, that's a green light to manipulate them, because you still need them to do what you need them to do. If you feel bad about manipulating somebody, you are not going to.
See, this is the type of shit that is going to make me reevaluate every interaction I've had with people. I'm going to start watching all you motherfuckers who are trying to get me to do. It makes me just like, okay, I'm going to watch the things you say. I'm going to watch if you don't ask things directly. I'm going to watch if you use a compliment before asking me to do something, use an insult before asking me to. I'm going to watch it. If you are constantly asking me for information, but you're never offering information yourself, fuck that. Fuck all you people who do that shit.
Do well in the intelligence world.
How might you, so you said the ideology is the strongest of the 4, of the core motivations. How might you go about finding out someone's ideology in the context of business and life?
A lot of times people will volunteer it to you. There's 2 ways. If you're a keen observer, people will volunteer it to you. You've already volunteered that you are ideologically predisposed to fatherhood. You've already talked about it. The reason that you're worried about fucking up your kids, that you don't even have yet, is because you're thinking about fatherhood. So clearly, you are ideologically predisposed to what it means to be a responsible father. You want to be seen as a responsible father. That plays into your ego as well. So I'm sure when you're talking to your partner, if you guys are already looking at where would we go to school, where would we live, what kind of diapers should we use, if you're even thinking about that, you're thinking about it through the lens of the ideology of being an engaged, present, helpful, loving father, right? So people will volunteer it. Your customer base will volunteer to you what their ideologies are. They'll volunteer their politics, they'll volunteer their pain from their childhood, they'll volunteer their pain from business.
If you listen.
If you listen. The second way that you can get to understand the ideology of your customer base is through active marketing, the right kind of marketing. Not mass marketing, not the kind of garbage that you see on Instagram and YouTube about how to make people believe in your brand because you use the right colors. But actual marketing where you present a message and that message was crafted with an emotion behind it. People who respond to that intentionally crafted message are showing what their motivations are because they were clearly motivated enough by the message to take action. You've heard a lot of people talk about narrative, especially in politics. There's there's the liberal narrative, and there's the Republican narrative, and there's the conservative narrative, and the church narrative, and people talk a lot about narrative. Narrative is not the power in influence. The power in influence actually comes from messaging. It takes 2 steps to get to a narrative. It takes messaging first, and then messaging builds a narrative. If you think about messaging, messaging is supposed to be an emotional thing, just a statement, just a message, just like a text message, right? Are you afraid of being the kind of father that isn't present for your kids? That creates emotion in the right, ideologically predisposed person.
Fuck.
There's no woman out there who's going to be motivated by that. She might be motivated to tell her partner about that, but it's not going to resonate with her like it resonates with me as a father of young children. But that's just the message. Then the narrative is not emotional in nature. The narrative is logical in nature. So you use an emotional message to communicate a logical narrative. Are you afraid of being the kind of father that's not present for your child? oh man, that pulls at my heartstrings. Well, then all you have to do is sign up for this app that reminds you every Sunday to read your kids a story. You're like, oh, that makes total sense. All I need is
After a while, it starts to feel like all companies do is just make money off of your internal drives or your inherited drives, your genetic drives, your social drives. Like everything is just like, for all the people that like this thing, buy this. For all the people who want other people see them liking this thing, buy this. For all the people who are already doing this thing, you don't want to be different from them, do you? Buy this. It's just like, bro, it's just like, I guess it's just a part of the world. There is no other way to do it, but it's like, Jesus Christ, dude. After a while, it makes me feel like it's just kind of like, it almost feels like we're farming people after a while. Like in a video game, like, oh, we're going to farm this monster to get all these. It's like you're farming people. I guess that's just the way the world works, but there's something about that feels oddly dissatisfying.
reminder, and I'm going to be a good dad. And that's messaging and narrative. The same thing happens in politics, the same thing happens in geopolitics, the same thing happens the whole world over. Because in the intelligence world, we understand messaging and narrative. We know how to use messaging and narrative. It's how you elect a president. It's the reason that Saudi Arabia went to war with Iran over Yemen. Like it's everybody understands at a national security level the idea of creating a message or a narrative using emotional messaging. But when it comes to business, people don't get it yet. They haven't learned that lesson yet because they've all been taught through an MBA program or something else that you sell toothpaste by creating more toothpaste with brighter colors on more shelves.
Thinking about ideology, and everything you just said there, has your experience over the last, 20, 30 years really made you rethink and look at the world entirely differently? Because if you were so focused and able to detect and understand messaging and narrative, you must just see it everywhere you go and everything you do.
Right, so there were two big aha moments for me. And the first was in the very beginning parts of my training at CIA. I mean, when I went through all of the CIA recruiting process and all of my time in the military, I just felt like I was doing the right thing. I just felt like I was doing a good job. I felt like I was special, right? Like, wow, I must be super special because I'm getting picked for the National Clandestine Service. So I felt like I was doing everything right. And then I actually ended up going through my training program where they confirmed that I actually was broken in certain ways. I was high performing because I had trauma as a child. I lie and I steal and I have no problem with sociopathy because I'm not mentally healthy, right? Like that's basically what they confirmed. Like you're wired in a certain way that's really useful, but you're actually not neurotypical. You're not successful in the way that you thought you were successful, but you are still very useful. And oh, by the way, you're even more special because now you work for CIA. So don't ever stop working for CIA because they know that what drives us is our ideology, right? Our ideology and then our ego. So they hook us that way. So for me, that was my first big aha moment because up until then, I always thought maybe I understood the world, but nobody else seemed to understand it the way I understood it. Like I could see the hypocrisy in high school and I could see the hypocrisy in my mom and my dad, and they would do things that were different than what they would tell me to do. And I don't understand, how is the customer always right? But then like sometimes the company wins the lawsuit. Like it doesn't make sense. How is there a legal structure?
Yeah, that's another thing. Like the way we talk to kids is like super like, we give kids stuff to where it's like you have to eventually unlearn what we've taught you. And it's just like, because we do this thing where it's just like, because kids are so stupid that we can't, that they won't be able to understand nuance, they won't be able to see it. So we'll tell them the world is black and white when they're young, and then have them unlearn that, and then learn something different when they get older. But it's like, that type of thinking is probably why there are a bunch of fucking adults who only view the world as black and white. Because you taught them that as a kid thinking, oh, well, we'll teach them something incorrect. And then in their formative years, by the way. And then once they're older, we'll break that down and be like, okay, well, it's not. It's like, no. What? No. It's like, why? What is it about, like, you would literally have to say, well, children are just too stupid to understand. You have to say that. You can't be like, well, I don't think they're too stupid to understand, but I'm not going to tell them that anyway. It's like, bro, like, you're asking for it at that point. Like, Jesus fucking Christ.
But criminals don't go to jail if there's a legal structure. Like I remember seeing it all and thinking that it didn't make sense, but never actually being confident enough to say anything about it because it was a secret and I didn't feel comfortable sharing that secret. CIA then taught me, what you're seeing is actually the world as it really is. And let's train you to show you and give you a vocabulary to understand what you're seeing. Let's teach you about human psychology so you understand why it works the way that it works, why everybody sees it and nobody talks about it. right? So that was my first big aha moment. And then my second big aha moment came when I left CIA and I was unemployed for like 6 months, living in my in-laws' converted garage with a 1-year-old child, wondering how the fuck I did so many things so wrong that I couldn't get a job, even though I was just part of the CIA. And in that time, feeling like just the world's biggest loser, the only skill that I could lean on was what the CIA had taught me to do. So then I lied my way into a Fortune 10 company, and all of a sudden, I wasn't a loser anymore. And once I realized that I could use CIA skills to succeed in business, that was my second big aha moment. So now, everything I see through a lens of CIA skills in a business world.
Perception versus perspective was one of the other things that I've heard you talk about. Was quite a big, I guess, shift in understanding, but something that the regular person doesn't really understand.
Yeah, so the idea of perception and perspective, I have to define them first, right? Perception is what you believe you see. Where you sit is how you perceive the world around you. Perspective is how other people see where you're sitting. So when I think about us right now across the table from each other, my perception is what I see of you. Your perspective is very different than my perception, right? At a minimum, I'm looking at you with a background that's different than when you're looking at me with a background. So the benefit, the advantage that CIA gives its field officers is that it trains us to recognize and distrust our perception. Because perception really only comes from one source, and that is your own 5 senses. You are the source of information for your perception. So for anybody who's ever seen like a little pile of socks in the lower left-hand corner and they thought it was a rat and they jumped until they realized it's socks, that is your perception lying to you. Perspective means that you get data objectively from the world around you. So if you're in your room and you see a pile of black in the corner, your perspective tells you, this is your room, there's never been a rat in your room ever before. That pile in the corner is probably something like socks. Your perspective keeps things objective. Perception makes things very subjective or very emotional. So CIA trains us to lean into our perspective, gain perspective, think about things objectively, because if you lean on your perception, you're leaning on emotions, and emotions are very likely wrong.
How can I train myself to lean more on my perspective?
There's 2 really quick things that you can do. The first is immediately distrust your emotions. Know right away when you're feeling emotions. In other words, what I'm saying is don't trust your gut, which is the antithesis of what most people tell you to do. Most people say trust your gut. I'm telling you right now, your gut is more often than not lying to you, because your gut is based in emotion. Your girlfriend's not about to dump you. Your boyfriend isn't cheating on you. You're not about to go bankrupt. Nobody cares about the zit on your nose, right? That is most likely true. There's a small chance that your perception is correct, but when it comes to gambling, are you going to bet on the small chance or the bigger chance? You should always gamble on the bigger chance. The bigger chance you only really understand through perspective. You have perspective on something, then you have multiple data points on something. So when you feel yourself getting emotional, stop and let your emotion happen for a second, right? I feel nervous. I feel anxious.
This is what people would make fun of this or call this woo-woo or esoteric, but it's come around that science has proven this. It's basically mindfulness. Hold on, I'm having a reaction to something. I'm a little bit emotional, and my thoughts are a little bit emotional. My thoughts are racing right now. Let me take a moment. Hold on. Take a deep breath, relax. I understand, and I'm noticing these emotions and thoughts that I'm having. Let me take a moment to really evaluate this. Yeah.
Just I feel doubtful. Okay. I probably don't have to. You probably shouldn't. Because whoever's sitting across the table from you, whoever's coming into the room with you, whoever else is on the bus with you, they are all focused on 1,000 different things. And the things that they're focused on most likely don't include you.
Sounds easier said than done.
Correct.
Is that a process of repetitions to train yourself to think like that?
It is. It takes momentum. So what ends up having to happen is that you need to exercise it intentionally at first. And what happens is as you intentionally exercise your perspective over perception, what will start to happen is you will start to see that what you were worried about doesn't happen. And then once you see it not happen, once you see your perspective give you the correct information over your perception, once you see that happen once, then it starts to gain momentum. And then it happens again, and it gains more momentum, and more momentum, and more momentum, until the time comes that you realize it's much easier. But it's a learned skill. You have to learn to think objectively instead of subjectively, think rationally instead of emotionally. And a big part of what helps you do that is understanding that 90% of the people out there, they're all trapped in their own perception. They're all trapped in thinking emotionally. They don't even know that there's an alternative. Just think about this, man. The conversation we're having right now, the people who are hearing this conversation right now, who have never heard that there's a difference between perception and perspective, are already better equipped than all the other assholes who have never heard this conversation. They're already one step ahead of their competition. They're one step ahead of their spouses, their partners, their bullies. They're one step ahead of everybody because now they can use the words perception and perspective, subjective and objective, emotional and logical and rational. They can use these words to define how they want to think, even if they don't think that way yet. That's the huge advantage to what CIA calls the trained and the untrained. Trained people at least are aware that there's an alternative option. Untrained people aren't even aware that there's an option. The vast majority of people out there are what I call
That is another, and that is an additional aspect of mind control. It's not enough to like. People think mind control is as long as I can just control these certain answers, as long as I can get you to believe this thing. Like I don't need to. You don't have to get them to believe a certain thing. All you have to do is funnel them, make their mind a funnel to where like no matter what you feed them, it all goes into this direction. If your mind is only accepting of two routes, the idea of there being three, four, five, six routes is just like you don't even think about it, so you don't choose those options. Like people talk about free will and like there's an aspect of determinism and all that to where like, but if you just if you could change someone's determinism or deterministic output or outcomes just by telling them, hey, there's a third or fourth option, and then that those forks in their road of life expand exponentially, it's just kind of like, okay, but what if I didn't tell them that? And then I waited a year to tell them. Like how loose is determinism, I guess. I don't know. How many things are we not engaging in because it's just like our mind isn't even equipped to even view it as an actual possibility. It's kind of like as cliche and a little cringe as it is when people say you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's more so, yeah, it's about confidence and like always trying. But at the same time, it's like if you assume that you're going to fail without even trying, you're most likely not going to try at all. That's the wall that you have to break down in your mind.
bobbleheads. They don't even know there's an option. They're completely unaware of an alternative solution, an alternative process. So they're trapped in their perception. They're trapped in their emotion. They're trapped in their subjectivity. And that makes it so much easier for people like you and me and everyone listening right now to use rational, objective perspective to get those people to do whatever we want them to do.
You've had a lot of recent success in business, with your company Everyday Spy and other ventures that you've been involved in. What are some of the fundamental skills that you find yourself transferring directly from your CIA experience every day when you're closing business?
At CIA, there's a saying at CIA that I realized is also a saying in business that I didn't realize until afterwards, and it's called kissing a lot of frogs. Mm-hmm. And it's a salesmanship term outside of CIA, where it means that you have to call a lot of leads, you have to shake a lot of hands, you have to make a lot of pitches before one of them turns into a prince, right? At CIA, we have the same concept, but for a different reason. Because finding a person who is willing to tell you state secrets, willing to risk their life to give away the secrets that they were entrusted with, that's what an actual asset does, right? When CIA sends a field officer to, you name the country, when they recruit an asset from that country, what they are actually recruiting is a foreign national who is a local of that country, who has access to state secrets, who is willing to share those state secrets in exchange for something else. Money, alcohol, pornography, you name it. Right? Who knows what they're after? But your job is to find the person who has secrets and give the person the thing that they want in exchange for those secrets. That is a rare person to find. It is hard to find a willing collaborator from a foreign country who has access to secrets and is willing to share those secrets with you in exchange for some kind of remuneration. Very, very difficult to find. But if you can find a spy, you can find a traitor, you can make a sale, right? The two skills are incredibly interconnected. So what I found is that the process and the skills that we use to find an asset translate immediately into business. Everything from how you talk to the person so that you can identify their core motivations, gaining perspective over that person's position in life. If you can gain the perspective of your customers, you already know what your customers think. You already know what they want. You already know what their problems are. You know what their problems are going to be because you can sit in their shoes, but they can't.
It's crazy how much life is really just psychology and understanding how people's minds work. Because if you can find out how people's minds work, you can kind of, I don't know, it almost feels like you're unstoppable. It's kind of like a life hack. If I understand, like if I know that this person is incredibly insecure, all I gotta do is just throw them a couple compliments, give them a reason to have some confidence, and boom, they'll do whatever the fuck I say because I was the first person to give them that. It's just like, after a while of understanding all that stuff, it feels a little bit sociopathic at a certain point because it's like you're not operating on human to human level. You're operating on like a macro. I don't want to load it because it sounds too much, but like not God sense, but like you're on like if everyone's like on this level, you're like up here and you're like watching where all the people are from up here. You're watching how they interact and you're able to punch holes where you need to in order to extract what you need. It's super. It feels robotic. It feels robotic.
Sit in your shoes, which gives you the advantage. So the process in espionage is a process called SADRAT, SADRAT. Very similar to the RICE acronym I gave you earlier. SADRAT is a process of human intelligence conversion or collection. The SADRAT process is actually the foundation to my company's sales process. All of our marketing for digital sales, all of our human interactions, all of our upselling and everything else, all falls into the same SADRAT process that I learned at CIA, only we use it for sales and we use it for marketing.
SADRAT.
SADRAT stands for spot, assess, develop, recruit, handle, and terminate. That's what SADRAT stands for. And in classic US government acronym jargon, handle starts with an H, but in the acronym we use the letter A. Spot, assess, develop, recruit, handle, terminate. Spot means you find a potential client, right? Recruit means you sell that client on your product in exchange for their money, right? Assess is a step that we use at CIA to determine whether or not somebody will be a good, productive client. Oftentimes in sales, people skip that step. They don't think about a good, productive customer. A good, productive customer has lifetime customer value. A good, productive customer turns into referrals, turns into positive reviews and positive ratings. They have infinite value more than just the money they give you in exchange for your service. Assess is a critical piece in the CIA recruitment process. It's also a very important piece in my company.
I'll tell you something which kind of validates that from my own experience before we continue on that point of assess. In the first couple of years of my first company, we would just take any customer. And when we looked at our financial record for the previous year, what we noticed was that there was a cohort of customers that were exceptionally valuable. And even though we'd won business with this other set of customers, we were actually losing money because they were only lasting for a month. Yep. So we made this sort of framework to determine the customers that we should actually say no to, basically, as you say, based on their lifetime value. And we figured out that there's a certain type of brand that has a certain size budget, that has a certain number of employees, that is trying to solve a certain type of problem that would be exceptionally profitable for us. So when we got the inquiries coming through our website, we were now looking at the inquiries through that lens and measuring them through that lens, because it became so clear that all of our best customers fit into the sort of top right of this sort of Venn diagram. And that's where here, when you say assess, and it was absolutely game changing for our business. But most entrepreneurs will just take every customer and they think of all of them as having the same potential and lifetime value.
Exactly. You just nailed the word, game changing. You can play the game by just selling to anybody. But if you want to change the game, you have to make sure that you're selling to a very deliberate cohort of customers, because those customers not only yield more revenue per customer, but they bring in more customers like them, which is where you get an exponential level of not revenue, but profit. Just like you said, you talked about a very profitable group of clients, not a high revenue group of clients. So when you focus the conversation on profit instead of revenue, and you focus it on the right customer instead of just customer, it's game changing for your company.
So you assess targets in the CIA for using the same sort of framework.
This is why you'll notice that, especially if you work in retail and you have like those boring ass fucking meetings about what does the customer want, you'll notice that your company will break down different types of customers to the point to where like these customers are looking for this thing, these customers are looking for this thing, and these customers are looking for this thing. We can individualize or specialize the approach to each type of customer to garner the most profit possible, because we're appealing to different things at a different time and we're getting different another life hack.
Framework.
Yep, using the same framework, because in recruitment operations, what you're looking for is people who will be good assets. In the business framework, what you're looking for is people who will be good customers. An asset and a customer are almost the same thing, right? A customer is the most important asset of a company. And what does a customer do? A customer provides something of value in exchange for something they want. What does an asset do? They provide something of value in exchange for something they want. So it's really a one-for-one comparison as long as you understand the language of espionage and the language of business. So what we did in espionage is every time you're trying to develop a source, you're always asking yourself the question, will this source be a good, reliable asset in the future? Will they do what we tell them to do? Will they be able to provide information in the long term, not just once or twice, right? Is the information they provide high value information? It's the same thing you're doing with a customer. Will this customer do what I tell them to do? Will this customer provide high levels of value? Will this customer last for a long time?
You used the word espionage a few times there. What is the definition of the word espionage?
Espionage is defined as the stealing of secrets. So espionage is always illegal. There's no country in the world that says that espionage is legal. So espionage is, when...
Yeah, okay, sure, but like, there's no country that says espionage is legal, but every country is fine with using espionage in another country. It's like, after a while, but like, bro, shut the fuck up. Is it bad or it's not? It's like, imagine it is illegal to rape in our country. But if you go to another country and you do the exact same thing, it's just like, all right, bro, okay, whatever, bro, sure.
CIA commits espionage, when MI6 commits espionage, they have a carve-out in their law as it pertains to their own undercover clandestine services.
Yeah.
So that a American can conduct espionage overseas and not be prosecutable for espionage under U.S. law. if they're part of CIA.
bet.
Same thing is true in the UK. An MI6 officer can commit espionage overseas and not be held accountable for it under British law. It's a carve-out. Otherwise, if you're a British citizen committing espionage anywhere, in the UK or abroad, you are punishable under UK law.
I've heard you say that espionage really is about getting people to let you into their secret lives.
Correct.
What is our secret life?
So, if you go back to an earlier part in our conversation, we were talking about how when you trust people, you'll tell them your secrets, right? When you help people, they'll tell you their secrets. There are three lives that anybody lives. We have a public life, a private life, and a secret life. The public life is the life that we're all very familiar with, right? It's the life that you live for everybody else to see. Not just the people who watch your podcast and the people who, work for you in your company, but your public life also includes what you show your friends. It includes what you show your church. It includes who you are when you walk down the street. The clothes that you choose to wear are a perfect example of your public life. It's what you want people to think of you. Remember the E in Rice. Mother Teresa wanted people to see her a certain way. That is her public life. When you're in espionage, the goal is to get away from the public life, because if you want someone to give you secrets, you can't get secrets from somebody who's in their public life, because they're protected in their public life. So you have to move them from public into secret. And the middle step between public and secret is private life. So you have to move somebody from public life to private life. Private life is the life that your partner knows. Private life is the life that your closest friends know. Your mom and your dad may know it. It's the people who know that your feet secretly stink. It's the people who know that you don't really like to eat oysters because whatever, they give you gas. That's all stuff that's private. Your business partners don't know that. Your customers don't know that. The people who watch your podcast don't know that. And it makes the people in your private life feel like they know you. And it's what makes it so that for you, in your public life, you feel like you have meaningful relationships. Because instead of 200 people who you kind of know, now you've got 15 people who are in your private life. They know your home address, they know your birthday, they know your favorite ice cream. It makes you feel good. Inside of someone's private life, they will share sensitivities, but they may still not share secrets. Because it's one thing to secretly tell somebody that you're worried about your business. You're worried about the next revenue cycle. You're worried about maybe your wife is having an affair. Those things are uncomfortable, but you'll share them with people in your private life. But you would never tell someone in your private life that you're having an affair. You would never tell someone in your private life that you hit your child. You would never tell someone in your private life that your parents sexually molested you or whatever else. Those dark, deep secrets only live in your secret life. A life that's so secretive that you don't even share it with the people in your private life. What we're trained to do is to follow a process that allows us to meet somebody in their public life, get them to let us into their private life, and then get them to let us into their secret life. Because it's a very simple psychological process to get into someone's secret life, because secretly we all want somebody in our secret life. We all want to have someone we can tell our secrets to. We just don't trust anybody in our private life enough to get there. So if you know how to leverage perception and perspective, use the 4 core motivations, when you know how to leverage SADRAT to create trust, you can actually cut into someone's secret life. And once you're in someone's secret life, they never stop trusting you. They never let you leave, because it was so rare and so hard to find you from their perspective. They don't ever want you to leave. So even if you break their heart, even if you lie to them, their trust in you is so great and so strong and so subconscious that you don't ever leave their secret life.
I'm very keen to know how you get into someone's secret life and how they might get into your own. And we talked about some of those principles earlier. But I was wondering if one of the techniques you might use is by sharing your own fake secret life with them to create an element of comfort. I think I've heard, and I
Probably a lot of abusive people, a lot of narcissistic people, a lot of sociopaths, psychopaths, a lot of people with these types of minds are probably looking at this dude like, bro, you are giving away the fucking game, dog. What are you doing? Shut the fuck up. Damn, how am I supposed to do this shit on a down low? If you expose a magician never reveals his secrets, motherfucker. What are you doing?
I think I know from doing this podcast generally that vulnerability creates vulnerabilities to some extent, i.e. if you open up to someone, they're more likely to open up to you.
Correct. So you're getting into now a form of mirroring, much like we were talking about physical mirroring. Now what you're talking about is emotional mirroring. There's a nuance there, because you have to know when to mirror appropriately, because if you're mirroring somebody else and they know that you're mirroring them, then subconsciously they feel like they're in control.
Okay, interesting.
So what you need to do is you need to mirror just enough to get to the place where you can get them to mirror you. When they mirror you, subconsciously they know that you're in control. So once you are in a position of power or control in a conversation, then you can use the ploy of feigned vulnerability, which I wouldn't quite use it the same way you did. I wouldn't make up something vulnerable. Instead, we call it opening a window, or opening a window that opens a door. So we have these windows and doors in conversation. So opening a door means completely changing a subject, right? So if I were to just say right now, I don't really like French food, that's opening a door. You as the interviewer can go through that door, or you can close that door because it's not relevant, right? But if I open a window about how I have certain digestive challenges that I don't like to talk about, that's a window. You can always come back and push on that window and get me to go through a whole new door of conversation, right? So when it comes to vulnerability and conversing with somebody about vulnerability, you want to present windows and not present doors. So instead of saying something that's a fake vulnerability, you would say something that's a real vulnerability that may not be applicable to you. Like perhaps you say something like, I have been having massive arguments with my wife recently, and sometimes it makes me just want to leave home. That's real. That's not saying I'm going to leave home. It's not saying what I'm arguing about. But if I believe that in your secret life, you are also fighting with your wife and you're living in a different room and you're not telling anybody about it, I want to show some sort of bridge between us that gets you to admit that to me. Because if you can admit that to me, maybe I can find out more about what you're doing to cope with the fact that your marriage is falling apart. Maybe you have a girlfriend. Maybe you're on Tinder. Maybe you're doing something else, right? Maybe you're drinking. Maybe you're doing drugs. I don't know. But I need you to let me into that secret life. So I'm going to present a window and see if you go through that window.
So say that I was the asset and you were the CIA agent. You have more experience in that role than I do. And I was sat in a bar and I said to you, yeah, God, this week's been really hard at home because my wife, she's annoying me. What you were trying to get into my secret life. How might you maneuver from that?
Right. So the basic principle here that we would use is called the 2-in-1 combination. So 2 means 2 questions and 1 means 1 confirmation. So when you present to me a topic that I want to explore further, the most rudimentary of techniques out there is you present to me a topic I want to explore, so I ask a follow-on question. You will answer my follow-on question because you're predisposed to answer my question. I will ask another follow-on question. You'll be predisposed to answer that as well. And then I'll say something that confirms what you're saying. That way it doesn't feel like you're being interrogated. Instead, it feels like you're talking to somebody who gets you. So I'll confirm what you say. Like, oh yeah, I had a girlfriend once and her feet stank so bad. And man, it just made me want to sleep with her feet outside of the covers. And then you just stop there. Because you've asked 2 follow-on questions and 1 confirming statement, the psychology of the other person is going to be to continue volunteering information. And then you just repeat the cycle. So they give you another piece of information. You follow question, confirmation. Follow question, confirmation. To you, it feels formulaic. Listen, ask a follow-up question. Listen, ask a follow-up question. To them, it feels like they are talking to somebody who really, really cares. Just put yourself in the shoes. Practice a little perspective here. Imagine if you really were talking about something that was frustrating you, and the person sitting next to you at the bar literally didn't do anything other than ask you follow-up questions and agree with you. You're gonna feel like, you get me, man. Why can't my wife get me like you get me? Like, you know what I'm talking about. I completely agree with you, man. Tell me more. Oh, dude. And you can see how human beings just fall right into the groove.
The parallel here to business, but also the sort of transferable skills here are quite clear. From what I heard, when I'm doing an interview, when I'm meeting a candidate for a job, when I'm trying to sell to a client, really my disposition should be to be doing exactly what you said, asking them questions, confirming, asking them questions and confirming.
Right. If you think about it, everybody's in a contest for control. Who controls a conversation? The person asking the questions or the person saying the most words? It's always the person asking the questions. Because the person asking the questions determines the direction of the conversation.
It feels the other way around though. It feels like the person speaking the most has the most control.
And what did I tell you about feelings? Don't trust them. Don't trust your gut. Don't trust your emotions, right? It feels like the person talking the most is the person in control. It is not. It is not. The person asking the questions is in control. Think about this interview right now. I will answer whatever question you bring up next. If I don't answer the next question you bring up, I will feel awkward because you and I both know who's in control of this conversation, even though I'm the one saying the most words.
Interesting.
The implications of this in sales, human resourcing, marketing, advertising, it's the reason my company has grown 300% every year for the last 3 years. It's because the human condition is so predictable. People just want to feel heard, they want to feel listened to, and they want to feel validated. You can automate that. You can automate the process.
I would also say, what does that say about the rest of the world, though? Where, you have people get to the point to where this is all they want, and this is, the most fulfilling thing. What is the rest of the world offering you that is just, these are the things that most people want? It's kind of damn, son, which means you're not getting it anywhere else. You gotta get it from advertisements. You gotta get it from human resources. You gotta get it from governments. You gotta get it from media. It's just holy fucking shit. What is wrong with the world?
That makes people feel heard, confirmed, and validated. You can automate it, and then they will sell themselves. That's really good digital marketing. That's how it works. Really good direct sales. That's how it works. Really good salesmen have already learned this. Real good salesmen understand that it's all about getting a lead to talk about themselves as quickly as possible. And then once they start talking about themselves, you just ask questions. Let them lead themselves through the sales process. The problem is with most business owners out there who haven't been trained in what we're talking about, they feel like they have to talk the most. They feel like they have to get the customer to understand the benefits of the product. I need to get you to hear me. I need to get you to listen. I need to get you to understand the value of what I'm offering you. That's not what the customer wants. That's the salesperson's perception. What the customer actually wants is a product that's going to solve their problems and a salesman that's going to help them. What's the kind of person that helps you? The person who asks questions.
I'm really interested in this concept of change and how the CIA drills into you that you need to accept change, because in all of our lives, one of the things that most of us are quite bad at is accepting change. We're very rigid. Again, maybe that's because of perception and ego and these kinds of things. But when I was reading through what they teach you at the CIA, they change your relationship with change.
They do. So a big part of the advantage of having change is the fact that it's not natural to accept change. So if you can adapt to change faster than your opponent, you have a built-in advantage. You have an edge. So these three principles, time, distance, and change in direction, these three principles that CIA teaches as concepts apply in multiple different ways. So as an example, time means that you need to accept that things take time, that time is a resource for you to use. Too often we feel like time is fleeting. Time is running out. We have to take action quickly, like time is against us. That's not really true. In fact, time is a tool that you can use to break things down. Secrets don't withstand the test of time. How long will it take for you and I to get into each other's secret lives? 9 months. That takes time. Not many people would wait 9 months for anything, right? But time is a huge advantage that you have. If all of your opponents are rushing and you're the only person who isn't rushing, time becomes a huge advantage to you that nobody else has.
Explain that in the context of business then.
So in business, people are trying to make a rapid sale. Most people want an impulse buyer, right? What do I have to say right now to get you to buy my $7 thing? I don't really want you to buy a $7 thing. I want you to buy a $97 thing. If it takes me 3 weeks to get you to buy a $97 thing, it takes this other person 3 minutes to get you to buy a $7 thing, who's the better salesman? Well, I would argue that it depends on what you're looking for in terms of long term. This person selling a $7 thing every 3 minutes has to find a new lead. They have to find, arguably, if they sell 1 out of every 10, if they convert at 10%, they need to find 10 new leads every 3 minutes to make $7. If I convert at 10%, I need 1 person to buy a $97 thing every 3 weeks. I have a much less demand on my time to find new leads. And I can qualify my leads better. And if someone's willing to spend $97 on something, guess what that tells me about that person? They have more disposable income. The $7 person, I don't know anything about their disposable income. Do they have some? Do they not? Is that mom and dad's credit card? I don't really know. I'd rather spend 3 weeks of time cultivating a person who buys a $97 something, because then I can sell them a $297 something. And then I can sell them a $997 something, because I can test their threshold for price sensitivity.
Was there any situations during your time abroad where you felt like your life was at risk, or any sort of really clear apparent threat?
Yes, there's one specific moment which I'm actively trying to get cleared by CIA to talk about, where I felt like with high confidence that I had fallen under the scrutiny of a local country's surveillance team. So I was in a foreign country. I believed I fell under their surveillance apparatus, and they were actively surveilling me. And the country that I was in and the job that I was doing in that country made me believe that if I had a surveillance team on me, their goal would be to apprehend me at a certain point in the operation, at a point where they could get the most propaganda and political leverage, et cetera, et cetera. So that occurrence happened in about 2011, and I'm trying to go through a process now to get that cleared by CIA. Up until about 9 months ago, CIA was giving me the thumbs up that I'd be able to talk about it. But then geopolitical tensions in the world changed, and CIA changed their mind along with that. So now I'm exploring what avenues I have to get them to adhere to their previous approval of letting me tell my story versus being forced to adhere to my continued secrecy agreement.
So you were in a foreign country, you felt like you were under the surveillance apparatus of a foreign country. What gave you that impression? Was it looking over your shoulder and seeing something, or?
It's the process that we're trained to use for surveillance detection. So we're trained in a process where you run what's known as an SDR, and in that SDR, you have steps, methods that you use to determine whether or not you are being actively surveilled. And again, we use time to our advantage. So it's not like something happened in 5 seconds and I thought I was under surveillance. I intentionally carried out a series of steps over, say, 3 hours or 6 hours. And over that period of time, I had enough information, enough data points to confirm with high confidence that I would be under surveillance.
SDR?
Surveillance detection round.
Okay. And that could be like a car following you, or it could be
a person following you, or a drone following you, or your phone being acting in a certain way to make you believe that you're being digitally or cyber surveilled.
Sexpionage.
Is it a real thing? Subject. It's a very real thing. It's a very real thing that's used in different ways based off of a country's civil rights. So in the United States, we don't really use sexpionage.
No, really?
We don't really use it because it goes against the rights, the individual rights of the citizen who works at the intelligence agency, right? So if you tell a female intelligence officer that they must sleep with this target in order to get information, you're violating her rights as a U.S. citizen. In China, that's not the same case. In Russia, that's not the same case, right? In the UK, they don't subscribe to forced sexual acts in service of collecting intelligence.
Forced.
Forced.
But you can if you want to.
What ends up happening is you can if you want to, and for those people who do, they end up creating what's known as an operational security risk, because once sex is involved, the power shift becomes untenable. So if the whole goal of a handler is to maintain control over the asset, once sex happens, it's harder for the handler to maintain control over the asset in a objective relationship, because now sex leads to feelings, like hormonally it leads to feelings. The act of orgasm releases certain hormones that create senses of connection with another person, right? So when that oxytocin drops, when that neuroepinephrine drops, your body starts to tell you that you are connected to another person. That is the antithesis of a proper asset handler relationship. So you start, and we call that falling in love with your asset.
I won't ask you if you ever engaged in anything like that.
I appreciate that. I was fortunate enough that I made all the connective hormones I needed to make with my wife, who was also CIA.
Disguises. Did you ever wear a disguise?
Absolutely. Yeah, disguises are something that are much more common than people would believe, and much less quality than people would believe.
Really?
Yeah. So most disguises, what we actually call disguises inside CIA, we call them costumes. we don't really call them disguises. Disguises is a word that's used in pop media and pop culture. In the real world, we call them costumes. And our costume department, our disguise department, the whole objective behind a disguise or a costume is just to make you not look like you. Not to make you look like someone else, not even to make you look like a realistic person. It's just to make sure that you don't look like you, right? So consider your picture, what you look like. You have some very definitive features. Your nose, your forehead, your beard shape, your hair, right? The way that you hold your face, the neckline that you have. So if we wanted to change your appearance just so that you didn't look like Stephen Bartlett, all we'd have to do is take away those things that make you you and turn them into something else, right? We could put a nappy red-headed wig on you. We could put giant oversized sunglasses on you. We could shave your face or paint your beard gray, or even put a fake mustache on. We could put an oversized necklace around your neck. And now the picture of that is not going to look like the picture of Steve Bartlett.
Those are all light disguises though, right?
Correct.
Is that there's deeper types of disguises, right?
Correct.
I've always wondered if they like plastic surgery, and, if they give a spy plastic surgery and those kinds of things.
So there's 3 levels of disguise. There are some places that will go as far as permanent plastic surgery, but most Western services won't do that because it doesn't help the officer. Like, to have a permanent change to your body made doesn't make you more effective at going undercover, because now you're just permanently changed. So you still look the way you look. The value in a disguise is being able to reset the disguise, to reset the costume so that you don't look like yourself. So our 3 levels are level 1, level 2, level 3. Light disguise is level 1. Level 2 is long-term disguise. Level 3 is something that we call prosthetic disguise. So light disguise is what we talked about: oversized sunglasses and a nappy wig, and all of a sudden you're a different person, right? You're Loyola. You're not Steve Bartlett anymore. Phase 2 is long-term disguise. Long-term disguise means it's still you, but we change you physically for a long-term operation. So instead of having short hair, we grow your hair long. Instead of having a beard, we shave you clean. We lose some of that hard-earned body mass that you have, or we gain body mass that you don't really want, right? Maybe we put some kind of fake but long-standing tattoo on you, right? We do something with you that changes the way you look physically. It's still you. The reason that's important is because you always have to ask yourself the question: what will a police officer think when they storm into your hotel room at night? If you're wearing a light disguise and a police officer storms into your room at night, they're going to ask questions like, why do you have a wig? Or if you don't have a wig, you just wear a ball cap and a hoodie, there's nothing for them to ask, right? They're basically saying, oh, this is you, your license says it's you, and you wear this ball hat, this ball cap, and this hoodie all the time. Whatever. You're not going to jail for that. So level 1 and level 2 disguise are very safe. It's hard to get someone arrested using those 2. Level 3 is what the movies are made out of. That's your prosthetics. If we put fake ears on you, if we put a fake nose on you, if we change your eye color, if we put in a fake missing tooth, right, instead of a real missing tooth. If we do that kind of stuff to you, police officer breaks into your room in the middle of the night. Now they ask, why do you have a fake nose that you're not wearing right now? Why do you have fake eyebrows? Why do you have fake ears? Why do you have a blacked out tooth, right? Now they look at your ID and you don't look like your ID.
I guess I get why, but at the same time, that kind of sucks that I have an ID. I am now locked into looking a certain way. Like, well, what's a good reason for you to look different? It's just like, I just can't want to look different sometimes. Maybe I have a certain nose, but some days I want to have a different nose. Is that okay, or is that illegal? It's like, sorry, the ID doesn't look like that. You're going to have to keep with that nose. Imagine someone gets an ID, right, but it doesn't expire for another 5 years, but they get plastic surgery on their face. Are they now forced to update their ID without breaking the law? Is that the case? I hope not. I sound dumb as fuck, but...
Much less common, I'm guessing.
Very uncommon. Very uncommon. And you would use them strategically at different times. But if you watch too much Mission Impossible or Alias, you start to think that people wear disguises all the time. There's so many problems to disguise. There's so many operational inadequacies to disguise that we could have a whole conversation about it, right? Like, things don't stick to your face in the extreme cold. Things don't stick to your face in the extreme heat, or when you're sweating your ass off in the Philippines. Things melt. Makeup melts. The adhesive that sticks a fake mustache to your lip starts to disintegrate. Like, there's all sorts of problems with prosthetics in real life that Tom Cruise doesn't have to worry about in movies.
When people think of spies doing espionage overseas, wearing disguises and all these kinds of things, it does make you think they must be exceptionally good at dealing with fear, because a lot of people would be too nervous or too anxious or whatever to not crack under that kind of pressure. If you're meeting the guy that has the nuclear codes for Iran or whatever, and you've been working for 9 months to meet this person, you've got to have a good handle on your own anxiety and your own fear. Do the CIA target people that are good at that, or do they train that, or is it both?
It's both. It's a great question. It's both. CIA wants people that carry a certain level of anxiety, because when you carry anxiety, you're naturally paranoid, which means you have heightened observational skills. Most people who suffer from anxiety feel like they're inadequate in some way. In reality, they are hyper-adequate. They are more than adequate. Anxiety is a superpower through the eyes of the CIA. I would take somebody with anxiety any day over somebody without anxiety, because anxiety keeps you alive. Anxiety keeps you sharp. Anxiety keeps you learning.
Shit, I need to get a job at the CIA with my anxious ass. Holy shit, I might be an amazing fit to snap somebody.
It keeps you attentive. It's a good thing. But to your second point, you are also trained. You are trained to understand how fear works. And to oversimplify it, your brain has two hemispheres, right? A left brain and a right brain. Your left brain is your logical brain, your right brain is your emotional brain. Because you have two different hemispheres and they operate on two different bases, right? One is based in logic, one is based in emotions. They actually operate and they process at different speeds. Your logical brain processes much slower than your emotional brain, which is why it takes you an instant before you're scared, but it takes you maybe minutes, hours, weeks before you're convinced. So what ends up happening is fear in an untrained person, going back to our conversation about trained versus untrained, in an untrained person, fear is an emotion that's processed by the emotional brain very quickly. So then they react instinctively to their fear. That's where a lot of people who suffer from anxiety get held back. When you can train someone to understand that the same thing that makes them emotionally scared is also being processed by their logical brain. Your brain is actually going through the process of determining how scared you really need to be. If you can just slow down the emotional brain and train the rational brain to work a little bit faster, your whole relationship with fear completely changes.
How do they train you to slow down your emotional brain so that you don't react?
That's a big part of the reason why you have a controlled training environment that lasts for multiple months. Because what they do is they inoculate you. It's called stress inoculation. They inoculate you with scenarios designed specifically to trigger your emotional response. Even though you have been trained to not trust your emotional response, they inoculate you so that over and over again you have to go through the process of, I feel fear, I have to not accept it. I feel doubt, I have to reject it. I feel like I'm being watched, I have to reject it. I have to give my rational brain a chance to catch up so that I can get objective facts about the scenario. And there are some people who don't do it well. There are some people who never inoculate themselves against fear, so then they end up getting cut from the farm.
So for the average Joe that's listening to this now, or Jenny, the average Jenny that's listening to this now, and they live a life that's held them back because of their fear. You know, they don't take the risk. They don't raise their hand to do the presentation. They don't lean into uncertainty. Based on your training in the CIA, what would you suggest that they should do to get over that fear?
So they need to inoculate themselves as well.
Inoculate means?
Inoculate means expose yourself in controlled ways to fear. Very similar to the way you inoculate against COVID or you inoculate against the flu, right? You expose yourself to a strain that's weakened so that your body can gain some sort of familiarity with it. You do the same thing with fear. So if you're afraid to give that presentation, you're not ever going to change the fact that you're afraid to give a presentation, but you will be able to change something that you're less afraid of. So if you're afraid of going to the gym, if you're afraid of eating at a certain restaurant down the street, if you're afraid of stepping out of your front door, if you're afraid of asking your friend their opinion about whether or not you're overweight, find something small where you are less afraid of this than you are of this other thing, and inoculate yourself with this. Like lean into the small fears, the fears that you already know are kind of irrational and simple. And if you can overcome those, what will happen is you will start to gain momentum. And the thing that you do to inoculate yourself is to know up front, you know you're going to have an emotional reaction. You already know it. It's the thing that you're afraid of. You can predict that. So you already know, I'm going to ask my buddy Steve if he thinks that I'm overweight. I'm terrified to ask him. He's either going to say yes or no, or he's going to take some cop-out answer and ask me what I think. But I already know that it's going to feel uncomfortable. But he's my buddy, it's low risk. Let's see how it happens, see where it goes, right? So you go and you ask the question, you put yourself in the face of fear, you're still going to have the heart palpitations, the cold sweats, your emotional brain's going to take off, and all your physiology is going to like let loose. But then Steve is going to tell you his answer, and it's over. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then when you do the same thing with your friend Jenny, and the same thing with your friend Bruce, and the same thing with your friend Robert, by the time Robert tells you his answer, your body's not reacting the same way as it did when you talked to Steve. Small inoculations are training your emotional brain to slow down and training your rational brain to speed up. So then you move on to the next most scary thing without going to the scariest of things.
You know, I was thinking about that as you were talking, and I was thinking, gosh, I think a lot of people know that. I think they know that the way to get better at speaking on stage is to go and speak on stage, but they're still held back by, you know, God, if I do that, I'm going to mess up, and then people are going to think I'm this, that, and the other, and then I'll never X, Y, Z.
Right.
So you can say that to someone, but getting them to take that first step seems to be the impossibility.
And here's where the former CIA officer in me comes out. Because if you're too afraid to do that, good. I don't want you to do it. Because you being unable to do it gives me the advantage. The person who's listening to this, who says to themselves, I'm scared, but I'll do it anyways, that's the person who deserves the opportunity to change their life. The person who's listening to this that says, I'm too scared to do that, good. I need you to stay exactly where you are. Because in our world, the flat out truth is, our world needs cogs. Our world needs people who are trapped in the consumer cycle. We need those people. Because the people who are trapped in that consumer cycle, the people who are prisoners to their fear, are the people who run the economy. It's the people who are willing to break that cycle and capitalize on the fears that you can't overcome. Those are the people who actually provide you the service that you need.
That is like one of the, this is like a black pill thing. This is why I don't involve myself in politics. This is why I don't involve myself in like the affairs of people. It's because that is true. There's like that too many chiefs, not enough Indians type of thing. Like the world won't function if everyone is a leader. But like at the same time, with everyone not being a leader, people just end up doing and accepting some horrible fucking shit because that's just the way it is. And it's just utterly dissatisfying. But at the same time, it's like you're not I would have to, as dissatisfying as that is, I would have to change the human condition for that to no longer be the case. And that is like, what an, what an uphill battle, man, because I don't think you're ever gonna be able to actually do that effectively. I'm cringing as he's saying it, but I can't find myself disagreeing with him at the same time. It's,
because you can't do it by yourself. So I want to encourage the people who are willing to take the scary step. And I also want to discourage the people who already know that they're too afraid. We need both.
As you know, Whoop are a sponsor of this podcast. I'm an investor in the company. I've spoken about this many times before, but I'm obsessed with finding 1% gains in all that I do. I'm a big believer in the theory of marginal gains, especially in health and in fitness. Seeing 1% and small improvements in my Whoop data, be it with my sleep or my heart rate variability or other health indicators, gives me this incredible sense of forward motion. And over time, the ultimate result of these gains means a healthier and better version of myself in the long run. My Whoop, which is this thing on my wrist, has really allowed me to understand actions that I don't necessarily need to completely change, but things that I can tweak in order to become the person I want to be and go in the right direction with my health. So if you're obsessed with finding those 1% marginal gains as well, like I am, go to join.whoop.com/CEO, where you can try Whoop for 30 days, risk-free, with zero commitment to see how impactful it can be for you. You met your wife while you were an undercover CIA operative.
Yeah, it was. I am still to this day very thankful that she is a poor judge of character.
In 2014, you leave the CIA, aged 34 years old. You both resigned together?
We both resigned together.
Why?
It was mostly my idea. My wife had a stellar career. We had a 1-year-old child at the time. And we were at a point in our career, coming off of very successful operations together right before that, where we were both kind of middle management. And that middle management lifestyle meant that we're spending 12 to 16 hours a day on the job, just like most people. But the difference is when you're spending 16 hours a day on the job, it means that you're in a skiff somewhere. You can't take your work home, you can't work from home, so you're literally absent from the house. So trying to coordinate 2 16-hour schedules along with a 1-year-old, when neither of us signed up to be that kind of parent, we both wanted to be the kind of parent that was present for our children. And instead, we're giving our child to some daycare center and paying extra overage fees to have that daycare center keep the baby for 12 hours a day. It's a sucky situation. So for family reasons, more so than for career reasons, we both decided, hey, let's double down on family and let's see if we can't start all over again.
Are you going to leave America in 2030?
I'm going to try and leave America in 2027.
I read that somewhere. Why are you going to try and leave America in 2027?
So I think the United States is going through a very difficult time right now, and I think most people understand that. We are a young country. No matter how much we think that we are the best in the world, we are actually going through the early part of our adolescence as a nation. And you can see it playing out every day in the headlines. You can see it in our role in geopolitical events. You can see that we're suffering in terms of trying to identify ourselves. We don't know, do we want to be a real democracy? Do we want to be kind of a partial democracy? Do we want to treat everybody as equal? Do we not want to treat everybody as equal? We're struggling the same way that you and I did through middle school, right? My children mean the world to me. And what I want to do is give them a life where they have the choice to do anything they want to do. Unfortunately, I don't believe our country for the next 5 to 10 years is going to be the kind of country that allows children of today to choose and be whatever they want to be. I think our country has some growing up of its own to do before we really offer people equal access to opportunities. So for me, if I was my 11-year-old son, when I turned 15 or 16 years old and I start to really care about something, I would like to be in a place where I can explore that thing. I don't think that's going to be in the United States. I think that's going to be in Europe. I think that's going to be in the Middle East. I think that's going to be in Latin America, where he will have all the advantages of the world outside of the United States.
What do you think about what's going on at the moment with geopolitics as it relates to like China and the US? There's a bit of a power struggle going on, and there has been, but a lot of people forecast that China's eventually going to overtake, or maybe already has, the US as the sort of global economic force. Are you preparing for that? Do you think it's going to happen?
I think that there's 2 realistic outcomes, and there's 1 less realistic outcome. The most realistic outcome is that the United States and China continue to compete and reach parity, equality with each other. That's the most realistic outcome. Maybe the United States remains 10% bigger. Maybe China gets 2% bigger economically, but they approach parity. They approach equality. I don't want to live in the United States when it loses so much status that another country reaches economic parity. Think about that for a second. The world is accustomed to 1 superpower. Once there are 2 superpowers, everything changes. There's 2 massive languages, and you're going to have to choose which language you speak. There's 2 currencies. Which currency are you going to save your money in? There's competing priorities. There's competing politics. There's equally massive, sophisticated militaries. When you are in...
that's something that whether you're progressive, whether you're conservative on like the isolationalist bend, you're populist to where like why should we be involved with other countries? There's an aspect of like because Americans are so like American centric, we don't. It's kind of like American privilege. You don't know what it's like to be in a world where you can't go anywhere where you go somewhere and English isn't like spoken there to some extent to where you can like at least get around. You don't know what it's like to go somewhere and money for you to be able to exchange the US dollar for whatever currency is there. To be able to exchange currency and then have so much more, like if you bring like $20 USD somewhere, you could have the fucking night of your life with just $20 in another country because the US dollar is valued so much. If America isn't as at the top anymore, it won't be at the top. That your money won't be at the top anymore either. People just think, well, as long as we don't involve ourselves, we don't have to worry about any of these other things. It's just like, yes, but involving ourselves have all these downstream benefits that, whether you like it or not, do benefit your life. Do you want to get rid of all those benefits too? Because you're not going to have them if we stay out of everything. Other people will say, yes, we shouldn't have those at all if it means like involving ourselves everywhere. There are other people going to be like, well, hold on. If I can only enjoy my life here in the United States because of the amount of influence and control the United States has on the rest of the world, I don't know how I feel about being isolationist anymore. I like my life the way it is. You know what I'm saying? It becomes more complicated than just U.S. involving themselves and U.S. not involving. There's like downstream ramifications for like every single decision.
One of those two countries, at the moment that they reach parity, you are in the most dangerous position because the number one target for China will be the United States. The number one target for the United States will be China. Right now, there's not parity, there's not equality. So the United States has to worry about everybody. And China doesn't really have to worry about many people at all. But as that equality gets closer and closer, there's more and more threat. Think about it in business terms. When you're the industry leader in your business,
Google,
you don't have to worry about much. You have to worry about all the little guys, but nobody's really a direct threat. But as soon as somebody else rises to meet you, you have to worry about it. The leader used to be Yahoo, right? Yahoo had to see what it's like to lose and gain parity with Google, only to then be eclipsed, right? So most probable outcome, we reach parity. Second most probable outcome is that China does supersede us by small amounts, right? 5% GDP, 10% GDP, and the United States has to regain its momentum to try to gain back the edge. So now you have this cycle back and forth, right? Where for 5 years, China is the leading GDP. For 5 years, the United States is the leading GDP. And you have this waffling back and forth, which makes you even less secure than if you were in direct parity. But that's a scary place to be as well. You still have to lose all the influence to get there. And when you're there, you never know how long it's going to last.
Do you think we're already engaged in a form of World War III?
Yeah, absolutely. I think World War III is already happening. I think World War III is not what people think it was going to be. I think people were afraid that World War III was somehow going to look like another World War II. Instead, World War III is a war of proxy nations. It's a war where smaller third world countries are competing against each other, and they're being funded by larger countries that are actually in conflict with one another. Ukraine and Russia. The U.S. is funding Ukraine. Russia's obviously taking care of itself. But the real conflict in Ukraine isn't about Ukraine. It's about the West versus Russia. The same thing's going to happen with Taiwan and China. When the time comes that China makes its biggest move on Taiwan, it's already made the small moves on Taiwan. When it makes its largest move on Taiwan, it's going to become a question of China versus the West, whoever supports Taiwan.
So going back to where we started then, the average Joe. The average Joe's listening to this conversation now. What they really want is to make their life better in whatever subjective measure that they consider better to be. They want to start that business. They want to launch that project. They want to get outside of this sort of emotional prison that they live in, where their life is dominated by perception, what they think, their own sort of confines of their identity. What is the sort of closing argument and closing advice you give to the average Joe to liberate themselves so that they can pursue whatever they want to pursue?
So the most important thing is to take action. That is the most, even if it's the wrong action. If you take the wrong step, if you take the first step in the wrong direction, the difference between you and the person who doesn't take a step at all is the world. You have to take the first step. You have to take some kind of action. Just by taking action, you show that you're not trapped by fear. You show that you're willing to challenge your own perception of the world and try to gain some perspective. It doesn't matter what that action is. I don't care whether you read a book with...
Yeah, it goes back to you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you don't do actions, you don't know what your weaknesses are. You don't know what your strengths are. You don't know what your likes and dislikes are. You don't know what you can and can't have. You don't know if you don't make an action. You can't access... There's knowledge in action. There's knowledge in behavior. There's knowledge in decision making that people, there's like, you don't see it because like it's one of those things that isn't revealed to you until after you do it. And before you do it, it's like, because it's not revealed to you, you're blind. Like, well, how do I know if there's anything there? I can't say for sure. You can't say for sure. So do something. That's yeah.
Whether you buy a program, whether you sell your first prototype, take some kind of action, because 9 out of every 10 people are not going to take any action. You already have an advantage just by trying. And so few people understand that. They think there's some kind of advantage in waiting. There isn't. The longer you wait, all you're really doing is giving the other 9 people a chance to be the first one to take a step. If you take the first step, you beat the competition right out of the gates. And you know this as well as I do. even if your first 3 or 4 steps are fumbles and trips and you fall on your face, by the time you stand up, you're 4 steps away from the rest of the competition. And you've learned a lot in those first 4 steps. So my suggestion is take action. Take action using the skills that we talked about today. Take action using the skills that you've talked about on some other podcast. Just take action.
Identity. We talked about how the CIA kind of rewrite your identity a little bit so that, it gives you some sort of cover. But one of the things that stops us taking action is our own identity. What have you come to learn and what do you think now about the role of identity, how it gets in our way and how we can liberate ourselves from it?
The worst person to determine who you are is oftentimes you, because you see it all. You live in your own secret life. The rest of the world sees your public life. Even if your public life is accidental, the world sees you differently than you see yourself. So when you look at yourself, it's like looking through a magnifying glass. You see every wart, you see every crevice, you see everything wrong because you have the magnifying glass. The rest of the world, not only do they not have a magnifying glass, but they're standing 10 feet away from you. So they see something very different than what you see. So a lot of times...
Yeah, that's another important... A lot of people will and I need to work on this as well. We're so in our heads so much that we assume that if there's an issue with us that everybody can fucking see it. But if everyone's thinking that way, you have to realize that everyone's focused on their own issues. Everyone's focused on their own problems. They're like, oh man, I gotta do this before the day ends. I gotta go here. I gotta pick up my son. I gotta go to the gym. I got this bill to pay. This is there's so much that it's you can't. It becomes unhealthy to really not only unhealthy but unrealistic to assume that everyone is looking at you, knowing what almost like they're mind reading you. They know what issues I have before I even say anything. They can just see it on my face. No, they can't. And even if they do, imagine you're a fat person and you go out in public. Man, people are looking at me because I'm fat. Even if they do make look at that guy, he's fat. 3 seconds later, they've moved on. They're not even there anymore. So there aren't many people, and these are the people that have a real problem. This is what you should think about. Somebody just looking see that motherfucker over there? That nigga big, ain't he? Ain't nobody just sitting there watching somebody because they fat. What is wrong with you? I would look at you. You the one that got a problem. The fuck? But yeah, people aren't focused on you as much as you may believe they are. It's more so anxiety is causing that.
Whatever you think about yourself is actually inaccurate when you apply it against the test of perspective. Because what other people see and what other people think of you, you are usually very wrong from what they think.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they're going to be leaving it for. Now, the question that's been left for you in the Diary of a CEO is very, very interesting. What is something you used to strongly believe that you have fundamentally changed your mind on?
I used to believe that people could be equal. And fundamentally now, I know that people will never be equal because equality is not really the thing that we're after. What we're secretly after that we don't want to admit to is we're always after being better, having more, being in a better position than everyone else. So we will constantly strive to take advantage of secrets, to take advantage of opportunities, to find an edge that we do not share with other people. But publicly we will say that we wish there was more equality and that we want there to be more equality when secretly we don't. I used to be one of those people that wanted everything to be equal. And now I am.
I feel like we're talking about a couple of different things. I feel like most people, I guess, I would hope that most people just want to have enough to where they can be comfortable and then have a little bit more on top of that. But that's not necessarily because they want more than the next person. Somebody just might be happy having their own. It was maybe comparative, I saw another person have enough money to where all their bills were paid and they lived comfortably and they had nice stuff. I want that too. But once I get it, it's not like I'm going to be aha, I got mine. Look at all these broke motherfuckers. It's comparative, but not necessarily competitive, I guess. Don't get me wrong, there are some people who are competitive, but I wouldn't. Every person wants more for themselves, but when they're talking about equality, they're talking about, should a person not be able to go to college because they don't have the money? Should a person not be able to go to the hospital or get medical treatment because they don't have the money? Should this person not be able to get this job because they came from a certain town that has a bad that's where the equality comes in, not outcomes or people want equality in the sense that they want to get to a point to where, like, if something goes wrong, I want to know it was like at least 90% my fault. It wasn't because someone had a bias against me. It wasn't because someone saw my name and assumed something. It wasn't because someone saw my height or how ugly or attractive I was or how much money I had. It should just be like, I just want to be able to go through the worlds and be like treated neutrally until such time I've demonstrated that I'm inadequate. That's what people want, and that could still be impossible, but I feel like that's more so.
I'm one of those people who is very happy in a world where things are not equal. Because I see through the noise. I understand that what we want isn't what we actually say.
So these politicians that are saying, maybe on the left that are saying, we want equality, we want everyone to be equal, you think they're bullshitting?
Absolutely. That's not what they want.
What do they want?
What they want is more of the current status quo, which is to have conflict with the opposite side. And what they also want on top of that is to be in a position where the masses trust the politician to be in control over more aspects of the population's life.
Andrew, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I feel so inspired, a little bit excited, and energized by this conversation. And I think it's so incredible that you've committed this sort of chapter of your life to helping people unlock their full potential by knowing the way that humans work and being able to use the understanding of a human that was probably getting in their way to free themselves and pursue whatever sort of goal they have in their lives that they think will provide them with fulfillment. Because that's really how I see what you're doing. You're taking a skill set that's been exclusive and given to only a few and giving it to many. You do that through Everyday Spy. Andrew, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, what a video. Nice, interesting. Next video.
She's taking advantage of me.
No, because in this situation, you said you got what you wanted at the end, so she wasn't here.
Yeah, after hours of what I think is abusive and coercive behavior, eventually she was able to have a explicit, direct conversation with me. Now, I'm not saying she has to be perfect. I'm okay with her reaching for these dark side tools, and me having to say like, hey, I need you to stop doing that. And I'm okay with people thinking I'm a bad person. Well, I would rather they did it, but I can withstand people thinking I'm a bad person or that I'm an abuser because I don't want to engage with somebody using these manipulation tactics on me. But eventually, if I hold my ground long enough, eventually she'll
break down. She'll lose the ability to advocate for her own interests, and she'll acquiesce to whatever your demands are. Does that sound a little bit not good?
No, because my demand is just that she come up with an answer. I'm not asking her to acquiesce to my sex demands.
But that's what it feels like to her. That's why she's saying.
No, it's not. That's where you're wrong about.
But she was literally saying, she's saying, you're pressuring me, and you're like, how am I pressuring you? She says you're trying to pressure me into doing what you want me to do. That's what she's saying. I wrote the quote down. But you're not really, right? You're not. You said you'd be happy with either answer, but she doesn't feel that way. That's the issue.
I understand. Right? I get what you're saying. Mm-hmm. When she says that, it's not true.
Okay.
It's just not true.
So she doesn't feel pressured at all. She's lying about that.
She may think she feels pressured. But,
okay, so she's lying to herself.
But if you look at her behavior through the conversation, the thing that makes her freak out is me saying, I think you're being controlling. I think you're being abusive. And I need you to be explicit about what you are saying. I need you to either explicitly say yes, explicitly say no, explicitly say you want to have this conversation, explicitly say you don't want to have this conversation.
Why do you think she's...
I even went as far as telling her exactly what she could say word for word to get out of the conversation.
Sure. When you said that she was upset, and that because you said that she was being controlling and abusive, why did that make her more upset? Why did she get really upset about that?
Because I'm taking her power away. When you call an abusive person abusive, you are demanding a transfer of power.
Yeah, let's rephrase that a little bit more, okay? So you're making her feel powerless in this interaction, right?
Yeah, because a lot of
somebody claims that you're pressuring them, and now you are depriving them of any power or agency in interaction. Of course.
No. That's I can understand that could be her feeling. If the only
that's
way
all that matters at the end of the day is how she feels.
If the only way you can express yourself is by throwing dishes at Melina, and then Melina says, "Stop throwing dishes at me," you may feel, "Oh, well, now you've rendered me entirely powerless because I can't talk about my feelings, I can't set boundaries, I can't negotiate with you, I can't be direct. All I have is this plate of spaghetti I was about to throw at you." Like, yes, I guess in a way she would be telling you have no power, but I think that's not a fair interpretation.
Yeah, but imagine if throwing dishes was the only tool that I had. Now it sounds like a weird example.
Then here's a question.
Sure, here's a question. Let's say the only way I could get anything done is by screaming at people, right?
Yeah, so eventually you may run into a partner who says like, I need you to stop screaming at me. And if that's the only way you have of advocating for yourself.
But if you're not
going to be able to advocate for yourself.
If you have a literal baby and all they know is to scream, you work around that.
She's not my child.
She's not. But if she doesn't have the tools necessary to firmly establish a boundary and then talk around it, then all you're kind of doing is like taking away the only, like you're duct taping a baby's mouth shut and saying, figure out another way to do this.
I'm not duct taping a baby's mouth shut by asking my adult girlfriend to learn how to set boundaries like a fucking normal.
If you want her to learn how to set boundaries, then you don't figure that out in the middle of a negotiation about things that the boundaries would be about.
So what are you suggesting I do? I say like, you're asking me to.
That's true. Like, I guess, Mr. Girl, he would be asking you to say, hey, I can recognize if we want people to be aware of what's happening, since that's basically what you're asking for, a level of awareness of yourself, a level of awareness of your feelings, and be able to communicate that and talk about that. There's a level of awareness that you need to do for your partner as well at all times, and it works both ways. They need to be aware of what you're feeling. They need to work at that and understand you, and you need to work and understand them. The idea of like, well, this person, like, imagine that. I can clearly see this person is like showing signs of uncomfortability, but instead of like slowing the roll, I'd be like, well, it's their job to establish their boundaries, so I don't have to do anything. I can just keep going, just like, no, I'm still looking at you funny. Yeah, I'm looking at them for not being able to speak up, but I'm looking at you for just like, and it's like, there's an easy example of this where this would be like obvious. Like, imagine there was a woman that was not comfortable with sexual interaction, and you could easily see that from a third party point of view, but the boyfriend just kept pushing and kept, well, she never told me no. She never told me no. She didn't say she was uncomfortable. She didn't do it. So like, she needs to be able to just say, hey, I feel this way. Why is it on me to be? It's just like, it's true that someone should be able to express how they feel in a relationship and just say that as to not be ambiguous. But you need to meet people where they are. That's what a relationship is. Two people that enjoy each other's company and love each other meet where they are and try to work something out. That's what it is. Not this, or at least Mrgirl needs to explicitly say, hey, right now I need to not do this, because so if you can't establish a boundary, say you can't establish a boundary, and this conversation will be over for now. That's what you need to say.
Drop my boundaries, and I don't want to.
I'm saying send her to therapy. Say go to therapy.
But in the meantime, yes, we're starting couples therapy. Cool. In the meantime, you're suggesting I just drop my... I'm saying she was breaking my boundaries in the conversation repeatedly. That every time we hit a snag, it's because I'm saying I don't want to communicate this way.
You can't aggressively assert a boundary like that and say that my boundary is that when we're discussing something that I want, you're not allowed to obfuscate with questions. That's not a boundary. You have like a force field that's going into their brain. Okay.
No. That's not the boundary. She can do that, but I am going to then derail the conversation and only talk about it until she stops. So I'm saying I won't participate in the conversation. I won't participate in a conversation where you're saying, I don't know if I want to be talking about this. I'm not sure. That is going to break the negotiation, then stops. There's no more talk about sex after that. Then the only conversation we can have is, well, are you in the conversation, or are you out? Or are you making a power play by having one foot out the door? And if it's that one, that's all we're going to talk about for the rest of the conversation. I refuse to budge. Wait, stop. You admit that this is me setting a boundary. I'm not reaching into her brain. I'm just saying I'm going to flail and not fucking move an inch until it feels like you're the one that's more emotionally composed than the other in this situation, and the other person is flailing, and every time they're trying to, like, they're like sliding off a mountain trying to grab a ledge, and every time they grab something, you're like, that's abuse, that's control, you're gaslighting. And it's like the other person isn't trying to do that, they're just trying to get their footing somewhere. That's how all abusers feel.
She's not the abuser in this interaction. You're the one making the ask.
She is the abuser.
I think that you're the one making the ask for something that's making her uncomfortable for some reason. You have to figure out why.
Abusers, okay, having been abusive in various interactions, I know what it feels like when you resort to an abusive tactic.
Sure.
I've been abusive with Shaylin recently. Like, I've screamed at Shaylin. But I know that when I'm doing that, I feel like I'm sliding down a mountain and grabbing on to whatever I can.
I think that there's a difference.
That doesn't mean it's not abuse.
I think there's a difference between an abusive tactic that somebody uses to get control of themselves or feel like they have presence in a situation versus an abusive tactic somebody might use to get something out of somebody else, right?
I don't know if that's true. I think, in my experience, every time I've never screamed at a girlfriend to try to make them do something. I'm always screaming at them to try to get some semblance of control. It's out of fucking panic. It's not out of like, you better fucking lie still for me, you little bitch. That's not the emotion I'm feeling.
Let's say Melina really wants to get dinner at a place. Okay, I really want to go to Fogo de Chao. I'm like, we're not going to Fogo de Chao. I don't feel like spending $200 in there. And then she starts sobbing and crying. Okay. This is a little bit abusive. What the fuck, dude? Are you serious? We're gonna do this, right? Okay. Let's say that it's a different relationship and I beat the shit out of her every time I lose a game of League. Okay. So she's gonna beat up a lot. Okay. Let's say that one day I come walking out of my room and I look like I've been playing League, but I haven't. I've been playing a different game. So I'm not a miserable fuck. But she sees me, and as soon as she sees me, she starts like crying to get me to feel bad. Like, is she technically being abusive there by trying to manipulate me with her emotions? A little bit, but it's way different than the Fogo de Chao thing, right? Like, there's a difference between being reactive in terms of how you're retreating in a conversation in an underhanded manner versus like proactively trying to get something, elicit something, extract something from somebody else. I think these are fundamentally different. And to call all of it abusive, I think misses the point of what's actually happening. We're missing what's going on in the interaction. Like, if Shaylin were to come to you and she were to be like, hey, like, I really want to peg you tomorrow, and you're like, I don't know, and she's like, okay, this is bullshit. Like, you're not hearing, I don't feel seen, but you're like, well, she's like, no, I don't know.
I would never react that way.
That's great. Hold on, I don't care how you react. But I'm just saying, in that case, if she was using the same tactics, but she was making the big ask, then I'd say like, okay, yeah, this is like pretty shitty or abusive. I can see that.
Okay, but that's not what happened though. The analogy would be if I said, yes, you can peg me tomorrow. I just want to ask you though, what time tomorrow? And she's like, well, it's not. I'm just trying to ask you if I can peg you tomorrow. And I'm like, well, what time would it be at? And I get this like very frantic, like, I just want to know what time. Is it too much to ask to just know what time it's going to be tomorrow? Then she's like, well, I feel like you're kind of making this about you now, where you're acting as though you're really concerned about what time it's going to be, as if that's like, is there a certain, would it make a difference what time it was? And I'm like, no, it wouldn't make a difference. And she's like, okay, well then I feel like you're kind of being controlling by asking this. And I'm like, how is this controlling? And then I run to the other room and start crying. That would be the analogy. So you keep acting like she said she wasn't sure, but she did not freak out until I said.
She doesn't seem to be sure. She might not have said she wasn't sure, but all of her emotional languages, all of her body language and nonverbal cues are like saying a different story, right?
I think you have a highly charitable read of her body language, and that you think she's unsure about the sex, and I think she's unsure about saying things are okay, making agreements, sticking to things, losing the power of ambiguity and vagueness, losing the power of being able to say retroactively, you know what, I wasn't okay with any of this.
The thing is, there's aspects of both of what they're saying is true. A lot of people, imagine if someone never tells you what is okay or not okay, there's a chance of them always coming back and being like, what the hell are you doing? I'm not okay with this. But it's like, if they never communicate that, it's kind of like it puts them in a position of power where they can always criticize the other person's behavior based on how uncomfortable they feel. But it's just like, you need to communicate that this is uncomfortable. But if you communicate that it's uncomfortable, now you're kind of like not necessarily locked into that, but it's more like, well, now like their behavior, like I can't call them out on something. Like by asking people to do a certain type of behavior or saying a certain behavior is bad for you or upsetting to you, it's kind of like terms of service on like Twitch or something. If we don't tell you, we just reserve the right to ban you for whatever reason. But if we don't tell you what is a bannable offense, if we don't tell you what's a bannable offense, we can kind of have everyone in this limbo to where we can always just straight up ban you for whatever. The ambiguity gives the platform power to act whichever way they want, and that's sort of Mrgirl's analogy here.
I retroactively do not consent to everything that you and I just did, and therefore you're the abuser, which is the entire thing I'm trying to get away from, this feeling of never knowing if the rug of me being allowed to do what I'm doing is going to be pulled out from underneath me.
Okay. Well,
she gets a lot of power from having her hands on that rug.
I need to moderate a conversation between you and her, okay? I'm so curious what it looks like.
I know. So when you see her waffling, you're like, I don't know if I want to do the sex act, I see her hands reaching for the edge of that rug, and she's getting it nice and taut, and she's getting ready to yank it, and so I'm doing everything I can to prevent her from doing that. I'm like, okay, if you don't want to be in the video, then walk away. If you don't have to be in the video.
I'm negotiating a sex act with somebody, and they feel like they're on the other end of it, or they're waffling. I would just interpret that as like a no. Like, if you're uncomfortable, then clearly something.
She didn't waffle about the sex act.
But she was asking all these questions about it and everything, which makes it
That's
seem
not waffle. I know. Again, you interpret that as waffling. Mm-hmm. I interpret. Like, just look at it from my point of view. It's fine if you don't agree with me. Okay. But do you see how if I feel like Shaylin is preparing the following power moves? I never really agreed to this. I never agreed to this conversation. Mm-hmm. You sprung this conversation on me. You won't tell me the details of what happened, and any one of these can be used to pull the rug out from underneath me and say, basically you raped me.
I mean, what it sounds like to me is what she's saying is that like I love you, I want to make you happy, I do want to do the sex act. I just want to make sure this other shit is like taken care of, so that I'm like emotionally.
She's the devil, and you just don't see it. If you saw it the way I see it, can you see how in that conversation then every time I see her reaching for the rug, I'm just trying to keep her hands off it. I'm saying if you don't want to be in the conversation.
I know Mrgirl uses a lot of like strong language, but if you're at the point to where like, yes, my significant other, they're the devil. It's just like, then leave. What are you doing? You're a dumb fuck. Why are you staying with someone who, in your words, is the devil? You're insane. You're setting yourself up for failure. Why would you ever do that? Ever?
Then just walk out. If you don't want to do this,
she doesn't want to do that because she loves you.
If you don't want to do the sex thing with me, then just say no. If you want to talk about it more later, then say, let's talk about this later. What else can we talk about? If you want to walk out of the room, walk out of the room. You have all the power as long as you do it explicitly. But what you can't do is be passive and vague and then pull the rug out from underneath me and say that I forced you to do something. That's the only thing I'm trying to prevent her from doing in the entire conversation, and I think I did a pretty good job.
Okay. Well, when are we getting Shaylin on here, Max?
I think I have to protect her from the masses.
Well, why are you doing her videos?
Because I'm a bad person. Because I think it's different. Because in a video, I can control what happens. I can edit it. I can.
I feel it feels weird because both of us right now have a different interpretation of her.
That is not a good answer. Well, if I don't want her online, but if I create the video, then I can kind of just control the narrative. That's almost like literally, I don't know another way to interpret that. Like this is something abusive people will do. Abusive people will mask controlling behavior as protective of another person. Like, imagine someone's like, I need to know where you are at all times. Why? Because I just want you to be safe. And just like now, if you say no to that, now it looks like what you're not accepting of my care and my love. Why don't you want to tell me what? Like now it like flips it onto you to where like if you have a problem with it and if you don't agree to it, now it's like you're doing something wrong, which is absolute bullshit. I shouldn't have to tell you every time I'm going this place, when I'm going to work, when I'm back home, when I'm running this area. It's just like I'll talk to you if there's an issue. Other than that, you don't need a play-by-play of the actions I'm doing on a daily basis, assuming you trust me. Here's another thing. If you're in a relationship like that, I'm mad if you say, okay, hey, I want to know every time you go run an errand. I want to know every time you go to the store, grab a coffee, grab some food. I want to know all of that. When you go to the post, like anything, it'll literally be, I don't know, when you pick up some boxes, I don't know, when you pick up a pack, I want to know all of it. And if they're like, well, if it's immediately an argument, if it's immediately like the same, because the same answer, you could, well, I just want to know where I want you to be safe too. And then immediately it's a different type of response to that. Nope, as a big red flag. Because essentially what it comes down to, when I ask for something, it's okay. But when you ask for the same exact thing, now we have an argument. It's just like, nah, son, that's a red flag. That's nope.
And
yes. Well, Shaylin's not the best at interpreting her emotional state anyway.
No, but I feel like Shaylin would have an interesting perspective on Shaylin's internal emotional state, you know? Worth considering.
She would,
maybe.
but that's, I am going to protect her from live streaming.
Okay. Gotcha. Well,
also, even if she comes on and agrees with me, it's not, you're not gonna be like, I stand corrected. You're just gonna say like, oh, well, I guess he got to you.
No, I would be super interested. There are tons of things that she could say that would dramatically change the way that I view the situation. That's absolutely possible. Like she might say, like she could come on and she could say, I have a lot of personal problems sometimes setting boundaries. Like I have no problem doing things with Max. Sometimes I get nervous and I just like ask like stupid fucking questions that don't matter like in a week anyway. And then when we get around to things, like none of it ever mattered. But I don't know why I just have a habit of doing dumb shit. Like if she says shit like, okay, maybe I do dumb shit. Like I give really good advice on my stream and I follow none of it. Okay, I have a whole bunch of problems in my relationships where I just do dumb shit. So like I could believe that like people fuck up and do things. She could also say other things though that would reinforce my view. Where she's like, I don't actually like any of these sex acts at all, but like I super love Max and I feel like when he talks to me, like he's always on the verge of getting super pissed off at me. That like anytime I try to get any clarification on anything ever, he gets really mad. So I feel like I have to talk around it just to get like some emotional reassurance because I can't ask for it directly or talk about the act directly. And then that leads to him like she could say that. Like,
but she would be so stupid if she said. I mean,
no, she wouldn't be. She would just be expressing her emotions. Like,
but that would be so stupid because I'm literally telling her if you just say explicitly what you're feeling or what you want, then we'll be fine.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
Mad about is that you're being underhanded.
People aren't computers. You don't input code and get out a reliable response every single time, right? We work on way more abstract levels than that. Most people do. It's the more human thing to do.
I think you're too charitable to women.
It's not to women. It's to people. I do this dumb shit.
I think you're too charitable to women.
How? Why?
See, people keep saying it's because you're a coomer, or it's because you're trying to fuck Britney Simon or something. I think that's stupid. Obviously, I don't think you're trying to fuck Britney Simon. I just think you're too charitable to women.
I'm charitable to everybody. I'm being very charitable to you in this conversation.
But you're not being too charitable to me.
I'm being very charitable to you. If I wanted to, I could have a bosh conversation with you where I just call you an abuser and hang up.
Wait, but is that what you think?
There's a chance you could be, but I'm not leading into that as much.
Wait, but what do you think? What do you actually think?
I think I've told you what. I think that... What's the nicest way I could say this? I think that some people have...
No, I don't want you to say it in the nicest way. I want to know what you actually think. Like,
sure.
What are you going to...
I think that some people are charismatic and they know how much they can get or push other people into agreeing with, and that I think that some people can unhealthily thrive in the ambiguity of other people's personal boundaries. I used to do this in my early 20s. If I knew that somebody was waffling on something, I can always put a foot in there and force you into a position. Very, very, very easy to do that. I don't do this anymore, but I understand that feeling of like, if you're undecided, I will make the decision for you, and I know I can do that. And that's a thing that people do. And when I watch you and Shaylin interact sometimes, Shaylin's boundaries and borders seem very, very ill-defined sometimes, and you can very much like step a foot in and go, this is where your boundary is going to be. If you don't like it, tell me that you fucking hate me. You don't hate me? You do love me, right? This is your boundary. Stop being stupid. Boom, boom, boom. That's the feeling that I get when I watch you.
I feel like you're conflating two things.
Go
for conflating it. Me saying what her boundary should be with me telling her she has to have one. If I was trying to just talk her into having doll sex with me once a month, when she asks what day of the month, how we're counting it, wouldn't I just say...
There's an aspect of Mrgirl's engagement with people that is incredibly mechanical. That's what it seems like. It's incredibly mechanical. To where, like... Mrgirl will probably walk up to a woman and say, hey, you're really attractive. I really want to fuck you. And a lot of women will take offense to that. And and from his point of view, he'd be like, I don't understand why you're taking offense. I'm not a fuck boy. I'm telling you exactly what I want up front. How is this even rude? I'm not wasting your time. I'm not wasting my time. I'm respecting your feelings and emotions. I'm just being completely upfront. This is exactly what I want. And other people will be like, yeah, but I just don't like that sort of approach. In Mrgirl's head, he'll see that as whatever approach that you're asking or you want is obfuscating the truth. Because if I don't want to waste my time, like, I don't know, sweeping you off your feet and all of that stuff, because it's just like, I don't need to sweep you off your feet. You need to be swept off your feet for just some dick. I just want, like, it doesn't, wouldn't you save that for someone you actually want a long-term relationship with, not somebody just, you know what I'm saying? But the way humans work, you need a certain level of, like, subtlety, because if something, even if there's something somebody wants, like, kind of like, how many men would just, like, fuck any girl on the street or any woman on the street, and then, like, if she walks up to you and just says, hey, you want some pussy? It's just like, what you talking about? Like, you immediately get skeptical, like, even if it is what you want. Like, it's kind of like, well, this never happens, so, like, there's, like, that. You can't just take words as what they are. You can't just take something as what someone is saying. Because there's always this other, there's subtext, there's subcontext, there's, like, all this other stuff that's like playing in someone's head. So when you say something, it's not just the words you say. It's, what does this person mean? What do other people mean when they say the same thing? What are the outcomes of people who decide to act on these types of sentences and these types of like, all of that is rolled into talking to people. So, which, Mrgirl's defense can get decently exhausting after a while. Like, I just want to be able to tell people, this is where I am, this is what I think, and then that's it, without all this extra shit, because it's just like, there's nothing I can say to convince you that extra shit isn't there. There's absolutely nothing I can do to convince you. So it's like, I'm just like, at that point, you don't, from Mrgirl's perspective, you don't want the truth. You don't want the cold hard, this is exactly what I want. You want a little bit of deception. You want a little bit of massaging. You want a little bit of that. Like, that's what it comes off from his perspective.
Hey, however you want to count it. Like, if I'm trying to get the goal, if that's my goal, wouldn't I just say, like, yeah, let's do it by calendar month?
Yeah, but you won't say that because you feel like she's playing a game and you don't want to play it, right?
Okay, so then the thing I'm trying to get her to do is be explicit and set.
Yeah, but here's what I'm not sure because of the power dynamics of the, because I don't know, I don't see enough, right? This is why I'm honest. I don't go into like, oh, I know because I don't know. Yeah. But it could be the case that, and I don't know your history, maybe she's asserted a certain boundary in the past that's really angered you. And maybe she actually does super love you or is infatuated with you or whatever. And she's worried that if she asserts a boundary that you don't like, you're going to react negatively. And that's where she says, like, you're pressuring me. Even though from your perspective, you're not pressuring at all. I'm not trying to pressure you to say that. Just pick something, whatever, right?
But what do you think? Or are you saying you don't know?
I can only give you, like, degrees of probability. Like, the wave function doesn't collapse until I talk to her. I just told you. Like, oh, in terms of what? Or which part?
I don't know. What do you think of me in this situation?
My thoughts don't crystallize until I get more information. It's hard to say.
Okay.
It looks kind of abusive. But I don't know. But I don't have information. You guys have been together for, what, like 7 years or some shit? So.
Okay. So I think you're too charitable to women.
Okay. Maybe.
And not in the sense of I think you are purposefully taking a charitable view of women. I'm saying I think your actual views of women are too charitable.
When you say charitable, what you really mean is like infantilizing or something, right? Or what do you mean by that?
I think the part where whenever you create a metaphor to compare my relationship to Shaylin is that she's like a baby or with duct tape over her mouth, or she's like a doctor's patient. I think that's kind of infantilizing. Not necessarily that you're infantilizing women, but that you just seem to take it for granted that, like, I should be parenting her. So I guess that's kind of infantilizing, but it's more like
I guess when I see...
It's like you don't want to just tell her, like, well, fucking grow up.
Yeah, there's, like, I guess when I see a dynamic where one person appears to be far more aggressive and confident, the other person is a little bit more wavery, I tend to... If this is the totality of, like, a person's boundaries, like this, and they're, like, wavering, like, here, I'll instantly assume it's, like, all the way on the other end. Because I'll grant that. Because, like, it could be. And I don't want to force somebody to agree to something or do something where they're not 100%, like, with both feet in the water or whatever. So it looks charitable, I guess, but...
Well, you're very charitable about the intentions of women.
Not necessarily. What do you mean? I think we actually.
Well, I'm like, I make a whole video. Okay, we agree that Shaylin is manipulative and trying to get power. And that's
exactly what I was going to say. She is absolutely trying to get power. I just don't agree that that's always a bad thing. If somebody feels powerless in an interaction, I would expect them to try to get power. That makes sense. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. And if somebody's constantly vying for power, then there's two possibilities. Either one, they're an abuser or a predator, and they're trying to gain an unhealthy power. Or two, they feel powerless in an exchange, and they're trying to at least feel heard or seen.
I think that's all. I think those are the same. I think that's
they're totally different. Those are.
I think that's exactly what abusers and predators are.
Okay.
People who feel powerless, who cannot feel powerful via normal means, and so they resort to the dark arts.
I disagree, but
manipulators. I mean, if you could get all the same power by not being manipulative, why wouldn't you just do that?
Well, because you're talking about a fully fleshed out, fully matured person that's able to establish health. Like this is like fucking probably less than like 2% of people on the planet are capable of like setting and respecting and having like super strong boundaries and doing that in the middle of discourse. It's a really difficult skill to pick up. You have to be very deliberate.
Well, it's a spectrum.
Sure, and Jalen is obviously pretty far down on that spectrum in the opposite way that she should be.
Yes. I guess I think the way you frame it enables her to stay there.
It's not that I'm
like,
enabling.
I should just pick up the slack instead of just being like, well, yeah, we're gonna have an impact. Anytime she says the only way I'll interact with you is in a way that you think is abusive.
Well, that's because
then, like,
I'm talking to you right now. I'm telling you.
Well, why should I pick up the slack? Why are you saying?
Because you can't. Because I'm not talking to her. If I was talking to her, my conversation would have nothing to do with your actions. My conversation with her would be like, hey, you need to figure out your boundaries way better before you engage in a conversation with Max. You need to figure out like what's okay and what's not okay. You need to be able to communicate with him in a language that he understands. You have to like, if you feel yourself getting emotionally dysregulated, pull back from the circumstance, take an hour, and then come back. That would be my suggestions to her, right? But I'm not talking to you.
Not an hour of sobbing loudly, a quiet, silent hour.
Well, it depends on how upset she is, right?
I guess. My problem is that you're asking me to enable her, and you're saying because you're saying it's bad to have conflict. Almost, it's like you're saying,
no. What?
Like I think you should be proud of me. I think you should be saying, wow, she really threw everything she could at you in a video. You know you're going to publish to the internet, so you know it's going to make you look terrible. She did every manipulation tactic that you were calling her out on, and you still didn't give in. You didn't break, Max. You were strong. You did something today for men all across the world, and just people, but especially men. You did not cave.
His framing on this is like at this point it feels like Destiny has to have a over charitable view of women, because it doesn't seem like Max can engage. It's like everything is now like in this paradigm or like in this mindset of not men versus women, but like women get treated differently than men, and when women cry about something, you need to stop about something. But like it's not necessarily wrong, but it's just like the idea that you can just write off the whole interaction or the whole criticism as that is, just no.
You did not say, oh, okay, if you want me to parent you, you need me to parent you, but you won't say it, fine, I'll be your daddy. I'll just be your default, emotional regulator and processor whenever you need me to be. You didn't do that, Max. You didn't give in. You held your ground. That's great. Allow there to be an impact. Allow her. So what if she has to run out of the room screaming? Let her do that. What's important is that you held your boundaries. You're not saying that. You're saying like, oh, you should have dropped it. Did you see how much she was crying, Max? Did you see how loud she was sobbing? You should have dropped your boundaries. Lower your standards so that Shaylin meets them whenever she's going to freak out. That's why she's freaking out, because she wants me to. I literally said to her, when she was crying, I said, "You're still trying to pressure me into doing what you want me to do," and she said, "Yes."
Okay,
I should get a fucking medal.
Okay, here's like my question. Okay, or let me give you a scenario. I'm just curious. Okay, say I'm on Tinder, talking to a girl. We agree.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come over at 9 o'clock. We're gonna have sex at 9:05. We talk about it. That's the agreement. It's been like, yeah, come over. We'll chat for 5 minutes. We're gonna have sex at 9:05. You're gonna be gone by 9:30, 10 o'clock, whatever. Okay, cool. Got it. Boom. Let's say that I drive over there. I arrive 8:58. Okay, get up the door. Open it, we get inside, we start chatting for a bit, and we both get naked. Let's say that she's sitting on the bed and it's 9:05, okay? And let's say that she seems like a little bit nervous or fidgety, and she's like, hey, do you think we can chat for like 5 or 10 more minutes? Like, what is your response in that scenario?
Hold on.
Either yes or no.
Do you ever bring up the fact that like, hey, you already agreed to this at 9:05? Like, why are you changing it? Why do you want to chat for, what are 5 or 10 more minutes of talking going to change?
Maybe. If I felt like she's saying like, I feel weird about you, or I feel uncomfortable with you, if that made me uncomfortable, I might say why. Yeah, I could ask that.
And then what if she doesn't have a good answer? She's like, well, I want to chat for like 5 or 10 more minutes. Is that okay? I guess like what the point that I'm getting at is it seems like people aren't always great at expressing themselves. I don't think you're necessarily treating them like a retarded child to say like, hey, well, let's figure out like what's going on, right? I think it's okay to try to take a step back and figure out like, well, emotionally, it seems like something is incongruent with something. Yeah.
But I don't have to have sex with her. That's what I'm saying. It's like I'm okay with showing up.
You literally started off this video with Shaylin by saying you have to have sex with me, right? Like,
well, I didn't mean right now. I mean eventually we have to have sex.
It's the shame thing, right? Like you're saying
no, it's not the same thing. Showing up at somebody's house on a Tinder date on a one night stand is not the same thing as being in a long-term sexual relationship with somebody.
Yeah, Shaylin feels like there's a non-negotiable kind of on the table that she's trying to like.
There is. We have to have sex. Eventually, we have to have sex. That's a fact of romantic relationships. If you don't, then your relationship is no longer romantic, or you break up. But in order to have an ongoing sexual relationship, you have to have sex.
Sure, I agree.
Eventually.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so that's all I was saying. I was saying like.
Sure, but the framing of it that way, and then like the pushing.
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge like that she feels raped just by virtue of being in a relationship.
Does she say that? I don't know if she.
No, I was saying that. I was saying I think we both should acknowledge that there's an unfortunate thing about being like freaked out by sex and being in a relationship is that we are forced to have sex with each other eventually.
You're not forced to because you could also just end the relationship, right?
Yes, I think that was implied. Yeah, obviously you can leave, but I'm saying if you're with me, you have to have sex with me.
Isn't that kind of a manipulative tactic, or no? Like we have to do this so the relationship ends? Don't people use that sometimes to manipulate each other, or?
No, I wasn't saying we have to have sex in this way. Or
well, but we have to. Sure. Okay. All right. Is there anything else you want to go over? Or go for it?
The implication of the Tinder story is that you're just not okay with things being derailed. And I think that you lose a lot of power if you're not okay. Like Trump says, the biggest power is the power to walk away. And like if you don't like the questions the person's asking, you don't like what they're saying, then like, yeah, I don't have to have sex with this person just because I said I would. I can have an impasse with them. I can say, oh, you know what? The way you're saying you want to talk for 5 minutes makes me think that you're just another one of these controlling women who's going to string me along until you decide you want to have sex. What's the whole point of setting a time if you're going to tell me that you're going to just change the time? Like, no, I prepared myself for this. So if you don't want to have sex now, then we're not having sex. I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing for me to say.
Okay.
The classic Destiny, okay.
I really disagree with you, but I'm done fighting over you.
I know.
But
I know what it means.
is there anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think so.
I'm supposed to moderate a conversation between you and Eurodite. Is that happening?
Yeah, I said it felt a little too similar. Yeah, speaking of women, you're too charitable towards. I said it felt a little too similar to the Britney conversation, so I feel like we should wait a little bit. But yeah, right? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. You were very uncharitable towards her. Holy shit. So yeah, I think
you're too charitable.
I'm too charitable.
You're too charitable to women.
Well,
you gotta hold their feet to the fire, Steven.
I'll do a better job, okay?
I'm gonna help you with this. It's really gonna be, it'll look like a moderated conversation between me and Erudite, but it's really gonna be me doing intervention with you, and I'm gonna show you how to hold a woman accountable
for
her actions.
Okay. I'm just there to moderate the conversation. She's a smart woman. She can talk for herself. Or maybe that's just me being charitable towards her.
Another one.
Yeah, I never said she wasn't smart. She's very smart. That's
in a demonic kind of way, you know?
She's controlling.
What,
when I say control, I mean underhanded. I'll start saying underhanded. I'm fine with Shaylin. You saw Shaylin get mad. Like she can be very controlling. Like when she's mad, that's fine. I don't mind her being controlling. It's underhanded.
I'm asking a question because I'm seeing this in chat. I don't know if this is true or not. People are making up lies, maybe. Somebody said, Mrgirl literally doesn't allow Shaylin to have a cell phone or use the internet without Mrgirl's consent. Is that true? Max.
Are you really asking me that?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I want you to decide if you're actually asking me that.
I could see Max answering either way. I could see you saying on one hand, obviously she has a cell phone and access to the internet. It would be crazy for her not to. That would actually be insane for me to limit that. And then on the other hand, I could see you saying, I've been doing the online content world for quite a while. I don't think Shaylin could handle what she sees on the internet. I don't know if she has the responsibility to manage herself.
Yes, that's right. She has to be protected from the outside
she has to be
world.
protected from the crazy people online.
From her friends, from her family, her therapist.
Okay.
She can't talk to anybody.
So she at least has a limited cell phone plan, is what we're saying.
I guess you could call me.
Okay. McAfee free antivirus. Way to go, dipshit. That was the guy in chat that said that.
Okay, so it feels like you're saying that you're willing to believe all kinds of things about me. How would I restrict her from having a phone? It's not fucking Saudi Arabia.
I have no
How would
idea.
I stop?
How would you post videos of her online when she's saying, I don't want this posted online? I don't fucking know. I don't know.
That's a good question.
I don't know what your relationship is like. My ability to judge character comes from the fact that I'm willing to reserve judgment until I've seen a lot of shit. A lot of people make snap judgments about people, but I keep an open mind. There's a lot of things that you could be. But I'm not going to be charitable and say, well, I think Max is a great person, I think he's everything, blah, blah. But I'm not going to be like an asshole and say like, oh, well, I think he does this horribly. But there's like,
but Brittany Simon and Not So Erudite and Shaylin of all fucking people, you're willing to say, Shaylin is the one who doesn't let me.
Here, wait, hold on. Let me be very clear. Here's what I say about you, Brittany, Eurodite, okay? What I say is, you guys are very interesting. I enjoy my conversations with you.
I know what you say.
That's what I say. I don't sign off on any of you.
I know what you say.
I don't sign off on any of you as human beings. I just say that you guys are really interesting. I like talking to you. That's my fun.
Not signing off on me as a human being is different from leaving the door open that maybe I don't allow my girlfriend to have a phone.
Why would it? Do you think that I have enough information to 100% or 95% make a statement in those regards?
I think you have enough information. I don't know how good you are at synthesizing that information. Are you saying you're a bad judge of character?
No, I think a really good judge of character.
One of those reasons
is because I'm willing to reserve judgment until I've seen a lot. Until then,
you're a good judge of character. You're a good judge of character by not even being a judge of character.
Exactly. Because anybody that thinks that they can come to 100% conclusive things about a person's personality or character with a few online conversations, I've never mentioned real life, is fucking delusional. I'm too old for that. I've been in real life too long for that. And anybody that says otherwise is lying to themselves or lying to everybody else. Absolutely.
Do you think you're good at knowing when people are lying to you?
It's going to depend on the topic.
Interpersonally?
I think generally, but it's going to depend on that's going to be so context dependent. But generally,
I think when people say good judge of character, I'm angry. I'm angry at you. I'm angry that you're asking me. I'm angry that you're.
Yeah, I'm Lauren Southern you, where you're like, do you really think I like kids? Is that what's happening right now? That's what you're. Yeah, go for it.
No, because you're not lying.
No, I'm not.
So that's not. You're not Lauren Southern me. Lauren Southern was lying.
Oh.
You're not lying.
Okay.
I'm angry that you genuinely don't know if I allow my girlfriend to have a phone.
Given the content of yours that I've consumed, and given the totality of your online presence,
The totality.
if it came out that that was the case, do you think that most reasonable people would be like, oh my god, Mr. Girl doesn't like his girlfriend, like on some show? I had no, that's crazy. I would have never guessed that. I think the reaction would be like, yeah, you know, possible, right?
I don't think that's reasonable.
Okay, maybe. I think that with the character that I project online, not the character, my personality is relatively atypical in a lot of ways. If it came out that like I like murdered my girlfriend or something, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of something like this. I can understand. It might be frustrating to me because I feel misunderstood. But I understand a lot of people being like, yeah, no shit. Like he shouts at our stream, he makes jokes about killing people all the time. Like he's talking about
reasonable.
What?
That's not a reason. You said most reasonable people.
I can understand it. I think a reasonable person would be like, oh yeah, sure, yeah.
I think it's an unreasonable estimation of your character to think that you're going to kill your girlfriend or wife.
I mean, I would hope that most people think that, but like, depending on like what people see, the shades of you that you see online, the shades that are seen of you online, people's perceptions of that, how normal people act versus somebody like me, or even somebody like you might act. I think that there are a lot of possible actions that I could do that wouldn't surprise the internet.
I think that me saying I need you to set clear boundaries with me and stand up for yourself and stop acting like a child does not translate in the mind of a reasonable person to you're not allowed to have a phone.
That's not what. If that's
diametrically opposed.
I agree, but that first thing never happened. Whatever you just talked about was a fantasy in your mind. What you were doing is those statements that you were making coincided with you pushing aggressively for an action that she seemed to be able to have some sort of sexual interaction with her.
How did I push aggressively for that?
Because you literally said that at the end of a conversation where she was like sobbing for a few minutes in the other room, you still got that win. And then when I asked you further, like, and then you said you didn't care how she felt about it. You're like, I don't care if she felt okay or not.
I said I don't want to be my responsibility.
That's fine, but I'm just saying that like.
How did I aggressively push for it?
I would argue that anytime you're trying to get a concession out of somebody that's highly emotional and you continue to push for that concession, it's a pretty aggressive action.
When did I even continue to push for the concession?
The fact that you would even still entertain the possibility of what you were going for once she's already gotten emotional and started crying.
Okay, so now we're saying that if I ask Shaylin for something and she starts crying and I still even allow her to consent, then I'm aggressively pushing for it.
Yes, I would say so.
Can we invent a new category for that is not lumped in with me saying like if I said,
not think it's rape. I'm not saying anything like that. It's not like rape or anything.
I'm not saying it's rape. I'm not saying you're saying it's rape. I'm saying if I said, hey, wait a second, you're crying and I still haven't gotten my answer. I need you to do this for me. Remember, we're going to break up if we don't do this. I need this from you. You have to do this. Wouldn't that be aggressively pushing? Like, but you're saying that even allowing her to continue the conversation with me. This is why I'm saying that it's too.
But it's not even like allowing her to continue, right? She like it's a couple points she exited or wanted to exit the conversation, right? Like it's
no. I said, do you want to exit the conversation? You can exit the conversation whenever you want. I wasn't even aggressively pushing for that. The only thing I was pushing for is I need you to decide if you want to have the conversation. I need you to decide. I need you to be explicit about what you're saying. I never aggressively pushed her to for any sex thing at all. All I did was ask her.
Okay. I understand your perspective because you feel like you're saying all the right words, but I guess there's a lot of emotional subtext that I would like. Here's like if I'm asking you to read that. Yes, I am. Yes.
And so that is our central disagreement.
I understand, but like if I meet a person, we've talked about fucking, we've figured all the boundaries, and I meet them in real life, and they seem a little bit iffy, and then maybe even we go to do it, like wait, hold on, I need a moment, and they like start crying a little bit. Chances are we're not having sex at all that night. I don't care if they stop and they're like, okay, I think I'm okay now. Like it's probably like okay, let's just take a step back. But if you're like, okay, are you done crying now? Can we keep going? Like that feels a little bit aggressive.
That's not a fair analogy. I didn't say, are you done crying now? Can we keep going?
No, but. Kind of.
I said what I would say in that situation. What I said in that situation is I would say I need you to figure out what's going on, and I need you to make up your mind.
But like, wouldn't the more
a wise man once said that if you need somebody else to figure out your sexual boundaries for you, you're acting like a retarded child.
For sure.
Where's the omni-liberal when I fucking need him?
If I told you, if I was having a conversation with Shaylin, my advice would be geared towards her, and I would be very critical of her actions. But I'm not talking.
But I want Shaylin to change.
That's great, but you can't change somebody that you're negotiating against. That's the issue, right?
Well, I want our dynamic to change. And
yeah, so but you want it to change. But you have to understand, on your end of the negotiation, you only care about Max. It's not your job to change her to better suit you. That's the issue.
Well, I want to change.
Do you?
Yes. Just not in the direction you seem to fucking want me to, but I want to change in the opposite direction. I want to be less the way you're telling me to be.
Well, okay, if that's the case, then what I would say, oh no, so you want to be even more aggressive, or not aggressive, but more whatever Max.
I want to be more me. I want to be more me. I want to advocate for myself better. I want to be me. I don't want to be a hybrid of me and Shaylin, and while Shaylin just gets to be Shaylin. I want to be me. I don't want to be her parent. I don't want to be a parent of everybody. I just want to be me, and I want to be able to advocate for my own interests. And you're saying that I have to be so tuned into her that if I detect any hesitation or discomfort, that I'm basically forcing it on her if I don't immediately like withdraw my request, as if she's a retarded child.
We should all treat each other like retarded children. Thanks.
You're not treating me like a retarded child.
Yeah, you know, that's not why I'm screaming at you that you're an abuser. You're only upset because you're trying to push me to give a concrete declaration of your character. I don't really know you well enough to do that. I would never, like there are a ton of stories because of the type of person, and because of the type of person I am as well. There's a ton of stories that could be released about either of us, where any reasonable person could look at it and go, yeah, sure. Like if a story got released tomorrow, I like shooting. I just recently like trap shooting. It's a lot of fun. If a story got released tomorrow that Destiny was at a range, and he said to the person next to you, wow, you're black just like your gun, and then they got into a scuffle and Destiny shot and killed him. I think a lot of people could read that and be like, you know what? I think Destiny could say some dumb shit like that. Now, personally, I would never say anything so stupid, and it would bother me.
I know that.
You don't know that. You don't know me well
I do
enough.
know that.
You don't know that. You're being too charitable to me. You're being too charitable. I'm telling you that.
No, I'm being too charitable maybe to my own judge of other people's characters.
Right? Some people do that, but I'm just saying that like there is some dumb shit that people could say about me that I think even somewhat. Book Smarts, we got into an issue where he was like, Destiny was in a restaurant and he said the N-word really loudly. And there was like black people there or whatever, and it's like, and there were a lot of people around. It's like, yeah, Destiny. I guess he could say something. Like he seems really crazy. It's like, no, what the fuck, no. But like, I mean, given like how edgy I am online and everything, I can see, you know, it sucks, but I can see some people saying that. I'm just saying that like, yeah, having like a really good judge of character. For I don't know if I ever told you this. I think I have. My requirement for a good judge of character is that I've been through something where somebody is tested, where they have to make a hard decision. One where they could either throw me under the bus, or one where they have to make a sacrifice to choose to do something, and then I see them choose otherwise. Because when it comes to streamers, 99% of the time, the choices that we make are not only the best for our careers and financially viable, they're also like the choices that end up being the things that work well in life. Like people be like, oh my god, like it's so brave that this guy had a really difficult conversation with his mom when she was like, yeah, I guess, but I was gonna pay a lot of money for it. I got a lot of hits on my YouTube for it. Like that wasn't a hard decision, you know? Like there's a lot of choices that people make that kind of seem hard, but they're always like super beneficial. This is my big criticism of like Hassan and Vosh. People are like, look at how committed they are to their causes. They did big fundraisers. Yeah, because they can show how much clout they have with a dollar amount. Yeah, because they get a ton of viewership doing it. These aren't hard choices to make. A hard choice would be donating $50,000 of your own cash. That would be kind of a hard choice, right? But that's all I'm saying. I haven't been in a situation with you where I've seen you have to make a really difficult choice because that's where I can divine somebody's character. Now I see what kind of person you're. It's not like my personal insult or anything. It's just like reality, right? In my opinion. So I don't think you're a horrible person or a bad person, but I don't know if you're a good person because I'm honest.
I know.
Sure. Maybe someday we'll be in a situation. I'll wake up and you'll be standing up on me with a knife. And you'll say, I could have killed you in your sleep and I didn't. And I'm like, you know what, Max? At the very least, I know that about you. Thank you. And I'll go back to sleep and hope you don't kill me.
And then when you wake up, you'll know I'm a good person.
Exactly.
I think not judging character is more like knowing that you're not a good judge of character. That's not being a good judge of character. That's just knowing that you shouldn't.
Okay. I understand a lot of people feel that way.
I don't even know what situation could be like that where I could.
That's why you never know until shit happens. You never know, huh?
All right. Well, send me the blackmail information about yourself, and then we can figure out.
Leak it. Okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Alright, I'm almost at the TM level, y'all. Damn, they fucking me up. I'm getting fucked up by this crap. Oh, they're doing the awkward silence.
Do you think it's unreasonable that I'm mad at you about this?
I would say so, but I understand your anger because I'm empathetic. But if somebody told me, I don't know if I can trust you. Yeah, I get it.
Well,
like if Brittany or like Lauren or Nick or you or somebody was like, oh, like, I don't know if I can trust you 100%. Like, yeah, that's fair, 100%. Especially in my history, sure.
I don't know if I can trust you 100% is different from I don't know if you allow your girlfriend to have a phone.
I don't have any insight into your guys' relationship. And everything I've seen is like super like, woof. So I don't know. I just don't know. I wouldn't make a statement about it. I'm not sure. I'd be open to all possibilities.
I just want to clarify that's different from... I don't want you to reframe this that I'm angry that you said, I don't know if I can trust you 100%. That's
sure, I understand. Here, like, I would say that of all possible worlds, in the majority of those possible worlds, you would allow your girlfriend to have a cell phone. In over 65%, in over 75% of those worlds, you'd have your girlfriend have a cell phone. So there aren't that many where she wouldn't, so...
And what do you think is unreasonable about me being angry about that?
I think that you should understand that I don't have a lot of intimate penetration into your relationship and your personal life. I haven't seen it. So why would I take a strong stance on how you guys conduct yourselves privately? I just wouldn't know. Maybe she doesn't even like cell phone stuff that much. Or maybe she's like a more subservient kind of person. She's like, oh, if you like this, I'll do this, whatever. She's like very housewifey. I don't know. Maybe it's possible. I don't know that.
You've seen the kitchen.
Especially in the same conversation where you've told me, I don't let her talk to people online because I'm protecting her from the internet. That opened up like from all possible worlds from like 80%, and then it went down to 75%. Now there's like more possible worlds where maybe Max like, you don't get a cell phone.
I didn't mean I don't let her. I meant I will not platform her talking to people.
If she reached out and she was like, I'm going to talk to Eurodite about our relationship on stream, would you be okay with that?
No, but I wouldn't physically stop her.
Would you like break up with her?
No.
Okay.
I would say I don't want you to do that. I think you're interfering with my work and my art. And you know, make a fucking painting about it or something.
What if Chandler reached out to talk to me? Would you like that, or would you not be okay with that?
I'd be a lot more okay with that than Erudite, but I would talk to you on stream. If you want to talk to you privately, then I would be happy. I'd be happy with that. If she want to talk to you on stream, yeah, I would tell her not to do that.
Okay.
I would just say that you're undermining my voice. Like, this is my thing. Talk about me in another arena or way. But if you come into my like professional artistic sphere and start contradicting or even validating my narratives and my work, then you're, I don't know.
That's super unfair, but okay.
Yeah, it is unfair because you get to say whatever you want about her in this space, and now because you work in this space, she is barred from being able to have. So you can put your foot on the scale as far as how people view her, but she can't put her foot on the scale as how people view her. That's fucking wild, dude.
It's really invasive.
Okay.
Why is that unfair?
Because you've made your relationship and your disagreements in your relationship part of your work. So it seems a little strange that you can have your voice fully represented there, but you're worried about her representing hers.
I'm worried about her representing hers in a way that undermines mine. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're undermining her, right? But that's okay. You're okay undermining.
No, I'm not. I'm not undermining her. I'm painting a picture of her.
A really undermined one. You called her a demon.
Well, it's only undermined assuming you think she disagrees with it. But
well, I imagine she probably doesn't see herself as a demon or demonic or manipulator or abuser. Like in that 30-minute.
Well, you can imagine all you want, but that don't make it true.
Maybe she agrees. Maybe she is.
So Shaylin has a comic about our relationship that she draws, and she posts them on Twitter.
Okay.
Her Twitter is sheebyjeebies, if you guys want to look at it.
Okay.
I think it's 1E _ and then JEEBIE. Or she's Ms. Boy on Twitter. Okay. But so she has a comic about her relationship, and like that's her thing. And so if her comic got really popular, and then I was like, well, I don't like how you're representing our relationship in your comic, so I'm going to also make a comic, and then start drawing comics that contradict your comic. I think that would feel a little invasive. So I'm fine with her speaking publicly about our relationship. I just don't want her to do it in the same medium, in the same way, and sort of use my megaphone to contradict me. Like the only reason you would talk to her, or Ariel would talk to her, is because I'm a streamer. It's not because, it's not her thing.
I got it. It's a really good rationalization, so we'll accept it.
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, that is a rationalization. Hard as fuck, bro.
What's on the agenda for Max? You got anything coming up?
Just fighting with you.
Okay, cool. Fun.
Wait, I was trying to finish something.
Oh, sorry. You didn't want her to use your platform, your
megaphone.
Yeah.
You're saying that makes your stance more reasonable. I was gonna say.
Wait, I didn't say that. You might have assumed I thought that, but no.
Well, no, I was assuming that because you said you went from 80 to 75%. So you're saying that lowered your.
Well, the 80 to 75%. Oh yeah, it was the. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it lowered it. That was a hit to your faith in me.
Now that you've explained it, I'll go from 75 up to like 77%. Okay.
Okay, I got 2% back.
Yeah, 2 points. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I understand people really well, really quickly, right?
Okay.
And you're saying we could be friends for 10 years, and then it could turn out that I'm like a mass child murderer, and you'd be like, well, you live and you learn.
Depends on what kind of friend we've been, yeah.
Right. So we're going to have a problem. We're already having a problem.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Of increasing discrepancy between how well I think I know you and how well you think you know me. And I think a more trusting person than you, in general. So how much I trust you versus how much you trust me, there's going to be a gap.
Trust is a fundamentally different thing than how well you know your character. Because there's very few things that I trust anybody with. So there's not like, if I trusted you 1,000,000% with everything in my life, more than anybody else, and I didn't trust you at all, period, like zero, there's very little difference in how I would treat you. Because there's just not really much to trust anybody else with. Most of my private affairs are incredibly public, save for very, very, very few things. Unless you wanted to like babysit Nathan or something, like there's not very much like, yeah, that's just the kind of person. There's not much to trust you with. So whether or not I trust somebody is a fundamentally different question than, how do I judge that person's character to be?
I guess maybe trust that I am representing myself to you in an accurate way.
Oh, so whether or not I believe you when you say things you tell me.
Do you trust? Do you feel like you can trust me to be me?
I don't believe anybody for that. No.
Right, and I do. So I think that there's a gap there.
Oh, maybe that's unsolvable. That's just a personal. Melina has never lied to me in her entire life, and I don't even trust her when she tells me how she feels sometimes. Not because I think she's lying to me, but because I'm maxing her.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a solvable problem. I just want to point out that I think this has actually been happening ever since our first conversation.
Oh, so you're trying to control me and how I feel. Is that what you're doing right now, Max?
No, I'm just explaining that this could be something I get angry about on an ongoing basis. I'm not telling you have to do anything about it, or I'm not even saying it's a solvable problem. I'm just saying I think it's maybe it's just a problem. Conflict.
Okay.
Come on, give them to me.
That's fair.
I'm sure I'm not the first person that you've had this with, and you're not the first person I've had it with. You also seem to get betrayed by other streamers on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
I haven't had Stardust or Chud Logic stab me in the back. So I'm... Or you.
I won't. Stardust won't. I don't know about Chud Logic.
Why not?
I don't think Chud Logic would ever stab anybody in the back. But he might play some shit up for content, maybe.
I could see him doing that, but that's okay.
But Chud actually seems pretty cool. Stardust seems really cool too. Those people both seem pretty decent. I'll give them my temporary character seal of approval. But anything could be possible. Okay.
Right. And do I have your temporary character seal of approval?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'm being highly charitable to you in all of our conversations. Unbelievable.
Seal of approval with an asterisk.
That's why I said it's a temporary seal of approval. That's what Stardust and Chud got to, okay.
Yeah, but mine also says a charitable seal of approval.
Well, yeah, I do the same for Stardust and Dreadlock.
Oh, you think you're being highly charitable to them too?
I'm highly charitable to almost everybody. People don't think that for some reason because I fight with a lot of people, but like I'll talk with anybody, hear anybody out for anything. But if they start attacking me, then we'll fight. You know.
Does it make you mad?
Kill so many people.
No, I think you have good reason to be.
I love
think it's pretty
the
insulting when you
skill.
feel like you've been pretty vulnerable with somebody and you've shown a great deal of your
Strong,
character, and the other
too.
person
And
still
it's
has
not
some
even
reservation about you
massive.
or thinks something that you think to be inconceivable of yourself. I think it's pretty normal to feel upset about that.
But are you mad?
No, I understand.
Nice.
Why would I be upset about it? I think it's reasonable.
Well, I understand you too. I'm mad because I understand you.
Okay, well.
I'm getting a neon sign made for my new hotline show, my call-in show.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
How much is it costing you?
I think it's going to be $600.
Ooh, not bad. Okay.
44.
I recommend it.
For my background?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the most exciting thing. Then I'll go back to working on this pedophile rumor research video.
Gotcha. Should be fun.
Yeah, I want to get some. I want to get an FBI agent on my stream somehow, or an ex-FBI agent. I want to interview an FBI agent.
Oof. I've heard that for some divisions related to children, you're like, as part of your job, you have to watch a lot of really fucked up shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to find one of those people.
Alright, we might be done here.
Well, if you ever
I
tweet
don't
me
know how
before,
many
I'll give you a
PS
retweet.
models I
Okay, it's part of my temporary character skill approval. I'll amplify your voice. All right.
All right.
Oh, fuck. Yes, it's over. At least I got one of the boxes. Hopefully I can get a... Hopefully I can get a drill.
I'm gonna mail you a Save Shayla
fucking
shirt.
Resurrect scroll. Get the fuck out
Me
of
neither.
here.
Yeah.
Oh, I have your CD and your tape, my shelf over there. They're like the only two things on my shelf, so
boy.
feel special.
Resurrect
I do.
scroll.
I'd like to add a Save Shayla shirt to your collection. Do you want the black or the light blue? This is the black one.
What does the light
I
blue
need
one
to
look like?
master this skill.
Listen, I'm fashion challenged, so just do black. Goes with everything, okay?
Okay. All right.
So that's
All good. Oh,
400.
I'm getting merch soon.
Okay.
You have to model
I
something
need
for me, okay?
master this,
Something like 2
um,
pictures. Okay, good.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah. Just let me know what merch.
gotcha. Sounds good. Anything
Let's
else?
see what I need to master this.
Erudite.
5 fire moth.
Good faith conversation between two good faith people.
Yeah.
Got
exactly.
2 fire
That's right.
moth skills.
I think that's it.
And cards.
All right. If there's anything, feel free to shoot me a DM.
Oh, you too.
Of course.
My
Thanks for
heart is
responding
always
to me today.
my heart is always open.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Oh,
Try not to be
sure.
too aggressive to anybody. Okay.
10:30.
Yeah. All right. That'll be open. Bye.
Love you too. Bye.
All right. Good job, guys. Was that a difficult conversation? Nah, you just have to recognize the extent of like where the boundaries. It gets like kind of weird talking about like how does Shaylin feel about something because honestly he has more experience with it, so he might know better than me, or he's missing something and then I know better than him. But neither of us can know for sure because she's not the conversation. So
Jesus. 2.5 hours. I figured it was about that amount of time. Okay. Okay. Alright. Fuck. I'll do that. Okay. Do you have...
I'll call Brittany, and the
you
roundup
don't
will be
have
done.
them on this.
I don't know if there's anything for us to talk about relating to the conversation. Did you consider this a conversation where you kept the kid gloves on? No. When I Jesus. When I have if I have conversations with people, there are multiple paths that we can take through the conversation. Some of these paths end the conversation immediately, and then some we can go on a little bit longer. If I accuse him of being like an abuser, and I say that like, oh, like he's just a horrible evil person, like what do I get out of that? Like the conversation ends immediately, and then we're done. Yeah. So I don't think it's ever worth it to just go hard because like what do you get out of it? And then it's more interesting to hear more of his perspective, I guess, even if I disagree. So.
I'll take that.
Okay. Do you think Mr. Girl's intention allowing his girlfriend to talk to you since he actually kidnapped her and is using her for content? Good question. Probably not. Fuck off. The Not So Eurodite and Brittany, Simon chat happened on Brittany's YouTube stream. Eurodite's Twitch stream was crashing. Interesting. How did that conversation go? I swing wildly between thinking you shouldn't be platforming Max and thinking he's incredibly interesting. I don't think. I mean, all these people, all of the new cast of characters for our Destiny universe are interesting at the very least. Thank God, dude. One thing that I noticed compared to fucking Twitch is that Twitch is like a blob, a mess of like everybody trying to be the same person and do the same thing, and it's so fucking annoying. And if one motherfucker hates you in that group, like Casey trying to cute it, you're like axed from everything. It's like how annoying. But like the whole Twitch universe is like one amalgamation of fucking toxic sludge garbage shit. It's so boring. Whereas on YouTube, I noticed that there's way more like distinct communities of people that you can talk to that are all that are so interesting and unique and different. Whereas on Twitch, it's like I really like Ludwig, who's friends with all of OTK, who's dating like Cutie. I like Mizkif, who's in OTK, who's friends with it. Like every single person is like connected. If you draw like a tree, it's like that circle where you connect every other fucking dot to every other fucking thought. It was so boring. And everybody's trying to suck each other off all the time on fucking Twitch, where everybody like, oh god, I can't say anything mean about Asana, I can't say anything mean about XTC, oh god, I can't say anything mean about Minsky. And if anybody says anything mean ever, they're all like fucking chill, like, oh god, we have to make amends, and here's the apology video, and look, Pokey and the other guy are eating lunch together and everything's cool now. It's like, oh my god, it's so fucking boring. Whereas like in the YouTube world, there's like all these different communities and characters that don't even know each other, have like no crossover at all. And I think that it's way more interesting. But way more interesting.
Hold on.
So your high school lunch table, yes. Another thing that's nice is that talking with.
I have another window open of this game, so I can move some items around on a different account. Yeah, so I think all the monster cards are on this. Do I have fire moth? Yes, I do have the fire moth cards. Yep. I have 10 of them, so yeah, 100% I'm going to do that shit. So I'm going to drop 3 of those. Pick that up. Drop 3 of those. Pick that up. What else we got? What else are we doing here? I don't got no octo cards, do I? Nope. Okay. So that's... Okay, let's, I'll put these in here. You know what, I'm gonna just sell some cheap-ass item. Sell some cheap element type on this character. $158. Okay, so hold on. Let me, or this, put all of these in here. Yeah. I'm gonna do that. Yeah, I'm gonna do all of that. Actually, no, I'm gonna put all of these in here. Sorry, y'all, I'm trying to actually do that. I'm gonna go to this character. There's a bank. Throw these cards in here so I can master the skill. Do that. I'm gonna take all of the Adamantite. No, I can't do both. I'm gonna do that. You can pick that up. There we go. All right. And there I'll also put the Fiesta marbles in here. Grab those. Yeah. I'm gonna drop the Alexandrite. Pick it up over here. And I think that's all I needed this character for. So I'm gonna log off from that character. Put the Alex in here and sell some cheap ass Adamantite. It's gonna be cheap as fuck. Is there anything I can put? No, I ain't got. Nope, I ain't got nothing else weighing me down. Okay. Just gonna sell some Adamantite. In the meantime, open this back up. One second. Move this window up. Go in here. Okay, now I gotta go to the bank. I'm sorry, I'm moving two different characters on 2 different screens, so yeah. Okay. Alright, now we're gonna sit here. I'm gonna do cheap. Adamantite. Okay, let's throw that in there. Look at the rate. Adamantite. 1 million. 1 million each? That's a bit much. I have 100 of them. So like, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna sell this for 500,000. If I have like 11, it's like 50. Yeah. Let's add a man type. 500K. Alright, just do that. So, 24 add a man type. 500K. Alright. Now I'm back here. Oh, wait, the video stopped playing. Fuck, I'm not even paying attention. Alright, so we're gonna watch. We're gonna go to something different now. Jesus. That's a picture of my face. What I'm doing now. You know what? You know what I'm gonna do? Let's just go to the trending thing. And if anything looks wicked, movies, TVs, none of this shit looks interesting to me. None of this crap looks interesting to me at all. This is what the fuck is... This is the fuck that's one fucking trending right now? What do y'all watch? What the fuck? This... Oh my god, I see why I don't go to the trending page, bro. Jesus, I don't have time for none of that. But in that case... Oh wait, I paused the video. Fuck.
You said I was wrong
Hold on.
in public. No, of our discussions.
Oh, you're really making this one a pretty broad topic, huh?
I don't know what to watch at this point. Okay. Island vlogs. Our dream came true. Yeah, I'm not really sure. All of this crap looks... Oh, what's on the home page? No, we're gonna watch some ABBA and preach. Why not? Let's just watch some ABBA and preach. Why not? You know what I'm saying? I don't think they have... I don't think... Is there any videos of theirs that I haven't watched recently? Holy shit. I need something that doesn't seem like fucking ridiculous. Oh man, I just don't know, man. I guess I'll just have to be fucking entertaining on my own, which is, I don't got it in me. I don't know, man. Oh, what was that channel? Hold on, I got an idea. Yeah, this Diary of a CEO. We'll just go to... Stephen Bartlett. Man, nigga, you named after a pear. Get the fuck out of here, nigga. Which one of these sound interesting? If nuclear war starts, go to this country. Delaying having kids is impacting your future. Why penises have gotten 25% bigger? What the fuck? The truth about Sacha Baron Cohen. How does it keep... Sure. Nuclear war sounds interesting. We'll watch that. Why not?
No matter how nuclear war begins, it ends in 72 minutes and 5 billion people would be dead.
Do you think there will be a nuclear war?
So I've interviewed former secretaries of defense, the former nuclear sub-commander, the Secret Service, and what I learned was, oh my God.
Annie Jacobson, investigative researcher and writer who specializes in uncovering the world's biggest secrets.
We are one misunderstanding away from nuclear apocalypse. And yet you have presidents threatening nuclear war. In fact, the President of the United States doesn't need to ask anyone to launch a nuclear missile.
It makes me realize how important the decision to pick our leaders is.
Nothing could be more important.
Could you play out a scenario where nuclear war broke out?
Yes, and I can describe in painstaking, horrific detail precisely what happens. So, but after nuclear war, the survivors would be forced to live underground and envy the dead.
Annie, is there anyone you interviewed that brought you to tears?
Yes, I met a woman who is a survivor of the Nagasaki bomb, and I haven't written about this yet. But someone I interviewed and someone that meant a lot to me wired that nuclear weapon that was dropped on Nagasaki.
Can you speak about the impact that it had on both those individuals?
And it's horrifying.
Congratulations, Diary of a CEO Gang. We've made some progress. 63% of you that listen to this podcast regularly don't subscribe, which is down from 69%. Our goal is 50%. So if you've ever liked any of the videos we posted, if you like this channel, can you do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps the channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, as you've seen, the bigger the guests get.
I haven't watched enough, so...
Annie, you wrote this book about nuclear war and published it in March 2024. The timing of this book seems to be a little bit coincidental when I look at what's going on in the world at the moment. Why did you write a book about nuclear war? And why did you write it now?
As an investigative journalist, before nuclear war a scenario, I had written 6 previous books, all of which are about the military and intelligence organizations in the United States, DARPA, Area 51, always the Pentagon, CIA, that's my beat. And think about how many sources I have in each book, 100 or more. How many, covering all the wars, by the way, since World War II. All these intelligence and military programs, intensely kinetic. And think of how many people said to me with a kind of pride, I dedicated my life to preventing nuclear World War III. That's always the idea in the Defense Department and in the CIA. We are there to prevent nuclear war. And so during the previous administration, former President Trump, there was this presidential rhetoric going on. You may recall, fire and fury. Trump and the president of North Korea, the leader of North Korea, threatening this kind of thing. And I, like many, I'm sure, began to wonder, my God.
Well, a lot of people would defer from you because a lot of people saw him as like, oh, my president ain't no bitch. I'm glad we got a strong leader. And that's about as far as they thought about it.
What if deterrence, another word for prevention, fails? And that is the question that I put to all of those sources in the book. And that result is nuclear war, a scenario.
What was your intention?
I wanted to show in horrific detail just how horrible, just how apocalyptic nuclear war will be. Because I think many people have forgotten or don't know to begin with the consequences of a nuclear exchange. As I show in the book, almost certainly, if a nuclear exchange happens, and we're talking strategic ballistic missiles, it will not stop until the world ends. And we're talking about in seconds and minutes, not in days and weeks and months. That is astonishing.
When did you start writing the book? When was the first word written?
Oh, man.
So probably during COVID was the first word written. But keep in mind,
Imagine 72 minutes. That's like, what, an hour? That's like 120% of an hour? Yeah. That would be pretty quick. I feel like most people wouldn't be able to wrap their heads around that. They generally don't think it would happen that fast, but like, if one country launches, there's not enough time because there's going to be, some of them are going to be dummy missiles just like to throw you off course, and the other ones are actually going to hit. There's going to be so many of them that you can't intercept all of them. So because of that, if one country shoots the missiles, the other ones would just shoot it by response. And it's just like, now we just have a bunch of, as she said, billions of dead people because niggas want to have a fucking dick measuring contest.
Reporting on nuclear weapons goes back my entire career. My first book, Area 51, is about a joint CIA Air Force base out there in the Nevada desert inside a secret test and training range where the United States government used to explode nuclear weapons, atmospheric nuclear weapons in the 50s. And so when I was reporting Area 51, I wound up, quite literally, I did not intend to, but I wound up interviewing the people who armed, wired, and fired those nuclear weapons, early Manhattan Project members. And that was kind of my B story of Area 51. And what I learned was like, oh my God. And I was also surprised to learn that most people didn't even know the American government, set off 100 some odd atmospheric nuclear weapons in the desert in Nevada, testing them. So my reporting, to answer, that's a long-winded answer of, I've been on this issue peripherally, for years, for more than a decade. But the idea in this book, the word one, as you asked, was like, once I understood that nuclear war is a sequence, it begins the first fraction of a second after detection, then I could see clearly, oh my God, it's a ticking clock scenario, because it just all happened so fast.
I asked that again because, so if you started writing the first word of the book on nuclear war in COVID, sort of 2020, 2020 roughly? 2021?
Around there,
Yeah.
2021, yeah.
Since then, things have escalated around the world in terms of conflict in a way that I imagine you couldn't have forecasted. And even, it's almost ironic that in the month that your book was published, Putin moved, I think he moved nuclear weapons into Belarus. And the rhetoric, and he started saying that he would use them. And if you look at the terminology him and his commanders are using towards the world, it seems like we're at a moment that I haven't seen in my lifetime where the subject of nuclear war seems to be more real than ever before.
You're absolutely right. And that is astonishing because in 2021, when I began the interviews, people were forthcoming with me. As you know from the list of sources, I've interviewed former secretaries of defense, former nuclear sub-commander, former STRATCOM commander, former FEMA director, former cyber chief. And a lot of these individuals shared with me in 2021 this idea that, wow, the world has kind of forgotten that the nuclear threat is always there. And so over the course of reporting and writing, you're absolutely right that the geopolitical temperature of the world has escalated to a point that you have not seen in your lifetime and I haven't seen in my lifetime.
Setting the stage even more, we talked about how possible nuclear war is, but one thing I learned from reading your book, which actually surprised me, was that it doesn't take thousands of people to agree on a nuclear war for it to begin.
I feel like it's just a cycle that humans go through. Like, I don't know. Like, oh man, we're getting to a point where things are heating up, but it's kind of like that, it feels like, to where, like, it'll heat up, war will happen, it'll die back down, and then people will be like, wow, the terrors of war are fucking terrible, we should never do this again. And then 20, 30, 40 years happen, people start getting angry again, some people getting upset again, and then a generation or two goes by, and the idea and all the things and remnants of how terrible war was tend to disappear, and then we fall back into the same, okay, I see, this is why everyone didn't want to have it. Okay, that would make sense.
In the case of the United States, it only takes one person to make that decision, which I find quite unnerving, that there's one individual that could theoretically make the decision that would destroy the Earth.
You're absolutely right, and this kind of thing is surprising to almost everyone. One of the things that I strive to do in my reporting is take very complex science and technology, military issues, and simplify them down for the layman, just for the average Joe or the average Jane. And I do that by interviewing the really smart, really knowledgeable people on those subjects. I have two things going for me, perhaps as an investigative journalist, that help in conveying the story, is that I'm not a scientist, and so I can ask questions that the average person would ask, like really try and help me understand this, whatever this is. And then also that I have a real interest in making what is conveyed to me make sense to other people in their lives, right? So, and also perhaps make them realize, I never even stopped to think about the fact, how strange is it that the United States president, this is what you learn in the book and you're talking about, the United States president has sole presidential authority to launch a nuclear war.
What does that mean?
It's exactly like it sounds. What's so interesting is a lot of this stuff, this nomenclature that gets thrown at you, if you just break it down, it's solo, presidential, he's the POTUS, authority. He doesn't have to ask anyone for permission. Not the SecDef, not the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, not the Congress. I love the worried look on your face in this moment, because it is, once you know that, you say, well, first you might Google, is it really true? And you will get, for example, on Reddit, like, that's not really true. You'll get like hundreds of thousands of people, coming in with their opinions about how that's not really true. Well, it is really true. It's absolutely true. And in fact, during the former President Trump administration,
I feel like most people would say it's not true just out of like fear and not wanting to believe it. The idea that one person can make a decision like that and affect billions of people worldwide, why should anyone have that? But well, that's the structure that we live in. If y'all don't like it, be ready to uproot your entire worldview and uproot your entire structure. But that is uncomfortable to people. That is difficult for people to do. So they'll be like, wow, that's really scary. Wow. And then go right back to the fuck to what they were doing. Which, if you're not attached to this world, it's like, you're like, hey, it is what it is. We're all going to die. If nuclear fallout is the way it goes, it's the way it goes, bro. I'm not about to sit here and hem and haw and cry over it. Like, if you're That's like the best way to take it. But if it actually fills you with anxiety, like, bro, I don't know what to tell you. Uh, I don't know what to tell you. There's too many people that are so focused on their own individual problems and then focused on some partisan bullshit, so they'll never actually fix anything because they won't see a bigger problem. They'll see the problems on the opposite political side or something like that, but they won't. And it's kind of like, yo, this is the world we set up for ourselves to where one person can make that decision. But it's just like, people would rather be comfortable and just, somebody else will take care of it. I don't need to worry about it. This is someone else's job, and that type of, because there's no other way to live without living in anxiety all day, every day. Someone else will take care of it is the answer to a lot of things. So,
Congress became so sort of, I want to say motivated or alarmed by this issue, meaning they were being asked questions by the powers that be. Is this actually true that they released a report stating specifically, and I quote it in the book, yes, it is true. As commander-in-chief, the president has this sole authority. He doesn't need to ask anyone. And hopefully, sort of my bringing sort of concepts like that to the fore right away, the reader can then become engaged and they say, well, that's weird. Why? And then I can give you a very simple answer without necessarily taking you through the whole history of presidential authority, but it has to do with the ticking clock of it. And I explained to you right away that a ballistic missile travels from one continent. It's called an ICBM, people have heard that. Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. Again, exactly like it sounds. It can travel from one continent to the next in roughly 30 minutes, carrying a nuclear warhead to strike a target. Once you realize, wait a minute, there are only 30 minutes. This isn't like, hey guys, should we go have a war in Iraq? Let's discuss this, let's debate this, let's take it to the Congress. There is a ballistic missile, sir, coming at the United States, and you must act. And that's why, in the simplest layman's terms, sole presidential authority exists.
So let's define then what these weapons are. Many of us have seen that film Oppenheimer. We saw them out in the desert, I think in New Mexico, playing with all these weapons and eventually making this one bomb that they would then drop in Japan. The weapon we see in that film, which was made in the 1940s, that ultimately led to the end of the war, is that the same weapon that we're talking about today?
No. Well, in sort of principle, yes, meaning it's an atomic bomb. But there's two things that separate where we are now. One has to do with the size and the power of the bomb. So in 1945, there were atomic bombs. Now there are thermonuclear bombs. So an atomic bomb is used inside a thermonuclear weapon as the trigger.
Okay.
It is a bomb inside a bomb. And the power of the thermonuclear bomb is so astonishingly, destructive. You can read the details. I interviewed Richard Garwin, who designed the first thermonuclear bomb for Edward Teller when he was 24 years old. I interviewed him, he's in his 90s. He explains to me, and I explain to you, what the power is behind that. But so the atomic bomb, and it has to do with size. Like the old atomic bomb, the one that was dropped on Hiroshima, was the size of a small elephant. Okay, 15 kilotons in a big, giant elephant-sized bomb inside of an aircraft, having to fly from Tinian Island to over Hiroshima, where it drops, in an aircraft. That all changed when we brought the Nazi scientists to us. Let's figure out how to do two things. Let's figure out how to create more powerful bombs. That's the result. The result is the thermonuclear bomb. And let's make them smaller. We can't load an elephant-sized weapon into the top of a ballistic missile. It needs to be smaller. And so much of this buildup was about creating more powerful weapons to be smaller in size. And then you see the military-industrial complex. You can imagine, and I do this as a history lesson in just a few short pages to try to bring readers up to speed without losing the drama of the narrative. And the result, so if you flash forward to where we are now, which is where we've been for a very long time, is a nuclear triad. Just like it sounds, 3 parts. We have ICBMs, silos under the ground.
So those are weapons hidden in the ground?
In the United States, there are 400 of them. There were more. Now there are 400. You can find out where they are on a map. They're in silos, underground silos across the Midwest and the West. Then we have our nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered submarines that carry that same kind of concept of a ballistic missile with a warhead in its nose cone. We have those same systems on submarines. And the technology behind it is astonishing. I take the reader through it fast from the experts who explain it to me in a digestible way. And those systems lurk around in the oceans all 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They're called the handmaidens of the apocalypse.
They're almost impossible to find, right?
They are impossible to find. The former nuclear force subcommander, Admiral Connor, had this great way of describing it to me. When I said, how hard is it to find a sub? He said, Annie, it's easier to find a grapefruit-sized object in space than a nuclear sub under the sea.
And it's not just the United States that have these weapons, which I think is important to say. There's many people listening all around the world now who have these weapons in their country too. You list several of those countries. I think it's 9 countries in total that has nuclear weapons, right? What are those countries? I know we have them back in the UK.
Yeah, there are 9 nuclear armed nations. Also really interesting to think about that the whole sort of, let's have a triad, let's have all these weapons that we will have a concept of mutual assured destruction. So we will have these weapons, but we will never use them because everyone would be destroyed. Those concepts go back to the 50s when there were only 2 nuclear armed nations, the United States and Soviet Russia. So, really making all of this more precarious, looping back to your, notion that like, my God, we're at this precipice of danger, which we are, is because there are 9 nuclear armed nations, many of which are in direct conflict with others or their neighbors. And they are the US, Russia, China, the UK, France, India and Pakistan, Israel, North Korea.
And there's some threat that Iran are trying to?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a very, very, very significant threat. And you really have to look, I think the book, I stay away from the sort of geopolitical posturing or analysis or even, opinion about the political aspect of all of this. But I think readers get to take and have, because I have read a lot of the responses and had a lot of really interesting conversations since the book published a month ago. But yes, you can take away.
Imagine if there was like a I don't know if it's post-mortem, like a explanation or something about, let's say humans killed themselves in fucking nuclear, like, why did this happen? Like, imagine you are an alien trying to explain it to another alien. Why did this happen? Well, despite all being the same species and sharing a planet, that they just weren't focused on that. It's like, why? Because, like, you got a country over here, and a country over there, and a country over there, and they all compete. It's like, why can't they work together, though? Like, wouldn't that help everybody? Yeah, but other people kind of just want to be on top. It's not about helping everybody. It's like, oh, okay, so they'll kill each other if it means more power for themselves individually. Yeah, you got it. And it's like, brain dead. That's what I would call it. That is brain dead.
What you think about the fact, my God, you put a 10th nuclear armed nation in here. That is Iran. How more destabilizing is that going to be to safety and security?
And when I look at the list of countries you've written about that have these nuclear weapons, the US, Russia, they're both basically in proxy wars at the moment with obviously the war going on in Ukraine. Think about Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran. They're both at conflict, throwing different missiles at each other and drones at each other at the moment. The UK and France are obviously part of NATO, so they're kind of sucked into the whole Russia-Ukraine-US conflict that's going on, that proxy war there. These countries right now, many of them, I think the majority of them, are involved in a direct war or some form of proxy war as it is. And with many of these wars, it's hard to find the way that it ends, the way out, the kind of golden bridge, because Ukraine aren't going to relent, so Russia aren't going to necessarily decide one day that they're going to lose the war. That would cause significant ramifications for Putin, his reputation, and Russia as a whole. The US can't let Ukraine lose for a variety of geopolitical reasons. And then at the same time, all this conflict started in Israel following the attack in Israel, which has sucked Iran in much of that region. It all seems like, these are the countries right now that are involved in the conflict that is scaring many of us in a significant way. And if all these countries operate in a similar way, where there's one individual that can make the decision to release those weapons, it is quite scary.
The UN Secretary General said recently that we are one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear Armageddon. And so the scary part of it is that when you look at that sort of verbiage, right, when I talk about, nuclear Armageddon,
Jesus
nuclear
Christ.
apocalypse,
None
nuclear
of
holocaust,
these items are coming
those are
up.
words out of the mouths of some of these leaders. So there is a very clear notion that if nuclear war starts, it ends civilization. That is almost certainly known among the leaders. And yet, you have people like the president of Russia and the president of the United States and the leader of North Korea throwing around threats and terms.
That's because when stuff goes down, when the shit hits the fan, all the people that determine that we need to go to war, all the people that determine, yeah, let's bomb a place, are never the ones on the front lines. What does it say about all the people that choose to go to war are never the ones in it? Isn't that a little convenient? Why would I have to worry about the outcomes of something if I'm not the one that's going to die from it, essentially? Like, why would I worry at all?
The leader of North Korea recently accused the United States of having a sinister intention of provoking nuclear war. I mean, that is a provocation on top of a provocation, embedded in. But to your point, what's the point of being scared? Well, the point is to realize that passivity is not necessarily the answer. that your knowledge of this situation
I get at
leads
least
to
one of these
change.
items.
That's just the history of civilization.
But one of the things that it did make me think when I realised that there's one individual in the United States where we are now who can make that decision, and that there's basically like someone following the president with a briefcase called it's like the football or something.
Yes.
What is that football for people that don't know?
Yeah, and so now that people know about the football or they read it, you can see in photographs of the president, you will almost, if he's in frame, you'll see the mil aide. That's the military aide, an individual who is assigned to be with the president 24/7, 365. And inside the football, it's called the emergency satchel, are two important things. There's instrumentation that allows the president to be identified as the president to the National Military Command Center, which is the nuclear bunker beneath the Pentagon. Okay, so it's a call and response authentication. And then there is something called, colloquially, the Black Book. And it was told to me the reason it's called the Black Book is because it involves so much death. And what the Black Book is a list of nuclear strike options for the president to choose from. And so once the president is notified that a ballistic missile is coming at the United States, and he has to make a decision about a counterattack, he must look quickly because, as you learn in the book, and as I learned from presidents, there is a 6-minute window of decision making. And so there's no time for a roundtable discussion. There is a list of options that has been pre-prepared for the president to choose from. And I interviewed for the book someone who actually was responsible for some of those decisions in the 80s. And he described to me in appalling detail what it was like to have worked on this in the Pentagon, like worked out numerically different targets and why they would be targets in said strike X, Y, Z, or Q against said nation. And then later seeing the Black Book and realizing the sort of transmutation of that information to what was described by the only mil aide who's ever gone on the record speaking about this as essentially like a Denny's menu list of options. And so you understand that this list is so watered down into strike options and there is so little time that the president in essence has really no idea what he's striking and how many millions of people will be killed.
When I hear that, it makes me realise how important the decision to pick our leaders is. Something I didn't realise before.
Nothing could be more important. And yet I learned in the book, and I'm talking about from former secretaries of defense, people very close to the president, that most presidents are ill-informed about their role as commander-in-chief in a nuclear war. And it was said to me, most don't want to know. And again, so this brings us back to that paradox of deterrence. The original question I asked in writing and reporting this book, what if deterrence fails? Deterrence is this idea, we will have so many nuclear weapons pointed at the other side, they will have so many nuclear weapons pointed at us, no one would be insane enough to let any of them loose. That's how we all stay safe. Another way of saying deterrence is more nuclear weapons make us more safe. You can decide if you think that's a little Orwellian, but that is what exists.
Okay, so with that in mind, we should really be doing
unnerving.
mental checks on our leaders every 3 months, because we've all probably had an experience with someone who's had a episode, and I'll leave it at an episode because there's a variety of different types of episodes one can have. And I was thinking, well, if the president just has a bit of an episode and gets a little bit paranoid or, sort of has a little bit of a schizophrenic paranoia, which can happen to people for a variety of different unpredictable reasons, then that president could potentially make a decision and
one of
there
these
doesn't be a
items.
defense
Now,
mechanism to stop him
one
doing
of
that,
these
or her
items I
doing
can
that.
get.
You reminded me of a famous story
Not
when
one.
Nixon was president. It was during the Watergate scandal. He probably knew the end of his presidency was near. And he was very drunk one night, and he began to threaten, or rather he just
Thank
began to
you.
talk, in a sort of extremely
1 out
verbose,
of
drunken
4.
manner about how he could end the world or kill tens of millions of people with a push of a button. And it is said that Kissinger called up the military and said, if the president orders any kind of a nuclear strike, talk to me first.
Really? And so do you think that would have happened?
I mean,
It's hard to know, isn't it?
all of these stories, unless they come out of the mouth of the individual who actually said that, are in essence stories. So there's an element of truth to them for sure. The actual command and control, who's going to follow the rules, people ask me that question often. And I took that exact question, I think people have a naivete that if you're in the nuclear command and control, whether you're a missileer in an underground silo or a submariner on a sub, that you might, when you get this command, suddenly have this heart, like in a Hollywood movie, have this moment where you say, my goodness, I'm going to save the planet rather than destroy it. I put that question to Dr. Glenn McDuff, the historian at the Classified Museum at Los Alamos, the one you and I can't go see. And I said, do you think that could happen? And he said, Annie, you have a better chance at winning Powerball than betting on someone in the nuclear chain of command and control to defy orders. And I said, why? And he said, well, you are trained to follow orders.
I spoke to a CIA agent, or should I say a former CIA agent called Andrew Bustamante. You might have seen him, he does some podcasts. And after speaking to him, I completely agree, because as he said, he was trained to, basically he was selected and trained on the basis that he would follow orders in that moment. And they even do drills to make sure, dummy drills to make sure that they're prepared, I guess psychologically, to follow through on those instructions. It made me think as well that if when what if the president's dead? What if the president is hit by a nuclear weapon from another country, and now they can no longer make the decision? Is the decision deferred onto somebody else?
Well, I take the reader through that precisely because those are the kind of questions that I
Vice
had to
President,
ask of my
maybe?
sources as I was reporting this. On the one hand, as I was learning what happens in the seconds and minutes, after a launch is detected, because we have a satellite system that detects the launch of a nuclear weapon in under a fraction of a second.
But it's not always very trustworthy. This is why I'm concerned.
Ours is very trustworthy, as far as I understand. It's called Sibbers. It's built by Lockheed, and it's astonishingly powerful. Other nations do not have that same kind of technology.
Because I was reading about the sort of historic mistakes that were made. Sometimes people thought there was a nuclear bomb or a strike coming. It was actually just a bunch of swans.
Absolutely.
So I was a little bit like,
I mean, these are this is the one miscalculation, one misunderstanding away from nuclear Armageddon.
But what are those instances from history where the nuclear detection system was triggered and someone in some country decided not to follow through on a notification?
I think the most interesting stories that I report come from the person who is an actual first-hand witness to it. Because what often happens is the telephone game, whereby one person tells the story and then you add a detail. So I write about a couple of them in the book, but one of them came to me firsthand, and I'll share that with you, which was former Secretary of Defense Bill Perry. And he was on the night watch during the Carter administration. He wasn't the Secretary of Defense yet. He had the job before that, the Director of Research and Engineering at the Pentagon. But it was his night watch informed the president job. And
Yes.
he was told by the
Is it
National
a
Military
broken
Command, which is
compass
the
and we're
bunker
done
beneath the
here?
Pentagon, that there were ballistic missiles on the way from Soviet Russia. This
what I
was
want to use,
confirmed
but-
by the nuclear bunker beneath Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, the Stratcom bunker. And not only were they intercontinental ballistic missiles flying at the United States, but they were sub-launched ballistic missiles coming at the United States. And it was a massive motherload of warheads. And Perry described to me, as I recount in the book, what that was like
Yes.
to try and process
Done here.
in your mind.
We're done.
Oh my God, I'm going to have to tell
We
the
out.
president, and he is going to have to make a counterattack. And within a matter of minutes, he got word that it was a mistake. And a mistake, you might ask, a mistake? How does a mistake happen? What he told me was that it was a VHS tape, a simulated war game, a simulated attack by the Soviet Union against the United States. And the VHS tape had mistakenly been inserted into a machine in the nuclear bunker beneath the Pentagon. And because it is linked to Stratcom, it was seen in both places. And Perry said to me, it looked real because it was mental.
350.
There was a president you talk about that played a nuclear war game and discovered that there could be no winners.
So Proud Prophet
Proud
war
Prophet,
game
yeah.
is one of the few, a very rare declassified nuclear war game. People talk about, jealously guarded secrets in the United States government. You can be sure that anything having to do with nuclear wargaming is way up there in the top secrets, along with what is actually in that black book. But the Proud Prophet war game was declassified. Reagan had ordered it. I don't believe he participated in it. His SecDef, everybody in the nuclear command and control participated in it for 2 weeks in 1983. And this is declassified. I reprint some of it in the book.
Stop
And
playing.
if you have a look at it, you might say to yourself, well, what's the point of declassifying something that looks like this? It's just black. It's like there's a number here and a word there and a page number, but mostly it's entirely redacted. And so what's the point of declassifying it? Well, for the public, something very valuable came out of that, which is it allowed a certain civilian who was participating, a Yale professor named Paul Bracken, to actually speak about it in a general way. He couldn't tell OPSEC, but he could generally talk about it. And what he said in his own book was that no matter how nuclear war begins, NATO's involved, NATO's not involved. China's involved, no matter how it begins, it ends in nuclear Armageddon. And Bracken's words was that everyone left really depressed.
Nuclear Armageddon essentially means the world is destroyed.
Nuclear Armageddon is the world is destroyed. And when you get to the end of the book, which happens in 72 minutes, and that comes from something that former Stratcom director General Keeler said to me when we were discussing and interviewing, and I asked him about what could happen if there was a nuclear exchange between Russia and the United States, and he said the world could end in the next couple of hours.
So from where we are now in this conversation to the end of this conversation, if a nuclear war broke out when we were sat here, by the end of this conversation, basically the entire world will be destroyed.
And you and I wouldn't even know before the first missile hit. That was shocking to me to have that confirmed, in essence, by Obama's FEMA director. So FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is the agency in the United States that's in charge of disasters, right? So if there's a hurricane or a flood or an earthquake, FEMA steps in to help the people. They have something called population protection planning. Craig Fugate was Obama's FEMA director for 8 years, and he just covered an extraordinary amount of catastrophes in the United States. He was also responsible for planning for a nuclear war. He told me that they did that. He also said we plan for asteroid strikes. These are called low probability, high consequence events. But what Fugate told me that was shocking is that there is no population protection planning in a nuclear war because everyone will be dead. And he explained to me that there's nothing that he could do as FEMA director. He would really be putting his efforts from this nuclear bunker where he would be, which is called Mount Weather. He would be putting his efforts on the continuity of government issues, the continuity of, like, the government has what are called essential functions. So when, as a nuclear war is happening, the government is trying to prepare to keep the government running, which is a form of fantasy in itself. And when you read Fugate's interviews with me, he's just so candid about how there is nothing anyone can do. And what he told me was so shocking. I went back to him and said, like, I just want to really make sure these are your actual quotes and he absolutely, he was one of the first people to write an Amazon review of the book after it published here in the United States. And I find that both terrifying, but also heartening for this reason. Is
it's not
a lot of these people who leave office, because my sources are all former,
Nice.
and then the title. When they are in the command and control, they are very focused on doing their job. Hence what we spoke about earlier about, like, following orders. They are civil servants. They're dedicated civil servants. They believe in national security. They believe in, the perseverance of government. And then they leave office and they're just regular people again. And that's when the heart, I think, begins to leave. And particularly as people get older. Because I interview a lot of people in their 80s and 90s.
This woman talk about
and
how close we're all to all
what
dying
this means in terms of legacy.
From nuclear weapons.
What is nuclear command and control really as buttoned up as
it's an interesting video.
As I thought? And is it a good idea in a world that is so rapidly changing, both geopolitically and also in terms of technology?
Was there one individual you met that comes to mind when I ask who the most troubled person was in terms of the work they participated in, or troubled in...
Although I do wish, if I could remove all nuclear weapons worldwide with, like, a snap of a finger, I wonder how governments would react. Well, we lost all our leverage. Looks like we can't bully smaller countries or influence the people. I don't know. I don't know what that would look like, because people dick wave so much with fucking nuclear weapons that like, if you took them all away, it's like, well, you just kind of cut my penis off, bruh. That's yeah. How you gonna do that?
In the context of what they know and what it means for humanity and how they're grappling with that.
The most concerned and sort of the most activated, by all means, would be former Secretary of Defense Bill Perry. And he's now in his 90s, and I don't believe he's doing interviews anymore. But it's not surprising that Perry shared with me his intense worry about all of this, because he has been actively working on this, and, for at least 15, 20 years. And when I say this, I mean bringing the information to the public so that the public is aware. He wrote his own book with a colleague called The Button. And he has, he did a podcast called At the Brink. And what's fascinating is Perry spent most of his life dedicated to what you might call the military-industrial complex, right? To the research and development of weapon systems that I write about in my other books, the DARPA book in particular, because this is all part and parcel to what we're talking about here, that you have this sort of industry, military weapon system industry, that is in a constant state of forward movement. It's deeply tied to economics, to jobs, to prosperity. And so where does that take us? And at what point does it end? It was Eisenhower who said in his famous speech, where the public really learned about this so-called military-industrial complex, because Eisenhower spoke of it in his farewell speech. But he also said an important thing in the second half of that speech, which doesn't get nearly as much airtime, which is that a knowledgeable and alert citizenry is how you balance sort of an idea of peace with an idea of defense. And I think what frightens both of us that we talked about in the beginning here was that peace and defense are very different than constant states of war.
72 minutes. You go through this in the book almost minute by minute, showing exactly what will happen. We know in those first couple of minutes there's a notification that there's a nuclear bomb coming in from somewhere. My question on that I was thinking about this earlier as we were talking about it. How does the president know? How does the world leader of that country know, the Prime Minister of the UK, whoever it might be, Netanyahu or Putin, know where that nuclear bomb has come from? Because we talked about this sort of black book of places, this menu that the president has in that football that his aide is carrying around. How does he know which place to pick on the menu to send a nuclear bomb back?
Powerful distinction, right? This is not 9/11, where suddenly there are planes in the Trade Center towers and, everyone is scrambling to say, who did this? And the CIA is saying, this is Al-Qaeda, it has the mark of but no one knows for sure. This is not that. This is the fact that for 79 years, the United States has been building nuclear weapon systems, and also systems to detect other people's nuclear weapons should they have them. Okay?
But with the submarines?
Okay, so good point on the submarines, but we have a set of satellites called SBIRS, which are parked. Now, I'm only when you said, how would Netanyahu know? How would the president know? That is a different scenario. What I'm talking about is the U.S. president, because I have interviewed people in the U.S. Defense Department and the intelligence community, and the Defense Department knows precisely where a weapon comes from within a second of launch, because the SBIRS satellites can measure the hot rocket exhaust. So you imagine a rocket taking off, lots of fire beneath it. That is measured from 22,000 miles up in geosync. I mean, that is just a technological astonishment. And then there begins the data sent down to these various commands in the United States, the Aerospace Data Center, the Space Force, and they begin measuring the trajectory of the missile and figuring out where it's going to go. Like, it's not going to Moscow and it's not going to Guam. Those would be opposite directions. Is it going to San Francisco or is it going to the East Coast? That is learned in 100 seconds, approximately. Okay. Now, you are right. You cannot, if a submarine launches a ballistic missile, there's no way of knowing where that came from, which is why in the scenario I have that happen, and it creates a whole other set of problems.
What are those? I mean, what is the answer to that? Because I was imagining if the Cyber system sees a nuclear bomb coming out of the Pacific Ocean, I mean, that could be Rishi Sunak. That could be the UK firing one at America. It could be, could be anybody.
You are absolutely right that there is no way of knowing. And in the scenario that I chose, because I wanted to try to take the reader through a logical sequence, if you could even call any of this logical, because it's all, they call it MAD, mutual assured destruction. It's really madness. But you cannot know who launched that.
So does we just go for our enemy in that situation?
I mean,
do you know what I mean?
That now you have a new task. You are going to write nuclear war, an even worse scenario.
Because that's what you would do, right? If you're President Biden, your aide turns to you and goes, "Hi, President, there's a nuclear bomb heading our way." I go, "I know exactly who did that." and you might start firing a couple of back at just the people that you assume would do it. And then they do the same.
The nuclear-armed submarines that are owned by Russia and China regularly come within a couple hundred miles of each coast of the United States, and you can assume the same about England. And how do we know this? Well, you can't see a submarine moving in real time, but you can track the submarine's movements after the fact, owing to a very complex system of underwater surveillance systems that we have in place. And there's a map that appeared in a recent Defense Department budget request to Congress, which I reproduce in the book, that shows just how close those enemy submarines get to the coast. And that reduces the travel time of a ballistic missile down to under 10 minutes. And so this idea that we really are living at the edge of apocalypse is not an exaggeration. The question is, how would this start? Why would this start? Again, read the scenario and you begin to realize this could start in, or have a discussion with you, and this could start in so many, the training test tape. I mean, and the real takeaway is asking ourselves is, why do none of us know about this? Or most of us, rather.
There's so many ways this could start. One of them obviously, again, has emerged front of mind for society since you started writing the book, which is artificial intelligence. Before I get to that, though, I really want to close off on this 72 minutes. I understand the first couple of minutes there. What does the person listening to this need to know about what happens in the subsequent sort of 60 minutes?
There's a very fast process where the trajectory of the ballistic missile is being determined, and we're talking in the first minutes of the sequence because everyone is getting ready to tell the president. Because what they're going to tell the president is, sir, you need to choose a counterattack. That is called get the blue clock running.
Does the president not get in some plane super quick?
So we'll get there in a second, because that's where that's a decision tree problem.
Okay.
So everyone is working on figuring out the trajectory of the ballistic missile. And there is the first confirmation when you see it. And by the way, a ballistic missile cannot be redirected or recalled. Cannot be. Okay. Now, ultimately, the Defense Department will wait for second confirmation of that missile from a ground radar system. We have them around the world. The one in the scenario that would see it is in Alaska. It has to be able to see and confirm that missile is definitely coming this way. And that happens at around 8 or 9 minutes. And so the process in between them, everyone's getting ready to brief the president about a counterattack. And so in the scenario, the president learns around 3 minutes, and then they're waiting on the secondary confirmation. And in my interviews with the Secret Service, as I was reporting the book, interesting things would happen, exactly like your question, like, wait a minute, what would the president be staying at the White House? So I, as the reporter, put that question to the former director of the Secret Service, who explains to me how there is a team called the Counter Assault Team. And that is the sort of paramilitary organization of the Secret Service that's going to always be there to move the president really fast if need be. And in this situation, they made a decision, we're moving him. If the target is Washington, D.C., or anywhere on the East Coast for that matter, we cannot have the president anywhere near ground zero. And their job that they are sworn to do is to protect the president. And so then you're going to have a bit of a stalemate, because the military command wants the president on comms to be able to give him counterstrike orders. That is what they want. And they can only get those orders from the president. But the Secret Service has a totally different agenda. And in my scenario, the Secret Service, considering they're the only ones in the room that are armed, win. They take the president out, and he flies out of Washington, D.C. in Marine One.
Marine One being the helicopter.
And then I learned even more interesting details, like, okay, so in the scenario, the likely situation is that the electromagnetic pulse will really threaten the electronic system in Marine One, and it will be in deep danger of crashing.
What is that for people that don't know?
For people that don't know, an electromagnetic pulse is like a 3-pulsed sort of shock wave that essentially just zeroes out electronics. Imagine your house getting struck by lightning, a direct hit, and no surge suppressor. I mean, it's all the electronics go out. And that will almost certainly happen. Marine One is retrofitted against EMP attack, because they think about these things. But no one knows if it's going to really work. It's been tested in a chamber.
So what you're saying, sorry, just to be clear, is that whoever's attacking the United States or another country would send an electronic pulse first?
No, the pulse is part of the bomb.
Okay.
It's inherent in the nuclear explosion.
Okay.
And so
Jesus
even if they're getting the
Christ.
president out, if he's 7, 8, 9 miles, 10 miles out of ground zero, as they rush, because remember, this is all happening in 30 minutes, under 30 minutes, as they rush to get him out of the White House, the EMP could seriously damage the Marine One. So the Secret Service people I interviewed explained to me that they would have a backup plan, which would be to tandem jump the president out of the aircraft with a parachute. They would strap the president onto them and jump out of the aircraft. Because at least there would be, the aircraft is going to crash if it gets hit by the electromagnetic pulse. So at least there's a better chance. Well, then you have to have, the mill aide has to have a parachute, because he's got the black book. And the
Jesus
special
Christ.
agent in charge of the president is definitely going to go. So then I learned that this incredible detail that there aren't parachutes in Marine One. So they have to go to the White House office to get the parachutes. You know, these kind of details, I believe, provide the reader with a number of things, like the astonishing understanding of how many different scenarios are in play all the time, you know, being rehearsed, so that because we might have a nuclear war, at the same time that the messaging is we will never have a nuclear war. And then when you begin to look at all the competing agendas that will happen, you realize it's just chaos upon mayhem.
What if the president dies in the strike? And before we've made a counterattack?
Which is something that Stratcom thinks about, and it's certainly why I have that in the scenario. Because if the president is the only one that can order a counterattack, that can launch nuclear weapons, what if he dies? And so I learned in the reporting that if you're the president, let's say he even gives the order, okay, here's my counterstrike, I'm choosing this from the black book. The command and control is set up that if the president orders 82 nuclear weapons in response, you can't launch 83 nuclear weapons. It's 82 and 82 only. And then to do another launch requires passwords. It requires so much bureaucracy. There's not time for that. And so there's this almost unknown little detail inside of the nuclear command and control apparatus called a universal unlock code, which I learned about in the book. And the eyebrow goes up for exactly that reason, as did mine when wait, what? And then you find out that the president can release to the Stratcom commander the universal unlock code, which basically says, okay, if I die, you have permission to launch nuclear weapon number 83 or nuclear weapon number 5,000, all the way up. And that is a pretty shocking concept.
Okay.
The president responds to a nuclear attack.
This is
Hits.
oddly... This is like an oddly uncomfortable, like how... Like, you just kind of gotta hope that people at the top aren't crazy. That's really what it comes down to. People in Russia aren't crazy. People in China aren't crazy. People in the United States aren't. You gotta really, really hope that these motherfuckers ain't crazy. Okay, it's getting close to 11:30, so I think I should cut it soon, but I just need 3 more of these fucking apples.
Then let's say they hit Russia. They send the submarines out to send the ICBMs or whatever it's called to strike Russia. Russia have these submarines as well. They send more back. What's the aftermath of nuclear? That 72nd minute. Because I imagine from the minute the president hears that, gets the notification that it's been confirmed, it's had the second confirmation, he's going to make the decision to fire nuclear weapons back, I assume. And then from there, it's just all fire, as far as I'm concerned.
There's a concept called jamming the president, which is, so the president learns in the scenario I write that North Korea has fired a ballistic missile, and then a second one comes in from a sub and hits a nuclear power plant in California.
Why did you pick North Korea?
I picked North Korea because of my interviews with Richard Garwin, the designer of the thermonuclear bomb, the first one, which he designed for Teller. Because in our interviews, I asked him what scared me most. Garwin, also in his 90s, has advised every president of the United States since Eisenhower. He was an early founder of NRO. One of our most classified agencies. His opinion matters. And while he didn't want to be specific, he gave me sort of a very interesting, almost poetic metaphor when he spoke of the Mad King. And the Mad King with a nuclear arsenal. And he even used that French phrase, après moi le déluge. This idea of like, after me, the flood. If I die, who cares? And I interpreted that Garwin was talking about North Korea, because North Korea is the rogue nuclear-armed nation that regularly sets off ballistic missiles and doesn't tell anyone. There is an unspoken reality among the other nations that you inform people when you're going to test an ICBM with a dummy warhead, of course. North Korea doesn't adhere to that. So, when I interviewed people who are in those command and control bunkers, those first 100 seconds we spoke of where the ballistic missile is on its way, and all of that command and control is focused on, is this coming at us? Or is it as launching a space satellite? Or is it going into the Sea of Japan? That's what North Korea does. They don't announce those tests. And so imagine the anxiety in those command bunkers every time they launch a ballistic missile. They have launched more than 100 ballistic missiles in an 18-month period from like 2022 forward.
Testing.
So this is so dangerous and so rogue. If there, on the one hand, I say there are no rules to nuclear war, but there are a few rules to nuclear deterrence, like you tell your neighbors. And that's why I chose North Korea. But just to finish the sequence,
Okay,
the president
one
launches
more hit
82
and this guy's
missiles
done.
at North Korea in a counterattack. And that is, and in the scenario that I write,
Nice.
the failure now becomes about miscommunication, a very important concept, and also about technology not working. And I source in the book precisely where this information comes from. So Russia
Yes.
misinterprets our launching nuclear weapons at North Korea as being launched at Russia. Why? Because, actual fact, our ICBMs do not have enough range to travel to North Korea without overflying Russia. And so imagine in a climate like now,
Yeah,
with
that's gonna be
hostilities as an all-time
rough.
high, the Russian president just saying, okay, well, maybe they're not coming for us. And nuclear policy, the policy of deterrence is you launch if someone's launching at you. And so that is where, you know, in the second act of the book, it's 24 minutes, 24 minutes,
Jesus
24
Christ.
minutes, and Russia launches. And Russia launches. You don't launch, if someone's attacking you with nuclear missiles, you don't launch one or two back. That's Mad King logic. You launch the mother load. And that's what I have Russia launch in the scenario.
What do you mean, Mad King logic?
Well, Mad King logic is, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the Mad King logic of the book, the leader of North Korea, who is nameless, launches a nuclear weapon at the United States for reasons we don't know, and we will never know, because history will end. The ability to write history ends in 72 minutes of the book. So we will never know why, and that is the sort of, question. Mad King logic is very different than
more
Defense
hit.
Department logic.
One more hit
or,
on this
in many
dude.
regards, Russian nuclear command and control logic, which I interviewed sort of the world's expert on those subjects to be able to, give readers quickly an idea of what that logic is and why
One more apple
it
and
has
we're
held for
calling it
7
a
million
night.
years.
Can't we just shoot it out the sky?
One more apple.
That
We
is the
will
great
call
fantasy
it
that is
night.
a fallacy, right? So let's talk numbers for a second. America has 1,770
Awesome.
nuclear weapons
Alrighty, yo.
ready for launch status. They're deployed. Okay, they can launch in seconds, minutes. Maybe some of the bombers take an hour or two. Russia has roughly the same, 1,674. That's the parity of the nuclear treaties. That says nothing of the thousands more that we each have in reserve. But those are
Well,
actual
you're
nuclear
gonna
weapons that
cut
are
my
pointed
game
at one
off,
another, ready to
aren't
go.
you, after I'm
Ready to
wasting
go.
one of my
Okay?
fucking
So those
things.
numbers. The U.S.
Yeah,
has
fuck
an
you,
interceptor
bro.
program to allegedly intercept a long-range
You
ballistic
end my
missile. Not talking
game.
about
I
short
just
range, or
wasted
even
a fucking-
long range, like that would come from
Fuck
Russia
you.
or North Korea. We have 44 interceptor missiles. 4 of them are at Vandenberg Air Force Base in Santa Barbara. 40 of them
it
are
didn't.
at Fort Greely in Alaska.
Awesome. Thank you
44.
for that. 'Cause that
So if
would've
Russia has
pissed me off.
1,670 nuclear weapons, how are our 44 interceptors going to go up against those? And that says nothing,
Oh,
by the way.
shit.
And I get into this in sort of the little bit of the wonkiness inside a nuclear warhead. Many of them are what are called MIRV, which means they have multiple warheads inside of it. And so when the warhead unleashes, the multiple warheads go out along with decoys, so that if an interceptor missile is coming at it, it greatly reduces the chance that the interceptor will be able to shoot it out of the sky. The way that it was said to me was like this: an interceptor missile, which is basically just like a small ICBM, right? It's a small it's a rocket. It is like trying to shoot a bullet with a bullet. That's a quote from the spokesperson at the Pentagon. One of them is traveling at 14,000 miles an hour, the ballistic missile, 14,000 miles an hour. The interceptor, the little kinetic vehicle inside of it that's going to hit the warhead, hopefully, is traveling at 20,000 miles an hour. That's where you get the trying to hit a bullet with a bullet. And by the way, this is all happening 500 miles up in space. Good luck. The success rate of our interceptor program is between 40 and 55%. That's on a good day where they're testing these things and they go, hey, we're doing an interceptor test. It might be
One more
around
thing
there, right?
before
That's
we're
called a
calling it
curated
night.
test. That's not in the madness of the moment.
Gonna get something to eat and go for a walk.
If I was
As soon as I'm
a
done.
fly on the wall, not that there would be a wall left, and I was looking at America or the UK after it had been struck by these nuclear bombs by thousands of Russian or North Korean nuclear weapons, what would I see? What would the visuals be in those minutes after the strike?
I describe the first bomb in the scenario that strikes the Pentagon. It's a 1 megaton thermonuclear bomb in painstaking, horrific detail, all sourced from Defense Department documents, defense scientists who have worked for decades to describe precisely what happens to things and to humans. And it's horrifying. But on top of the initial flash of thermonuclear light, which is 180 million degrees, which catches everything on fire in a 9-mile diameter radius, on top of the bulldozing effect of the wind and all the buildings coming down, and more fires igniting more fires, on top of the radiation poisoning people to death in minutes and hours and days and weeks if they happen to have survived, on top of all of that, each one of these fires creates a mega fire that is 100 or more square miles. And so essentially, in essence, what do you see? Well, in the scenario at minute 72, 1,000 Russian nuclear weapons land on the United States. And so it just becomes a conflagration of fire. It's just fire, fires burning, fires 100 200 square mile fires burning. And then we move into nuclear winter. And that's sort of the denouement of the book, where I tell you about nuclear winter from the point of view of one of the original scientists who wrote that original nuclear winter paper with Carl Sagan back in 1983. And his name is Professor Brian Toon. And he spent the decades since working with state-of-the-art climate modeling systems that can now precisely tell us what nuclear winter will look like.
Because I've always thought, you know what, nuclear war wouldn't be that bad. If, you know, Russia launched 1,000 of their nuclear bombs at the United States and I was here in New York where I am now, I would die instantly, so I wouldn't really know it happened. Is that true? I
think you would want to die instantly. I mean, there's a quote from Nikita Khrushchev, the former premier of the Soviet Union, and he said, after nuclear war, the survivors would envy the dead. Because there is, right, there is this sense of, if you survived, I mean, there is no more law and order. There is no more rule of law. There is no government. Craig Fugate made that very clear. The bunkers that the people in the military command and control centers would be in, let's say the secret bunkers, not the ones that are targets that Russia's going to take out, that I write about in the book, but the smaller ones, those are going to only function for as long as there's gasoline to run the diesel generators. And then those people are going to have to come out. And who's left? It's man returning to the most primal, most violent state as people fight over the tiny resources that remain. And by the way, they're all malnourished. Everybody's sick. And most people have lost everything and everyone they know. How's that going to feel?
It's going to feel, as you describe here on page 277, there are 1,000 flashes of light superheating the air.
Yeah, I'd rather die in a nuclear attack than get my asshole blown out by what's left afterwards. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have a great night. Goo.